A reporter in Korea asks people a simple question. What would you do with 100 million won? The answers are all polite and predictable, so she changes the question. What if you were the richest person in the world? One woman says she'd need to know where the money came from before she could even answer. The scene cuts to a TV studio, where that same interview is playing on a monitor. A journalist is interviewing the man who is, in fact, the richest person in the world, and he's incredibly young. She brings up the popular theory that he can see the future, and that's how he built his fortune. The man on screen says that would be impossible, but internally, he knows that's a lie, because right in front of him he can see a shaman, her magic swirling in the air. He's the only one who can perceive it, so for the cameras, he just plays it off as being a lucky investor, nothing more. And then, the whole thing turns out to be a bizarre dream. Kang Jin-hoo wakes up in his real life, wondering why he keeps dreaming about an eagle he saw back in the army. He's just been discharged, he's unemployed, and he lives with his mother in a semi-basement apartment. Life used to be better. His father ran a decent business and provided for them, but those days are long gone. Later, he visits his friend, Oh Tae-kyu, who's busy showing off his collection of action figures. The two have been close since high school. Jin-hoo tries to stay positive, saying that even without money, he got into a prestigious university and plans to land a good job after graduation. He even thanks Tae-kyu for keeping his mom company last Christmas when he couldn't come home from the military. Seeing his friend is down, Tae-kyu decides to share some good news to cheer him up. He recently found the password to a Bitcoin account he'd lost a while back. Jin-hoo remembers that incident well. Tae-kyu cried like a baby after losing the password, especially since he'd sold his character in the game Rutnia to buy the crypto in the first place. Tae-kyu says he found the password on a random slip of paper. As of yesterday, the coin was trading at 1,121. Jin-hoo does some quick math and figures that must be a pretty nice sum by now. His friend confirms it. The total value in the account is 13 billion won. Tae-kyu admits he could barely believe it himself, but he swears he isn't lying. The only catch is he can't access the money yet. He moved it all onto an exchange platform, figuring the price would just keep climbing. Jin-hoo is sick with envy, kicking himself for not taking that game more seriously, but then a thought occurs to him. He and Tae-kyu used to play together. He reminds his friend that Tae-kyu was the one who convinced him to sell his character too, so naturally, he's entitled to a piece of the fortune. Just then, Jin-hoo sees it again, the eagle from his dreams, only this time, he's wide awake. He has no idea why it's here. The eagle flies closer, and then it's clear this is no ordinary bird. Its spiritual nature becomes visible, but only to Jin-hoo. His shocked reaction completely freaks out his friend, who sees nothing. Ignoring him, Jin-hoo asks Tae-kyu what he knows about Mountain Hill. Tae-kyu is confused. That's the name of the crypto exchange he's using. He asks how Jin-hoo could possibly know that. Jin-hoo just had a vision of Mountain Hill collapsing. He can't explain it, but he knows the eagle is the reason. He starts taking this seriously. If this vision is real, his friend is about to lose everything. He tells Tae-kyu to sell all his crypto, right now. It's not going to go up in value. Tae-kyu is obviously rattled, but Jin-hoo insists he can't explain yet and begs his friend to just trust him. Tae-kyu says he already had his sister open a dollar account for cashing out, so he'll use that to sell. But he makes it clear that once this is over, he expects a very convincing explanation. As Tae-kyu gets to work, Jin-hoo sees the eagle vanish. He takes it as a sign he did the right thing. Still, he has no clue what's actually going on. A moment later, his friend lets out a gasp. The Mountain Hill server just went down. He managed to sell everything just in the nick of time. That's all the proof Jin-hoo needs. He wasn't hallucinating. The eagle was real, and it was a warning. Just to be sure, Tae-kyu reports that the platform server is back online, but every single account has been wiped clean. He turns to Jin-hoo and asks if he had something to do with this. Jin-hoo is just as confused as his friend, but he figures the truth is his only option. He tells Tae-kyu he thinks he might have just gained the ability to see the future. A year ago, Kang Jin-hoo was still in the army, running a training exercise. That's when he saw the strange eagle for the first time. Its sudden appearance put him on edge. Weirder still, he was the only one who saw it. None of his squad mates noticed a thing, which only made Jin-hoo more unnerved. Then came the warning. An explosion was imminent. He saw a mortar being prepped for another shot and figured that had to be it. He didn't fully trust the premonition, but his survival instinct screamed at him to take cover. And because he listened, he was the one who walked away from the blast. Back in the present, he's telling this story to his friend Tae-kyu, who just chalks it up to dumb luck. But Jin-hoo insists that without the eagle's warning, he would have ended up just like the others, not in one piece. He adds that the army doctor dismissed the eagle as a false memory, a side effect of the trauma. Tae-kyu points out that this has happened twice now. That's not a coincidence. Jin-hoo agrees, but he's surprised his friend is buying it so easily. Tae-kyu's explanation is simple. He's watched too much anime to be surprised by anything. With that settled, Jin-hoo moves on to more important business. He wants his cut of the fortune Tae-kyu Taekyu just made. He reminds his friend that he sold his game character to fund that investment, so a share of the profits is rightfully his. Taekyu says he'd love to, but he can't pay him yet. The problem is taxes. Jinhoo, an economics student, dryly asks if he's planning on opening a tax haven. Turns out yes. Taekyu explains his sister told him the income tax on his Bitcoin profits would be in the billions if he declared it. So to get around that, he set up a shell company in the US called OTK Company, a literal tax haven. He figures it's only a matter of time before he can quit working and just live off his investments. Jinhoo knows it's not that simple, but either way, he wants his money. Taekyu promises to pay him what he's owed, which puts Jinhoo at ease. A little while later, he checks his bank account and sees a transfer from Taekyu. It's only a partial payment for now. Taekyu promised to send the rest once all the tax haven bureaucracy is sorted out. Still, Kang Jinhoo leaves the bank with a smile. He finally has enough money to help his mother and treat himself, so he heads to a shopping mall. As soon as he arrives, he spots a commotion. Some woman is making a scene, screaming at an employee for supposedly stepping on her shoes. The store manager tries to de-escalate, telling the employee to just apologize to the customer, but Kang Jinhoo recognizes the employee. It's his mother. Kang Jinhoo is horrified to see his mother being humiliated. All this time, he thought she had an office job. She'd never told him the truth about her work. He steps in just before she's forced to her knees. He wants to know what could possibly be so serious that it requires someone to kneel and beg for forgiveness. The woman causing the scene demands to know who he is to interfere. Kang Jinhoo tells her he's the cleaner's son. His mother tries to hide her face, but he makes it clear he isn't ashamed of her at all. The rich woman is taken aback, but she's not about to back down. She claims the mop touched her foot, and that's why she demanded an apology. Jinhoo can't believe she'd humiliate someone over something so ridiculous. Annoyed, she snaps that her shoes cost 600,000 won, far more than a cleaner could ever afford to replace. So Jinhoo pulls out 600,000 won on the spot. He tells her to apologize to his mother, take the cash, and leave. The woman realizes she's being filmed and decides not to make the situation any worse for herself. She forces out an apology and immediately snatches the money. Before they leave, Jinhoo has a word with the store manager. He explains that since he paid for the shoes, they now belong to him, and he wants the manager to collect them from the woman. If he doesn't have them by tomorrow, he'll be filing a report for theft. And with that, he walks away, leaving the woman absolutely fuming. Outside the mall, his mother is worried. She says she has to go back and fix things because she needs that job. Kang Jinhoo just pulls her into a hug. He tells her she's gotten thinner, and that she's never working there again. From now on, he'll be taking care of the family's finances. Proud, she says he's really grown up. The two of them head to a restaurant. Jinhoo explains he's been making good money with Bitcoin, so she doesn't have to worry about their finances anymore, but she refuses to take his money. She wants him to focus on his own future and use it to finish college. He insists on helping, saying the first step is to move. He's sure her persistent cough is because of where they live. Even as she protests, Jinhoo is determined to use his money to give her a better life. She sighs, telling him he's just as stubborn as his father. Just then, Jinhoo gets a call from a friend. It's Taekyu, and he says it's an emergency. Apparently, his sister is back in Korea, and he needs Jinhoo's help. Sometime later, a flashy car pulls up to a luxury hotel. Inside, Kang Jinhoo is dying of secondhand embarrassment over his friend's taste in vehicles. Regardless, they head into the building, and right away, they run into Oh Hyun-ju. She says she's surprised to see Kang Jinhoo, admitting it's been a while. They all sit down to catch up. Oh Hyun-ju tells Jinhoo that once he graduates, there's a job waiting for him at Golden Gate. He agrees it's a good offer, but he can tell something is worrying her. She brings up the Mountain Hill bankruptcy and asks if her brother is doing okay. He reassures her, explaining he managed to sell off everything just before the disaster. Hearing that, his sister seems much more relieved. She then hands him the contact information for the Golden Gate branch manager in Gangnam. She tells him that for any domestic transfers he needs to make, it's best to go through this person first. Oh Hyun-ju explains she's in town for an audit and will be around for the next 10 days. Just then, her phone rings, and she excuses herself to take the call. With her gone, Jinhoo asks his friend why he was so reluctant to meet his sister alone. Oh Taekyu admits her personality is just a little intimidating. When she returns, Oh Hyun-ju apologizes, saying the call was important. Her brother guesses it was about the oil company, and she confirms he's right. The results from the OPEC meeting, she says, are being announced tomorrow. The moment he hears that, Jinhoo sees the Spirit Eagle again. It's here to give him another prediction. The vision is clear, an agreement to cut oil production. He asks Oh Hyun-ju what the OPEC meeting is about. She tells him it's about a production cut, exactly what he just saw. She explains that gold and oil are the world's true assets. Countries all over the globe want them, especially the US, which is the biggest buyer despite not being a top producer. But the development of shale gas and oil changed the market, causing a revolution. The problem with shale, however, is that it's expensive to produce. The forecast is that more than half the companies in the business will go bankrupt. That's why these emergency meetings happen. Sometimes everything has to be decided in a hurry. Trying not to reveal what he knows, Jin-Hoo suggests the deal Oh Hyun-ju is waiting for might not go as expected. When she asks why he thinks that, he just says it's a gut feeling. Oh Hyun-ju is impressed, but reminds him that intuition and information are two very different things. After a while, they say their goodbyes. In the car, Jin-Hoo realizes that if his prediction is right, the price of an oil barrel is about to shoot through the roof. He could buy oil in advance and make a massive profit. All his predictions have been right so far, so he knows this one is too. The only problem is cash. After all his recent spending, he's only got $275 in his account. He has to wonder if investing everything he has is the right move. Oh Taekyu, meanwhile, says he noticed Jin-Hoo acting strange while talking to his sister. He asks if he had another one of his visions. Jin-Hoo admits his friend's intuition is pretty good. He tells him what he learned about the OPEC agreement. Taekyu immediately understands the play. They need to buy oil, but he has one very practical question. Where are they supposed to store it? Later, at Taekyu's house, the two are studying the oil market. Kang Jin-Hoo explains that crude oil isn't just for fuel. It's a raw material used by countless industries. Taekyu sends over the rest of the money he owed him. Jin-Hoo says the next step is to buy oil on the New York Stock Exchange. But since he can't be absolutely certain, he only wants to put in $300,000 for now. Taekyu says he's in too, but he's betting $10 million. Kang Jin-Hoo points out that this is an incredibly high-stakes gamble, but his friend has total faith in his predictions and doesn't see how they can possibly lose. In that case, Jin-Hoo tells him to do as he pleases. He, on the other hand, is going to be more cautious. He figures if it works out, the profit will be solid, and if it fails, the loss won't be that big. There's no reason to back down now. He places the orders. All that's left is to wait for the OPEC meeting to end. Kang Jin-Hoo finds them a 2-bedroom villa for $120 million. It's recently renovated and clean, and his mom is thrilled with the space and the sunlight. Jin-Hoo thinks about how every previous move meant less space, and some of his father's things always got lost along the way. But this time, his mom managed to save a box of things she couldn't bear to part with. Her dream had always been to own a home. His dad had even bought a plot of land to build on, right around the time Jin-Hoo was born. She wishes his father could see what their son has become after working so hard his whole life. Jin-Hoo points out they're not done yet. They still need things like a washing machine and a fridge. He tells his mom to take at least 3 months off work to finally get some proper rest. To that end, he hands her an account with 100 million won deposited, telling her to buy whatever she wants. But she's not happy. She scolds him for just throwing money around now that he has it. She insists she has her own savings and tells him to invest in himself instead. Jin-Hoo won't take no for an answer. He tells her if she doesn't want to spend it, she can just hold on to it for him in case he needs it later. Of course, he knows that's not going to happen. He's set for at least the next 20 years. A little while later, Taekyu stops by with a housewarming meal. As they eat, Taekyu drops the news. Mountain Hill went bankrupt. The hacking damage was in the billions, and it completely wiped out the brokerage. Every single one of their investors is broke. Taekyu explains that if it were a bank, the government might step in, but with crypto there's no safety net, and he's sure it's no coincidence that Jin-Hoo saw it coming. He's convinced Jin-Hoo has some kind of crisis-activated superpower, and he's even come up with a name for it, Oracle's Eye. Jin-Hoo is skeptical. He says if his OPEC prediction also comes true, he'll consider the theory. Otherwise, he's dropping it. Taekyu wants more. If the prediction is right, Jin-Hoo has to let him use the name Oracle's Eye. The next day, they're at Taekyu's place, waiting for the results. Jin-Hoo is a wreck, not at all certain his vision will pan out. His panic only gets worse as he watches the charts, seeing his losses climb. Seeing his friend about to have a meltdown, Taekyu suggests they play a game to get their minds off it. Jin-Hoo tries, but he can't focus. The numbers are just rattling around in his head. He makes a stupid move in the game, earning a scolding from his friend. And then, with all the stress piling up, Kang Jin-Hoo just passes out. He's woken up a short time later by Taekyu. The results are in. A terrified Jin-Hoo looks at the screen and sees his prediction came true after all. He tells his friend to check the account to see how much they made. Taekyu runs the numbers. Together, they've cleared 800 million won. But for Taekyu, the money is secondary. The real win is that he was right all along. His friend has a superpower. And now, he gets to call Kang Jin-Hoo Oracle's Eye whenever he wants. His friend is convinced he has a superpower, but Kang Jin-Hoo isn't impressed. Compared to flying or super strength, his ability feels pretty useless. Then again, he figures you can replace those powers with machines. But predicting the future? Not even the most advanced AI can do that. Taekyu starts listing the possibilities. Elections, sports, natural disasters, and more. He calls it an awakening, a power that manifested in an emergency. But Kang Jin-hoo points out a major flaw. It doesn't work on command. If it did, he'd have cleaned out a casino by now. His friend suggests a new theory. Maybe it only triggers for financial matters, since it happened when they were talking about Bitcoin. Jin-hoo counters that the first time was the mortar explosion. Taekyu says that could be a life or death exception, but then he remembers the news. That explosion was part of a huge military corruption scandal. The faulty mortar caused the manufacturer's stock to tank and their defense contracts to evaporate, so even that was tied to finance. Jin-hoo has to admit he's not wrong, but argues that almost everything in the world is connected to finance anyway. That gives Taekyu an idea. He offers to invest all his capital in his friend, as long as Jin-hoo uses his ability to guide the investments. It's a tempting offer, but Kang Jin-hoo is worried about being on the hook for any losses. Taekyu says he knows the risks and is willing to take the bet. Still, the protagonist isn't sold. There's no proof his power is 100% accurate. It could just be a random fluke. He figures it's more likely based on probability, a high chance of success, but always a margin for error. Without that certainty, it's pointless. Winning big one day just to lose it all the next isn't a plan, but Taekyu won't let it go, telling his friend to just trust him and to trust himself. Kang Jin-hoo is still reluctant. The conversation is cut short by a phone call. An old friend he hasn't seen since enlisting invites him out for drinks. Jin-hoo says he has something to do but will get back to him. A little while later, he shows up at the bar. He meets up with his old crew, with one request: no talking about the army. A couple of freshmen, Hwang Ji-hye and Shin Yu-ri, are there too. With one friend, Gi-hong, running late, they decide to get started without him. Someone asks if Jin-hoo is planning to return to college, and he says he's thinking about it. They keep drinking, waiting for their senior to arrive. Finally, Jung Gi-hong walks in. He's happy to see Kang Jin-hoo out of the military, and the two start to catch up. Jung Gi-hong works in the financial sector and mentions things are shaky, with a lot of jobs being reallocated. Jin-hoo asks if he's feeling insecure about his job at the central bank. Gi-hong admits it's tough even for veterans, and he's thinking of moving to private capital. He says Korea's big problem is having great entrepreneurs but not enough investors, leaving the country in need of someone who can compete with foreign capital. In the middle of this, Shin Yu-ri takes a call. She explains she was supposed to meet her friend Siona, but since she came out drinking with them, she just invited her friend to join. The name makes Kang Jin-hoo freeze. The other guys immediately scold the freshman, who has no idea why everyone is upset. And right on cue, Siona herself walks in. She stops short when she sees Kang Jin-hoo. It turns out they used to be a couple, and this is the first time they've seen each other since the breakup. Sometime later, Kang Jin-hoo runs into his ex-girlfriend Siona at a coffee shop. He's surprised. It's been 2 years since they last saw each other. He cuts right to it and asks if she's still with that senior. The guy in question is Ko Jun-hyung, the third son of GH Constructions. Jin-hoo had heard rumors after he enlisted that Siona was dating him. She confirms it, but she doesn't look happy about it. Jin-hoo notes how much she's changed. The insecure, less expressive person he knew is gone. She apologizes for breaking up with him, but Jin-hoo says it's in the past. Too much has happened since then. That's when Siona tells him she still has feelings for him, explaining that she always felt she could trust him. She admits leaving him for a rich guy was selfish, but she did it for her future. When he presses her, she says it was all to achieve her dream, to be successful. And with that, she leaves. Watching her go sends Jin-hoo reflecting on his own life. He remembers losing his father and not even being able to afford a proper funeral because they'd lost their house. Siona breaking up with him in the middle of all that was a massive blow. With no other options, he joined the army, leaving his mother alone to carry the burden. But now, thanks to Taekyu, he's recovered billions of won and made huge profits from his own investments. Still, something bothers him. He has 13 billion won in his hands, but he doesn't feel like he's achieved anything real. What does success even mean? As he's lost in thought, the spirit eagle appears again, but this time it's different. The creature feels more intense than before. Suddenly, Jin-hoo is hit with a strange vision, and he understands that just like last time, what he saw is destined to happen. Later, Kang Jin-hoo goes to Taekyu's house. He wakes his friend up and declares that together, they're going to achieve true success. The next morning, Jin-hoo wakes up with a massive hangover. Taekyu explains that he showed up drunk and passed out. Jin-hoo can only recall fragments of the night before, the eagle's vision, and making some kind of vow with his friend. Jin-hoo points out that Taekyu never really invested. He just got lucky buying crypto at the right time. Jin-hoo, on the other hand, has made some real, albeit small, investments. He admits he only put in 1 million won and lost half of it, which is why he stopped. Taekyu agrees his knowledge is limited to 1 year of college, but he also knows he's sitting on a fortune most people will never see in their lifetime. Jin-hoo explains the advantage that gives him. To make 100 million from 10 million, you need a 1,000% return. But with 10 billion, you only need a 1% return. That's the power of his friend's capital. Taikyu is ready to start, saying it sounds fun, almost like a game. The protagonist disagrees. For him, investing requires his powers, and he has no idea when or how the eagle will grant him another vision. He needs to solve that problem before they can continue. For the past few days, he's been reading economics articles and tracking large-cap stocks. He's starting to get a better feel for the market, but the eagle hasn't appeared once, leading him to believe it only triggers for huge events, like the OPEC deal. Taikyu, ever the optimist, says they should at least get a contract ready. He learned a few things from his sister and suggests a 50-50 profit split. The protagonist is fine with that. In the middle of their discussion, he gets a call. It's Shinyu Ri, the freshman from the group date. A little shyly, she makes an unexpected request. She asks Kang Jinhoo if he wants to get coffee. The next day, Jinhoo goes to meet Shinyu Ri. She thanks him for accepting her invitation, and he notes that she looks like a pop idol. He tries to play it cool, saying he only agreed to meet because he was already nearby at a friend's house, then asks why she invited him. Shinyu Ri says she wanted to apologize. She feels responsible for Siona crashing the party and making things awkward. She adds that she's happy he's returning to college since it means they can see each other more. Jinhoo is a little taken aback. It's not every day a girl this pretty is so direct with him, but then she asks for a favor. She wants to buy a new phone but doesn't know anything about them, and she needs his help. So much for her being interested. He was just her free tech support for the day. Regardless, they head to an electronics store. While Shinyu Ri is looking at phones, Jinhoo thinks he should probably get a new one too. The moment he touches a smartphone on display, the spirit eagle appears. It gives him a simple message. This model will be discontinued. Jinhoo doesn't understand the warning at first. When Shinyu Ri asks what he's looking at, he just plays it off. Inside, though, he's relieved. It's confirmation that his powers haven't disappeared. A little later, Shinyu Ri leaves the store with her new purchase. Jinhoo can't resist telling her that her new phone will probably be discontinued soon. She asks how he would know that. He immediately backpedals, claiming it was just a joke. Then he makes a quick exit, saying he has an urgent appointment. Shinyu Ri is left disappointed, since she was hoping they could get lunch. Jinhoo, meanwhile, is rushing straight to his friend's house to share what he's learned. He knows Taikyu bought the exact same phone and wants to warn him as soon as possible. Taikyu explains the market situation. Samsung sells a huge range of smartphones, but Apple currently leads the high-end sector. To compete, Samsung developed this top-tier model, the L6, and it's been selling extremely well in Korea. This just makes Jinhoo more confused. Why would a bestseller be discontinued? Taikyu figures it must be a patent dispute, since the two companies are constantly fighting in court. But Jinhoo points out that in those cases, the losing company just pays a fine and moves on. The two of them spend the whole night trying to figure out the real reason. The answer comes screaming in the next morning. Taikyu wakes Jinhoo up, yelling that his smartphone exploded while it was charging. He's had the phone for less than a week, and it's already defective. And in that moment, they both realize they've found the answer they were looking for all night. A little later, they do some digging online and discover plenty of other people are having the same problem. Taikyu realizes Samsung is trying to keep a lid on it, paying people off to stay quiet. He also figures the defect is more common than it seems. Since the phone sold so well, the number of cases is only going to grow. The protagonist is now certain a recall is coming. The only question is when and how to time the investment. The next day, Taikyu gets a visitor. It's a tech from Samsung sent over after he reported the issue. They also offer him compensation if he agrees not to post about it online. This confirms all of Taikyu's suspicions about the cover-up. At this rate, the phone will be discontinued very soon. The protagonist calculates that if the phone is discontinued, the company will lose 40% of its operating profit. That means it's not a time to buy stocks, but to sell. The problem is, they don't own any shares to sell. But Taikyu has an idea: short selling. He explains the concept. You borrow shares, sell them high, then buy them back when the price crashes. The difference is your profit. The protagonist thinks it over. Even with a recall, the stock would probably only drop 30% at most. With the 13 billion they have, the return wouldn't be that spectacular. But he has an idea to make even more. For that, he'll need an expert in derivatives. Taikyu suggests asking his sister, since she's a master at this stuff. But the protagonist, Jinhoo, knows Hyunju would not be happy to find out what they're up to. So he suggests someone else, Park Sang-yeop, the president of the Real Investment Club. Whatever people say about the guy, there's no denying he's a genius. Park Sang-yeop grew up in Australia, but was so smart he got into a top Korean university for mathematics. While there, he started watching a small company called QMK Tech, noticing their market predictions were unusually accurate. He didn't hesitate. He took all the money he had, including his rent, and bought their stock. As a result, he had to crash on a friend's couch for 2 weeks. but then the stock exploded, and in 2 months, Park Sang-yeop was a millionaire. After that, he made one correct call after another and started his own investment group. That's how Jin-Hoo first met him. Back in the present, Jin-Hoo and Taekyu meet with Park Sang-yeop. During the conversation, Park Sang-yeop casually mentions he lost a lot of money recently. He's in debt and has to work to cover his expenses. Jin-Hoo notes that most people would be in a full-blown panic. Park Sang-yeop, however, discusses his debt with a strange sense of calm. Getting straight to the point, Jin-Hoo says he wants to learn more about buying stocks, specifically the difference between futures and derivatives. Yeop explains that futures are simple contracts. Two parties agree to trade a set amount of something at a fixed price on a future date. Win or lose, they're both locked in. Derivatives, on the other hand, are options with an expiration date. There's a buyer and a seller, and the buyer has the right to choose what to do. While it seems the seller is at a disadvantage, they actually have a higher win rate in the market, so they set the terms very carefully. He gives an example of a put option with a low chance of success. If a buyer invested 1 billion, the payout could be as high as 9 trillion. But Park Sang-yeop says that almost never happens, because bad news is far more common than good. When something bad does happen, the price of put options can shoot up hundreds of times, and the seller is legally required to pay out. That's all Jin-Hoo needs to hear. He lays out his plan. He's going to short Samsung's stock. He tells Yeop that their newest phone is about to be discontinued because of a major manufacturing flaw. Park Sang-yeop asks if he has any proof. Jin-Hoo can't reveal his powers and offers no real evidence, so Park Sang-yeop warns him not to play around with this. A gamble like that could bankrupt him. Jin-Hoo thanks him for the advice and they part ways. He now has all the pieces he needs to put his plan into action. At his friend's place, Jin-Hoo lays out the plan. 70% in put options, the rest in short selling. He explains that while the explosion reports seem like isolated incidents, he's noticed a disturbing pattern. But for now, the market is completely ignoring the problem. Most investors are calm. After all, there's been no official news to spook them. So Kang Jin-Hoo starts gaming out the possibilities. If the stock rises more than expected, he'll take a loss. But if the hardware problems are confirmed, everything changes. After running the scenarios, he decides to buy the put options. His entire bet hinges on the stock price falling. Even with the uncertainty, Kang Jin-Hoo commits a huge chunk of their capital. Now all they can do is wait. The days drag on. At first, nothing goes according to plan. The company's stock just keeps climbing. Their new devices hit the international market, and the initial reception is fantastic. Kang Jin-Hoo's nerves start to fray. He can feel the clock ticking. If his prediction is wrong, they lose everything. The situation is causing him serious anxiety. The weight of that responsibility is starting to crush him. Even Taekyu, who's trying to stay optimistic, can't hide his growing concern. Then finally, something happens. A major story starts to break. Reports of exploding phones are back, and this time, it's not 1 or 2 cases. It's a flood. The company quickly makes an official announcement blaming faulty batteries, but the incidents keep happening. The situation is rapidly spinning out of their control. Finally, they're forced into an extreme measure, a massive, worldwide recall. The two friends are stunned as they watch the news. Millions of devices are being collected. Samsung is losing a fortune on every returned phone, but their plan is to fix the batteries and sell the refurbished units. After the recall announcement, the stock, which had been dipping, actually recovers, closing down only 1.5%. To calm the markets further, the company announces a new shareholder return policy, including quarterly dividends. It's a crisis management play that completely undermines Jin-Hoo's strategy. His friend isn't worried, though. He's sure Kang's prediction will still come true, but Jin-Hoo himself is starting to doubt his own ability, wondering if his luck has finally run out. Worried sick about the losses, Jin-Hoo can't sleep, just tossing and turning all night. His friend eventually wakes up from the noise and suggests they grab a beer to clear their heads. While they drink, Jin-Hoo figures he only got one thing right. The Samsung device is going to be discontinued. He asks Taekyu if he blames him for the bad call. Taekyu says no. He's the one who pushed to get into investing in the first place. Besides, he still believes his friend's prediction will pan out. It's just a matter of time. Jin-Hoo doesn't share his optimism. A week passes after the recall announcement. Samsung stores are packed, both with people returning defective phones and people buying new ones. Their stock numbers start to climb again, fast, and as they do, Jin-Hoo's losses just get bigger. The short sales he made cushioned the blow slightly, but it's not enough. Taekyu has lost nearly everything he made from Bitcoin. Jin-Hoo knows that even with the little he has stashed away, this is going to be ugly. He thinks he should have just listened to Park Sang-yeop, but Taekyu says he has no regrets. He's been broke before, he can handle it again. Far away, a plane runs into trouble. A smartphone has just exploded mid-flight, endangering everyone on board. Worse, the phone was a replacement model issued after the recall. This proves the problem was never the battery, as the manufacturer claimed. Back with our guys, Jin-Hoo wakes up with a start. He had a strange dream about the eagle. He tells his friend that in 4 days, something huge is going to happen to Samsung's stock. After waking from that terrifying nightmare, Kang Jinhoo is still on edge. The vision felt too real to just ignore. He's convinced it wasn't a normal dream. So he and Taekyu start digging into the Samsung case all over again. Right away, things don't add up. The company officially blamed it all on defective batteries, but certain details still bother Jinhoo. New reports of explosions are still popping up, even after the company did a full battery replacement. The airplane incident makes headlines, and soon, airlines are banning the device on all their flights. With their stock price in freefall, Samsung executives call an emergency meeting. The vice president takes charge, admitting to the room that they still don't know the real cause of the problem. The other directors debate what to do. Some argue for just continuing the recall, but others insist that won't be enough to fix this. That's when the VP brings up a risky idea, starting with a philosophical concept, the ship of Theseus. He explains the old thought experiment. If you replace every part of a ship one by one, is it still the same ship? The idea is that even with constant changes, the essence remains. The comparison leaves most of the room confused, so he spells it out. Despite all the changes they've made over the years, the company is still, at its core, CO Sung. But if they lose the public's trust completely, no amount of change will be enough to save them. Lost money can be recovered. A destroyed reputation is another story. And in that moment, they make an extreme decision. The company will completely halt all sales and exchanges of the L6. A spokesperson delivers the news to the media. When Kang Jinhoo hears it, he can't believe it. His prediction came true. The phone has been completely discontinued. The fallout for the manufacturer is catastrophic. Estimates put the loss at 50 trillion, worse than a financial crisis nearly 2 decades ago. Before this, Samsung had been accumulating put options through Golden Gate, but the impact on the Korean stock market was so severe that even Golden Gate took a considerable hit. But an analyst reports something strange. Someone bought Samsung shares through Golden Gate right before the accident, and they weren't shorting the stock. A furious Samsung shareholder orders his people to find out who it was, convinced they had insider information. Speaking of which, Kang Jinhoo and his friend are just trying to process the situation. For a moment, they're in total shock. Then reality sinks in. They realize just how much money they're about to make now that their prediction has come true. The profit margin is even bigger than they imagined, and the two of them celebrate harder than if they'd just won the lottery. Sometime later, Taekyu finishes the calculations. Their total profit from the stocks is 685 billion. Jinhoo notes they were just shy of $1 trillion. As they agreed, Taekyu says half of that profit belongs to Jinhoo. The offer is a strange thing to hear. Just a little while ago, Jinhoo was an unemployed ex-soldier. Now he has so much money, he has no idea how to spend it. He feels a little guilty taking it, especially since his power almost led them completely astray. But Taekyu insists. It was Jinhoo's prediction that made them rich, so a 50-50 split is the only fair outcome. Jinhoo reflects that he really does have a true friend, someone who never once tried to cheat him. Still, thinking about how his powers almost failed him, he decides he needs to be more cautious. He has no idea what's coming next. The best move is to keep his abilities a secret. Besides his mom, Taekyu is the only person he can trust. While Taekyu celebrates their windfall, Jinhoo feels a pang of guilt for profiting from a national crisis. Taekyu points out that they weren't the ones who caused the devices to be discontinued. Jinhoo knows that, but he also knows Samsung's stock plummeted while its foreign rivals saw a huge boost. His friend tells him to just enjoy the win and leave the bigger problems aside. Besides, they have a practical issue. If Taekyu transfers Jinhoo's share legally, the taxes will be astronomical, and paying in cash is impossible. There's nowhere to even put it all. Jinhoo admits this is a problem he never imagined having. Taekyu wants to reinvest for an even bigger return, but Jinhoo warns him that as your capital grows, it gets much harder to make money. Jinhoo thinks to himself that he's already earned enough to live well for the rest of his life without a single worry. But is it right to stop now? After all, he's had another vision, one he hasn't shared with his friend yet. Jinhoo tells Taekyu he's going to see this through to the end, but he'll understand if Taekyu wants to stop here. Taekyu immediately says he's not stopping. He's with Jinhoo all the way. Then, he lays out his plan for their money problem. He's already established his company, OTK, in Delaware in the US. The state offers tax exemptions on donations, which allows them to bypass the Korean government. Taekyu then asks to see the contract he gave Jinhoo. He takes the document and rips it to shreds. He says a 50-50 split doesn't make sense anymore. He suggests they renegotiate to 80-20. Jinhoo doesn't understand the sudden change. He feels cornered with no real choice in the matter. But to his surprise, Taekyu clarifies he'll take the 20%. The 80% is for Jinhoo. Confused, Jinhoo asks why he'd suddenly suggest a split like that. Taekyu explains that their dynamic has changed. Before he had the capital and Jinhoo had the predictions, but now Jinhoo has his own capital to invest, so a 50-50 split would actually be unfair to him. Taekyu says the best investment he can make right now isn't in a company but in Jinhoo himself. He argues that whatever he gives up now is nothing compared to what they can achieve together in the future. Besides, he's already earned enough for a good life. Taekyu is confident that going all in is the right move because he trusts his friend. He adds that with an 80% share, Jinhoo should be the one running the company's administration. Since he's been studying the subject, he's the ideal person for the job. And with that, Kang Jinhoo becomes the CEO of OTK Company. Jinhoo feels ashamed for ever having doubted his friend. He realizes now that he was right to trust Taekyu's decisions. With the end of the year approaching, Taekyu asks Jinhoo what he did for Christmas last year. Jinhoo was stuck shoveling snow in the army. He turns the question back on his friend. Taekyu says he spent it with his mother, figuring she shouldn't be alone on such an important day. Changing the subject, Jinhoo tells Taekyu to wire a clean 800 million won to his Korean account. He wants to handle the taxes properly. Taekyu digs out the account info his sister gave him and asks what the money is for. Jinhoo says he's heading out to buy a Christmas present for his mom. He walks into a real estate agency, where the agent immediately sizes him up as a college student looking for a cheap rental. But Jinhoo clarifies he's not there to rent. He wants to buy a house. The agent is taken aback, warning him that houses in this area can go for up to 1 billion won. Jinhoo just points across the street and asks how much that specific house costs. She tells him a property like that runs about 600 million. So Jinhoo says he'll take it. Realizing this isn't a joke, the agent offers to check for similar listings. But Jinhoo is firm. He doesn't want a similar house. He wants that exact one. The agent has to break it to him that the house isn't for sale. Jinhoo asks if the owner might change their mind if he offered a price well above market value. He then pulls out a bag of cash, offering to add 200 million on top. He wants to know if that will be enough. The house belongs to a woman named Kim Mi-ja. Owning it was once her dream, but it quickly soured. The 20-year-old building needed expensive repairs. The commute was long, and its value had plummeted. She was stuck. Then one day, she gets a call. A young man is offering to buy her house for far more than it's worth. The number is so high, Kim Mi-ja nearly has a heart attack. But her first thought isn't relief, it's suspicion. She figures if someone is offering that much, the house must be worth even more than she knows. So she tells the agent she'll think about it. Her husband insists she take the deal immediately, but Kim Mi-ja has other plans. She calls the agent back and tries to negotiate a higher price, demanding a full billion. The agent informs her the client has already walked away and is looking at a cheaper property. Panicked, Kim Mi-ja begs the agent to get him back, desperate not to lose this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A few days later, the agent calls. She says she convinced the buyer to come back and asks if Kim Mi-ja will accept a down payment before he changes his mind again. Kim Mi-ja agrees. The agent then asks if she can vacate the property by Christmas. The woman protests that she has nowhere to go on such short notice. So the agent mentions the buyer is offering an extra 20 million if she's out by December 25th. Suddenly, Kim Mi-ja says she can be out in 24 hours. Back with Jinhoo, he's satisfied the deal is done. This was his childhood home, where his family lived when his father was still alive. He knows he overpaid, but he didn't want to wait. The goal was to surprise his mother for Christmas. The real estate agent congratulates him on the purchase. Out of curiosity, she asks why he was so set on that specific property. Jinhoo gives her a vague answer, and she gets the hint not to ask any more questions. Later, as he walks through the streets, he sees everyone else out shopping for presents. He looks at a photo on his phone of his complete family. That was the real reason he bought the house, but the agent didn't need to know that. He then calls his mom, telling her he's on his way home. Sometime later, Jinhoo tells his mom they're going out for a special dinner, with Taekyu waiting outside to play chauffeur. His mom is curious about their destination, but Jinhoo just says it's a surprise. On the way, he gets a call from the freshman, Shin Yu-ri. She gets straight to the point. She wants to know how he knew her phone model was about to be discontinued. He tries to play it off, but she confirms it happened exactly as he predicted. Jinhoo cuts the call short, saying he's busy and will get back to her. Then he sees a text from Park Sang-yo asking the same thing. This little phone tip is starting to become a problem, but he has bigger things to deal with right now. The car pulls up in front of a house, and his mother is immediately overcome with emotion. She says they shouldn't stay long, but Jinhoo insists they go inside. She protests, saying it's not right to enter a property that isn't hers. Inside, the place is empty. Looking around, she's flooded with memories of the happy times they spent there, but the feeling is bittersweet, knowing the house no longer belongs to them. That's when Jinhoo reveals the surprise. He hands her the deed, proving he bought their old home back. Completely overwhelmed, she asks how this was possible. He explains he made some money investing with his friend and wanted to do something for her. She breaks down in tears, thanking him for always taking care of her. Jinhoo tells her it's a happy day, no crying allowed. Then he notices Taekyu is also tearing up and tells him to knock it off before he ruins the mood. Later, he explains he made some money, but keeps the details vague. He also breaks the news that he's postponing college to focus on his investments. His mom is not a fan of this plan, warning him not to throw away his education just because he got lucky. Still, she's glad he has a good friend by his side, and Taekyu chimes in, promising to handle any trouble Jinhoo gets into. Changing the subject, his mom notes the house needs a lot of work, which is probably why the last owner sold it so quickly. Jinhoo assures her it's not a problem. He'll take care of the renovations, and they can move in as soon as it's ready. Taekyu reminds them they have a dinner reservation to get to, so they head out to celebrate. Jinhoo reflects that with his father gone, the responsibility of caring for his mother falls to him. He promises to do his best, hoping his dad can finally rest easy. A while later, Jinhoo is helping Taekyu move into a new place. They decided that to grow the business, they needed a proper base of operations, so Taekyu bought a bigger house. He clearly didn't skimp on the purchase, insisting it was a necessary expense. Inside, Taekyu claims the first floor for their office, leaving the second floor for Jinhoo. After unpacking, Taekyu is already eager to go shopping. Jinhoo has to ask if he hasn't bought enough already. Taekyu says that's the wrong question. It's not about what to buy, but seeing the absolute limits of what he can buy. Jinhoo suspects this is just a fancy excuse to buy more manga and anime figures. Sometime later, they arrive at a massive department store. A salesman greets them, but Taekyu is just browsing until he spots an enormous TV. The salesman explains it's a brand new Samsung model, and Taekyu immediately says he'll take it. There's just one problem. It's a display piece and not for sale. Taekyu doesn't care. He insists on buying it, and then proceeds to pick out a whole range of other high-end electronics and appliances. Stunned, the salesman asks if he'll be paying in installments. Taekyu says no, he's paying in cash. He explains he's just returning a favor to Samsung, so he'll be taking at least one top-of-the-line product from every category. After their shopping spree, Jinhoo suggests his friend might have gone a little overboard, but Taekyu just says he's repaying Samsung for their recent earnings. Back home, Taekyu gets to work redecorating the entire house, creating luxurious leisure spaces and even remodeling the bedrooms. He announces he's also set up a proper office. Once it's ready, it'll be their base for more profitable negotiations. Then he brings up one more piece of business, the company registration document they signed. Jinhoo looks at the contract, and it finally sinks in. He and Taekyu are now officially investor partners. They hold their first meeting in the new space. Jinhoo says there's no longer any doubt about his ability, but he's identified some serious gaps. He can't control when the eagle appears, so he can't just predict the future whenever he wants. The visions he does get are also vague and limited. He gives an example. If he saw that a piece of land was going to increase in value, he'd have no idea if it would happen in a week or a year. On top of that, there's the risk that their actions could change the future, possibly making things even worse. Taekyu agrees it's a problem. Natural disasters are one thing, but human actions are a completely different variable. He points out that their Samsung play could have easily gone sideways. The company could have made even riskier moves, and they might have gotten their money, but only after waiting years for a resolution. Using Jinhoo's land example, he adds that if a plot of land they invested in became too valuable, the entire development project could be canceled or moved. Taekyu concludes that their only option is to work hard and keep moving forward. Jinhoo says the power feels like a sixth sense. He can't control it, but he can feel it flowing through him. Taekyu figures they'll just have to wait for the eagle's next vision. Jinhoo thinks to himself that the ideal scenario would be to predict another large-scale crisis, just like the smartphone discontinuation. But then he realizes an event like that would completely devastate the country's financial sector, with side effects that could last for years. As he's thinking, a news report catches his eye, and he calls Taekyu over. The report says Samsung is investigating who bought all the put options right before the L6 was discontinued. The company suspects a foreign entity knew what was coming, or worse, that they were responsible for the defects in the first place. The two of them realize they're now directly in Samsung's crosshairs. They sit down to talk. Jinhoo says they've been treating this like a game, but they can't afford to raise any more suspicion. Taekyu argues they never imagined it would get this big, and more importantly, they didn't do anything illegal. But Jinhoo points out that it's all about perception. You're a genius when you make money while everyone else is, but you're a villain when you profit from others' losses. Taekyu still insists it wasn't illegal. Even so, Jinhoo says no one wins the lottery twice without raising eyebrows. He has to think carefully about their next move. Short-term options are risky and attract a lot of attention. Long-term investments have a better chance of success, but the timing and returns are uncertain. The Korean and global markets have been hit by crises before, but they've learned from their mistakes and evolved. So unless another massive financial shock hits, the smart play is to build long-term investments. To do that, Jinhoo wants to transform their company, OTK, into a holding company and start acquiring stakes in other businesses. Jinhoo suggests a new strategy: buy into companies with high growth potential, then take control of the ones that perform best. The goal is to double their 670 million in just 3 years. Taikyu likes the sound of it, even thinking the task doesn't seem too difficult. Jinhoo plans to analyze companies online and just wait for his eagle to appear. But after hours of staring at a screen with 0 results, he starts to think the whole thing was a massive waste of time. His friend shows up with a stack of papers, figuring it's less tiring to read printouts than to burn your eyes out on a monitor. The next morning, Taikyu wakes up to find Jinhoo surrounded by those same documents, having pulled an all-nighter. But Jinhoo reports that his eagle never showed. Worse, he's realized they're on the completely wrong path. The overall plan is fine, he explains, but their method is flawed. The way they're buying stakes just isn't getting the results they need. For huge billion-dollar companies, profit is a matter of time. But for smaller companies, the stock price is a total crapshoot. It either skyrockets or plummets. Jinhoo concludes that as their fund grows, it's only going to get harder to manage. Taikyu suggests investing in foreign markets, maybe even big tech companies. Jinhoo agrees it's a good idea, but points out that they need contacts or they'll have to hire an expert. No matter which business model they choose, they need a good team and solid information. Just then, Taikyu's phone rings. On the other end, his sister is furious, demanding to know why his house is completely empty. Taikyu calmly explains that he moved and gives her the new address. Jinhoo remarks that the timing couldn't be more perfect, since he wanted to speak with Oh Hyun-ju anyway, but she warns him that his sister is livid and this won't be a friendly visit. A little while later, Oh Hyun-ju arrives. Still angry, she looks around and asks who owns the place. Taikyu tells her it's his, and that he'll be living here from now on. That sets her off. She wants to know where the billions he had in his account went. Taikyu asks if that's the real reason she came back to Korea. Oh Hyun-ju explains that the recent Samsung incident shook the entire Korean market. But there's a rumor going around about a certain entity that bought a massive number of put options right before the news broke. As it turns out, this entity has an account at Golden Gate where she works. The trade was so huge, it massively boosted the Asian branch's balance sheet. She already knew that shell companies often use random letter combinations, so she had a hunch OTK was one of them. Then, a senior colleague connected the dots, mentioning he'd processed a transfer of over 10 billion won to a foreign account. Since Oh Hyun-ju was the one who opened the account for her brother, she had the authority to check his transaction history. To her horror, she discovered he'd spent every last one on Samsung put options. She demands to know what on earth he's been doing. Jinhoo immediately realizes she knows everything. Taikyu, however, just admits he bought the options and asks what he did wrong. Oh Hyun-ju tells him that because of his trade, the Financial Supervisory Service has formally requested documents from Golden Gate. They want OTK's transaction records and details on its owners. She says they're lucky for now because Golden Gate doesn't have that information, only the country where the company was established. But that refusal to cooperate only works on domestic institutions. Sooner or later, the truth will come out. She lays out the situation. OTK is under suspicion of using insider information, or even being directly involved in the accidents with Samsung's phones. For publicly traded companies, any relevant information has to be disclosed to all investors. Trading on information that isn't public is illegal. If OTK's profits are deemed illicit, the government will confiscate the money and they could both end up in prison. Oh Hyun-ju points out that without concrete proof, they can't be charged. Still, she wants to know exactly how they pulled this off. Jinhoo admits he was the one who passed on the information, which immediately raises the next question. How did he know? He hesitates, and that just makes Oh Hyun-ju angrier. She lays it out for them. If they don't give her a straight story, they could both go to jail, and she could get dragged down with them. So Jinhoo gives her the official version. As soon as news broke about the L6 smartphones exploding, he did a deep analysis. He concluded it had to be a manufacturing defect, one serious enough to get the entire model discontinued. After sharing his findings with Taikyu, his friend trusted the analysis and decided to bet on the prediction. They bought put options based on that, with no insider trading or third-party involvement. Oh Hyun-ju isn't an idiot. She knows they're holding something back, but for now, she decides their story is good enough. She brings up a past scandal, the Sweet Bank case, where a group manipulated stock prices to profit from the crash. Those guys made about 50 billion won, but these two kids, working out of a single room, made more than 10 times that amount. She explains that the Sweet Bank incident led to much stricter regulations, but what they did with Samsung is completely unprecedented. Even with protective hedges, a firm like Golden Gate lost $20 million, all because two investors used a faulty product to make billions. If OTK were a Korean company, she says, the three of them would be in court right now. But since the company is established overseas, they're in the clear. She looks at them. They made a huge mess with 13 15 billion. What? She asks. Do they plan to do now that they have so much more? Taikyu explains the new company structure. Jinhoo owns 80% and he took the other 20. His sister is floored. She asks why on earth he would give Jinhoo the majority stake. Taikyu's logic is simple. Jinhoo brought the information and suggested the play. He just put up the capital. Oh Hyun-ju calls the arrangement ridiculous. In the financial world, the person with the capital takes the biggest cut. She tells her brother he basically just gave the company away. But Taikyu knew exactly what he was doing. He needed Jinhoo to manage the company so they could continue investing together. His sister isn't convinced. She calls their last investment a lucky break and asks if they really intend to continue with this madness. Taikyu confirms he has a plan, but he needs her help to make it work. To sweeten the deal, he offers her 3% of his shares, the equivalent of 20 billion won. Jinhoo chimes in, saying he understands her concern about him running things, but he promises he isn't reckless. He also points out that she wouldn't have to quit her current job. In fact, she could use her position to bring them valuable information. Oh Hyun-ju's response is to send Jinhoo out to buy her a coffee. As he leaves, Jinhoo thinks about her. Oh Hyun-ju has been a genius her whole life, getting into a top economics program with the best scores. She landed a job at one of the world's most exclusive investment banks and quickly became a team leader. Her brother, meanwhile, spent half his life slacking off before accidentally becoming a billionaire. Jinhoo can see why accepting a job offer from him would be a tough pill to swallow. When he gets back, Taikyu tells him the good news. His sister is in. Then, Oh Hyun-ju sends her brother out to buy her cigarettes. She wants to talk to Jinhoo alone. Jinhoo thanks her for joining them, but she's practical. The offer was too tempting to refuse, and she knew if she said no, they'd just find someone else. Besides, she admits, this is the first time her brother has ever been serious about anything that wasn't one of his otaku hobbies. She still thinks their investment was reckless, but she has to respect the results. She confesses she'd never have the guts for a move that risky. She expects that kind of behavior from her brother, but she was surprised to see it from Jinhoo. Jinhoo explains that he spent most of his life with no money, so he was willing to risk everything for a chance at a real score. He figures all the world's greatest investors had to take a huge risk at some point, and this was his. Oh Hyun-ju reminds him that the financial world is full of experts, but it's also full of crooks. After 10 years in the business, even she doesn't know everything. Jinhoo gets it. She's worried about her brother. He promises her that no matter what happens, he won't let Taikyu get into trouble. Hearing that seems to put her mind at ease. She tells him she's counting on him to look after her brother and the company. And just like that, OTK Company has 3 partners. Jinhoo holds 80%, Taekyu has 17%, and Oh Hyun-ju is on board with 3%. Sometime later, Jinhoo lays out his next move. He'll open a separate investment firm, leaving OTK to function as a holding company. Oh Hyun-ju thinks it's a solid plan, but wonders how Jinhoo will manage it all. She assures him there's no rush. She's there to help. First on the list is finding a trustworthy person to run the new company, someone who can act as his right hand, and he asks for her help finding the right candidate. She comes back with some high-quality intel, an internal report from Golden Gate. Since OTK is a major client, they have the legal right to request this kind of information. Oh Hyun-ju has basically handed him a menu of the market's biggest upcoming trends for him to choose from. Just then, Jinhoo gets a call from Park Sang-yeop, inviting him to dinner. When they meet, Jinhoo immediately clocks the brand new suit. His friend must be dressed up for a special occasion. Sang-yeop announces that dinner's on him, which prompts Jinhoo to ask if he finally paid off his debts. Not only did he pay them off, but he has Jinhoo to thank. That tip about Samsung saved him. Jinhoo asks if he also bought put options on Samsung electronics. Sang-yeop says no. He never actually believed the L6 would be discontinued. Instead, he reasoned the real problem was the battery, which meant the battery manufacturers would take the hit. So he took the 700,000 won he had left after paying his monthly bills and bought put options on Samsung's insurer. The result? A cool 150 million won. Jinhoo is floored. Even with his future knowledge, he wasn't completely sure how things would play out, but he realizes Park Sang-yeop is a natural investor. He saw an opportunity, didn't hesitate, and risked everything he had to become a millionaire. Sang-yeop explains that after clearing his debts, the first thing he did was buy this suit. He also knows Jinhoo and his partner made a killing. A friend in the finance sector told him some foreign corporation swept up all the Samsung call options. After their last conversation, Sang-yeop had no doubt who was behind it. He adds that his friend suspected the company buying the put options was Japanese, since its name was OTK Company. It didn't take much for Sang-yeop to connect all the dots. Jinhoo asks if that's the real reason for this dinner. Sang-yeop says yes. Jinhoo pulled him out of a hole, and he wanted to properly thank him. Jinhoo just asks him to keep it quiet. He's not looking to make headlines. Sang Yeop promises, but then immediately asks where they are investing next. Jinhoo plays it cool, saying he's not sure he'll even continue. But Sang Yeop isn't buying it. He knows they're setting up a new corporation and he wants in. He makes his pitch. Jinhoo needs someone who's good with numbers and analysis to win in this market, and he's the guy. He claims he's studied the market more than anyone, and that nobody can do what he does. Besides, he trusts Jinhoo's instincts and has already decided to work for him. The suit, it turns out, wasn't just for dinner. It finally clicks for Jinhoo. This isn't a thank you dinner, it's a job interview. Sang Yeop lays it out plainly. Jinhoo is the CEO, so the decision is his. Jinhoo thinks it over. His current team is good, but they won't be enough for what's coming. He needs someone to be his hands and feet, someone who gets his vision. He asks Sang Yeop if he's up for that. Despite being older, Sang Yeop says he has no problem working for Jinhoo and is more than capable of meeting his needs. Jinhoo reflects that a CEO's most important skill is embracing talented people. And right now, Park Sang Yeop is the most qualified person he knows. With that, Jinhoo officially hires his new employee. With Park Sang Yeop officially on board, he asks if the team is really just the two of them. Taekyu clarifies that his older sister is also part of the operation. She's a team leader at Golden Gate's Asian branch and is handling all their legal and administrative work. Changing the subject, Jinhoo asks how Sang Yeop's old company took his resignation. He says they immediately tried to keep him with a pay raise, which only made him regret not quitting sooner. But now he's focused on riding the wave of the next big industry reorganization. Yeop explains his thinking. When Apple launched the first iPhone, other companies dismissed it. By doing so, many of them were completely replaced because the iPhone offered multiple devices in one. He believes ordinary people only recognize genius after the world has already changed. He has no intention of being an ordinary person. He wants to be there right as the change is happening. Jinhoo realizes Park Sang Yeop is a different breed of thinker. He definitely made the right call bringing him in. Taegyu agrees and proposes a toast to the future of their new team. The next morning, Jinhoo wakes up at home with a killer hangover. After pulling himself together, his first thought is about his next investment. Just then, Taekyu wakes up too, annoyed by a phone alarm. He sees someone named Shin-Yu Ri is calling his friend and lets him know. Jinhoo answers, and the freshman on the other end asks why he never called her back like he promised. He apologizes, claiming he was busy. Shin-Yu Ri is surprisingly understanding. She just invites him to lunch instead. Jinhoo remembers that she's the reason he got the vision about Samsung. He figures the least he can do is buy her a meal to say thanks. She's thrilled he accepted, and they make plans to meet. Taekyu immediately wants to know who this girl is. Jinhoo tells him she's just a freshman from his university, which prompts Taekyu to ask if they're dating. The protagonist says no, but his friend reminds him he has a mission to focus on. He can't afford any distractions. Jinhoo says he understands, but as he thinks about paying for lunch, he realizes he's completely out of cash. He spent everything, and his new card hasn't arrived yet. So, a little embarrassed, he has to ask his friend for a loan. Jinhoo can't help but think about the irony. Billions in offshore accounts and he can't even buy a meal. Taekyu lends him the money but tells him to be smart. A while later, Jinhoo meets the freshman at the restaurant. She asks if he had any trouble finding his way to this neighborhood. Jinhoo mentions he actually just moved to Gangnam. This makes her light up, saying they can see each other more often now that they live so close. He finds her attitude a little strange. Even his ex-girlfriend wasn't this friendly when they were together. He starts to wonder why this girl is being so nice to him. When the bill arrives, Shin-Yu Ri insists on paying since she was the one who invited him. She tells Jinhoo he can get it next time. She says she just didn't want to eat alone and was happy to have the company. She then points to her apartment building, which is clearly in a prime location. She tells Jinhoo he should visit sometime. The building has a great view of the Han River and a really nice lounge area. The two of them walk over to her complex, and Jinhoo notes that his own place doesn't have a walking area nearly this large. Shin-Yu Ri explains that while she has her own apartment, she lives alone since her parents work overseas. Hearing this, Jinhoo can only think one thing. This girl comes from money. Not just anyone can afford property in a location like this. In the middle of their walk, Shin-Yu Ri says something has been on her mind since they last met. Then she asks him, point blank, how did he know Samsung was going to discontinue the L6 phones? Jinhoo's mind immediately flashes to Taegyu's warning to be careful. He needs to think very carefully before he answers. Jinhoo explains that when the phone launched, so many people reported problems that he just guessed it would be discontinued. Shin-Yu Ri admits she thought he had inside information, since he sounded so certain at the time. He plays it cool, saying there's no way he could have known for sure. It was just a hunch. She wishes she'd known about the issues sooner, as it would have saved her a lot of trouble. On top of that, her mom is upset because her Samsung stock took a nosedive after the news broke. Even with the recent recovery, she's still in the red. So Shin-Yu Ri asks for his advice. Should her mom sell the shares now, or wait it out? Jinhoo tells her to hold. He's confident Samsung will bounce back with their next smartphone. He points out that most Koreans, including her, chose to exchange the faulty device for a new one instead of taking a refund. But more importantly, Samsung's main business isn't phones, it's semiconductors. factors. With the chip industry booming, their investments give them a huge advantage. He argues that since the industry is only going to grow, holding Samsung stock is the best move, even with the current crisis. Then he adds a quick disclaimer. He's no expert. This is just his personal opinion. But Shin Yu-ri doesn't care. She says even specialists get things wrong and she's going to follow his advice. Jin-hoo is surprised to learn she owns stock too, but she explains she used her allowance to buy some when the prices crashed. The thought immediately crosses his mind. If her allowance is enough to buy stocks, this girl's family is seriously wealthy. Just then, her grandmother appears and asks if Jin-hoo is her boyfriend. Shin Yu-ri quickly clarifies that they're just friends, but Grandma insists she should marry this handsome young man before another girl does. After they part ways, Shin Yu-ri explains her grandmother's backstory. She used to own a small shop on a piece of prime real estate, which she eventually sold to a major department store. With the money, she bought 3 apartments in the new condo building, one for herself and one for each of her 2 children. And just like that, Jin-hoo understands the source of her family's wealth. But it's more than just a fun fact. Something clicks. He tells Shin Yu-ri that thanks to her, he's just figured out his next move. He promises to buy her coffee next time they meet, then takes off. To her, it's just Jin-hoo being weird and running away again. For him, it's a breakthrough. He rushes home and tells his friend Taekyu he knows what to do. Taekyu's first question is whether Jin-hoo had another vision. Jin-hoo says no, but he realized that apartment redevelopment is the perfect model for what they want to do. He explains how a plot of land with a small house on it can be sold to a conglomerate and become a skyscraper, making the original owner rich. But that's all based on luck. The owner had no way of knowing the land would become so valuable. Taekyu asks what any of this has to do with stocks. Jin-hoo connects the dots. For companies, the equivalent of undeveloped land is a startup. Investing in one today could mean selling that asset for a massive profit in the future. The difference is, they can't rely on luck. They have to target the startups with the highest probability of success and invest for the long term. Taekyu sees the logic, but notes how difficult that would be. Jin-hoo reminds him that they have an advantage no one else does, the ability to see which startups are the right ones. With the plan set, all that's left is to find their targets. After the new year, Jin-hoo's mother comes to visit. They have a pleasant dinner and give her a tour of the new place. Jin-hoo says there's plenty of room for her to move in, but she's happy in her current house. She does, however, promise to visit more often. Once she leaves, Jin-hoo gets right back to work. Taekyu explains that basically every startup is negotiating with Golden Gate, so he's compiled a list of the most promising ones. But Jin-hoo isn't interested in them. He wants to see the list of companies that were rejected. His reasoning is simple. The companies that found secure investment are obvious targets. The real potential lies with the ones everyone else overlooked, and he's the only one who can spot it. Taekyu points out that's a massive amount of paperwork for 2 people to analyze. Jin-hoo's already thought of that. He's put his sister on the initial screening, since it's the kind of routine she's used to. Still, Jin-hoo has to personally review her selections. His vision only works if he's the one doing the final check. Sometime later, he's getting tired of going through the papers one by one. He tries an experiment, touching the entire stack at once. He feels his power stir, confirming that the right document is in there somewhere. So he spreads every single paper out on the floor. He asks his friend to arrange them so that none are overlapping. This new method lets him analyze the documents much faster, easily discarding the useless ones. Days pass. While Jin-hoo does all the heavy lifting, Taekyu is on the couch playing video games. Eventually, Jin-hoo presents a small stack of papers with potential, saying he's narrowed it down as much as he can. Taekyu tells him to get some rest. He's been at this for days, but Jin-hoo insists he's come too far in 10 days to stop now, not when he's so close to the answer. Right then, he passes out from exhaustion and falls into another vision. This time, it's not an eagle, it's a unicorn. A message appears, telling him that in a partially unknown Eden, he'll find what he's looking for. Jin-hoo is thrilled. His vision has finally come through. Jin-hoo finally wakes up. According to his friend, he's been out for nearly 20 hours. He mentions having a weird dream about a unicorn, but the details are already gone. Taekyu, however, has been busy. He's already drawn up a list of potential investment targets and says they need to form a specialized negotiation team to get started. Jin-hoo points out the flaw in that plan. Setting up a whole investment firm and recruiting talent will take months. By then, their target companies could easily find other investors. He has a 2-pronged strategy in mind to make sure they don't miss out. A little while later, he puts a meeting on the books. Park Sang-yup was told he'd be meeting the team, and his nerves got the better of him. He shows up way ahead of schedule, figuring it can't hurt to be early. But as he approaches the room, he overhears talk of massive investments, and his confidence takes a hit. Inside, Jin-hoo, Taekyu, and Oh Hyun-ju are looking at startups. Oh Hyun-ju reports that she's already scheduled meetings with foreign companies. Jin-hoo wants to avoid Korean startups for now, since OTK is still under the watchful eye of financial supervisors. He needs to keep things as quiet as possible, because he knows the plan will only work as long as his company isn't seen to be directly involved. Right then, Park Sang-yup finally makes his entrance. Jinhoo introduces him as a senior from his university and an experienced mathematician. He then introduces Oh Hyun-ju as the head of Golden Gate's Asian team and Taekyu's sister. Once the pleasantries are over, Jinhoo calls Sang-yeop out for listening at the door, knowing the man is too punctual to have just arrived. He gets right to the point. He's establishing an investment firm as a subsidiary of OTK Company, with OTK as the sole shareholder, and he's entrusting this new subsidiary to Park Sang-yeop, backing him with 70 million in capital and offering a personal annual salary of 100 million. Sang-yeop is floored. After their last talk, he never expected to be thrown into something this big right away. Besides, you don't invest that kind of money in just anyone. For Jinhoo to choose him means he must have incredible faith in his potential. Jinhoo says he knows Sang-yeop well enough to trust him with the job. In fact, he says it would be hard to find anyone more capable. All that's left is to find a good place for an office. On that note, Sang-yeop mentions he already saw a good spot on his way to the meeting. Since Jinhoo had hinted at the topic beforehand, he figured he should get a head start. Jinhoo just smiles. That's exactly why he chose him. Taekyu chimes in that now would be a good time to pick a name for the new subsidiary. Jinhoo immediately shuts that down. He's not letting his friend choose this time, not with his track record of otaku-inspired names. Sang-yeop points out that the K in OTK stands for guarding or protecting, and suggests they call the subsidiary K Company. Taekyu and his sister agree. It's simple, but it's cool. Jinhoo gives the final approval. K Company it is. And with that, he officially names Park Sang-yeop the CEO. With the meeting over, Hyun-ju gets to work setting up the subsidiary company. Sang-yeop is put in charge of vetting startups for investment. Meanwhile, employees from Golden Gate are sent over to K Company headquarters to be integrated into the team. Taekyu is blown away by their new building. Jinhoo explains the choice was strategic. Its proximity to the airport makes it easily accessible for Golden Gate staff and international investors. Hyun-ju then mentions she's arranged a meeting with an international lawyer. Right on cue, the lawyer arrives. Her name is Ellie Kim, a friend of Hyun-ju's who's also affiliated with Golden Gate. Fresh from the airport, she introduces herself, explaining that while she lives abroad, her father is Korean, so she's perfectly fluent in the language. Jinhoo admits he was expecting an old man and bluntly asks if she's up to the task. Hyun-ju steps in, vouching for her friend's competence. She also clarifies that she only gave Ellie the bare minimum of information, since no one at Golden Gate knows Jinhoo is the real owner of OTK. Jinhoo understands lawyer-client privilege, but he still wants to be in the meetings himself. He'll delegate only the purely legal processes to Ellie. As the team waits for the first meeting, Jinhoo can't help but feel nervous. For Ellie and Hyun-ju, this is just another day at the office, but for him, the pressure is on. He knows it's his job to lead. The first founders arrive, Toby Strong and Gerald Bacon, looking for investors to scale their startup. Their pitch is simple. They want to become the Netflix of adult content. Toby argues the industry is massive but unprofessional, full of illegal files, a problem he intends to solve. Jinhoo has already analyzed their startup. The business model isn't bad, but the adult-only content severely limits their target audience. Taekyu, on the other hand, is completely sold. His sister Hyun-ju isn't so sure, thinking an adult content streamer is a risky bet. But Taekyu insists he's the expert on this particular subject and tells her not to back out. After a serious discussion, they land on a deal. $9 million for 80% of the company. The next meeting is with a startup that sells autonomous pizza cooking equipment for food trucks, designed to cut labor costs. Taekyu is once again an instant fan, though his sister remains skeptical. He declares himself the table's foremost pizza authority and argues that cooking pizzas en route to the customer is a game changer. Ellie weighs in, noting that pizza is a massive market in the US, and this kind of technology could genuinely revolutionize it. After some debate, they agree to invest $7.5 million in the pizza startup. After a long day of business meetings, Jinhoo is completely drained. Taekyu doesn't get it, asking what's so tiring about sitting in a chair all day. Jinhoo admits he's impressed by his friend's calm demeanor. For him, juggling all those numbers is incredibly stressful. To clear his head, Jinhoo steps outside for some fresh air, where he runs into Ellie. She says she went for a run after feeling stiff from sitting all day, then asks if he wants to get a drink with her. Jinhoo is surprised by the invitation, but he accepts. A little while later, Jinhoo and Ellie are at a convenience store. She mentions this is her third time in Korea, but her first for work. Jinhoo thanks her, saying her presence has been a huge help. Ellie, in turn, is impressed. She can't believe the company that turned the financial industry upside down is run by just 2 people. She explains that the Samsung incident didn't just hit Korea, it affected the whole world, including her own firm Golden Gate. And in the middle of that chaos, an unknown company called OTK made millions. She finds the whole thing remarkable. Jinhoo just chalks it up to beginner's luck, but Ellie knows it takes a lot more than luck to pull off what he did. He tries to deflect again, saying he didn't do it alone and had help from his friend and sister. Ellie notes that because of the name, many people assumed OTK was Japanese Japanese. She did too, until she met them. But with an important day tomorrow, she decides it's time to stop drinking. They head back to the hotel. Before they part ways, Ellie asks Jinhoo who his favorite actor is. He doesn't really have an answer, or at least, he'd rather not share. The next day, the meetings begin with a Chinese startup focused on efficient logistics. The owners explain that while China has plenty of railways, it's still heavily dependent on disorganized road transport. For example, a truck might deliver goods from Shanghai to Shan, but then drive all the way back empty if it can't find a return load. So, they developed an app to connect shippers with drivers, optimizing routes and cutting costs. Hyunju isn't convinced the system is as efficient as they claim. The founders insist it's both functional and economical. They then start discussing things amongst themselves in Chinese, leaving Jinhoo completely in the dark. But Ellie understands every word. She cuts in, assuring them that her firm values their idea. Just like that, the tension in the room dissolves. Ellie's move wins over the partners. They manage to close a deal that satisfies both sides. After selecting the startups for investment, Jinhoo finds he already misses the intensity of the meetings. He makes sure to thank Hyunju, telling her she was essential to the negotiations. Sometime later, they stop for lunch. Jinhoo points out they haven't stopped working since they founded the company and suggests they take a day off. Ellie asks if he has any plans. He doesn't, so she asks him to be her tour guide in Seoul. Hyunju immediately chimes in, asking if Ellie is asking their boss on a date. Ellie confirms that she is, and Jinhoo says he has no problem with that. In that case, she'll go get ready and meet him later. That same day, they meet in the hotel lobby. Jinhoo is a little dazzled to see Ellie all dressed up. Outside, his friend Taekyu makes a surprise appearance. Knowing Jinhoo rarely goes out, Taekyu offers to lend him his car. Jinhoo would really rather he didn't, being deeply embarrassed by the over-the-top otaku car. But Ellie actually likes it, so now he's stuck with it. On the road, Jinhoo asks if there's anywhere specific she wants to go. She says there is. She'd like to visit a Korean university. Ellie mentions that her previous trips to Korea have been strictly for work or tourism. She'd heard a lot about Korea University from Hyunju and knew it was Jinhoo's alma mater. For Jinhoo, heading back to his old university isn't a big deal. The problem is the flashy car he's driving. When they arrive, Jinhoo explains that some areas are student only, but they can still walk around the main grounds. It doesn't take long for some of his old classmates to spot him, and of course they see him standing right next to the otaku mobile he was so desperate to hide. One of them, a girl named Lee Hai-mi, sneers that he should be ashamed to drive something like that. His other friends just tell him to ignore her, same as always. Offended, Hai-mi decides she's not going to be dismissed so easily. Just then, she spots Jinhoo's ex-girlfriend, Siona, walking nearby and makes a point of calling her over. To make matters worse, Siona is with her current boyfriend. Jinhoo is mortified. He's standing next to a tacky car, fully aware that Siona's new boyfriend is rich and drives something much nicer. Hayami knows this too, which is exactly why she orchestrated this little reunion. That's when Ellie walks up saying it's a pleasure to meet Jinhoo's friends. She introduces herself formally as an employee from Golden Gate, currently visiting on business. The entire group is stunned to see Jinhoo with someone so impressive. Siona's boyfriend, Jun-hyung, introduces himself and asks what brings her to Korea. Ellie explains she's here for work, but after a few tiring days stuck in a hotel, she asked Jinhoo for a tour of the university. Seeing his chance, Jun-hyung hands her his business card, mentioning that he and his father have dealings with Golden Gate. Ellie recognizes the company, GH Construction, and notes their work in Indonesia, news to Jinhoo. Not that he really cares about any of that right now. Siona, clearly not enjoying this exchange, pulls her boyfriend away. With the drama over, Jinhoo's actual friends invite him and Ellie to lunch. Hyami, however, is fuming that another woman is stealing her spotlight and mutters that working for a famous firm isn't even that big of a deal. After an afternoon spent dodging nosy questions, the university tour finally wraps up. Jinhoo takes Ellie to see another part of the city. As they walk, Ellie comments that the girl with Jun-hyung was just as pretty as Taekyu had described. She also lets it slip that she knows Jinhoo dated her for a while, right up until he enlisted in the army. Jinhoo grumbles that Taekyu talks too much, but insists it's all in the past. He has nothing to do with that girl anymore. Ellie notes that they have a busy day of work tomorrow, but says she really enjoyed spending time with him. Jinhoo agrees, admitting he had a lot of fun with her too. Away from the university, Jun-hyung notices Siona seems bothered. He says he knows she and Jinhoo used to date, but what he found strange wasn't seeing him. It was the car he was in. Siona figures it must belong to Jinhoo's friend, Taekyu. This just raises more questions for Jun-hyung, who wonders what their connection is to a lawyer from Golden Gate. Siona explains that Taekyu's older sister also works at Golden Gate in the Asian branch. Still, Jun-hyung feels something was off about Jinhoo. Unlike everyone else, the guy didn't seem the least bit intimidated by him. Siona agrees that Jinhoo has changed a lot, but she makes it clear she's done talking about him. Back with the protagonist, he's in another startup meeting. The company's owner explains their focus is on AI-generated architecture, using machine learning to design increasingly complex skyscrapers. This time, it's Hyunju who's impressed. and she immediately agrees to invest. Afterwards, she says the next meeting is a while away, so they have time to rest. Ellie takes the chance to invite Jin-Hoo to play squash. He turns her down, saying he's still sore from overdoing it last time. Later, Jin-Hoo is relaxing with his friend and notes that for someone who doesn't speak much English, Taikyu is paying surprisingly close attention. The otaku doesn't reveal his true intentions, but thinks to himself that so far, only one startup has really caught his eye. He just tells Jin-Hoo that since it's his money being invested, he wants to know where it's going. In response, Jin-Hoo asks if he's ever heard of Song Masayoshi. Taikyu recognizes the name as the man behind Alibaba, the Chinese online shopping site. Jin-Hoo explains that in the early days, the online market was dominated by eBay, but when the director of Softbox, Song Masayoshi, visited Beijing on business, Alibaba's founder immediately requested a meeting. After just 2 hours, Song Masayoshi agreed to invest $20 million in the company. At the time, no one imagined a Chinese website could compete with an American one, but 20 years later, eBay had to pull out of the Chinese market due to low sales, and Alibaba went public on the New York Stock Exchange. Today, Alibaba's market value is around $330 million, making it more valuable than Samsung. Softbox's $20 million investment for a 30% stake paid off more than anyone could have dreamed. Jin-Hoo connects this back to his friend's complaint that none of their investments have shown immediate returns. He argues that, like Masayoshi, they're investing in businesses with huge long-term potential. Jin-Hoo says that just as Song Masayoshi planted a $20 million seed that blossomed into 11 trillion, OTK could one day reach the same level. They just have to pick the right startup. This clicks for Taikyu, who realizes that with 600 million, they have far more to invest than Masayoshi did, giving them a larger margin for error. Jin-Hoo agrees that even if they don't hit it big on the first try, one critical success will make it all worthwhile. Just then, Hyunju appears with news. She just got a call from the company Jin-Hoo has always wanted to meet and asks if she should schedule a meeting. Hyunju reports that the people from Kairos are coming to Korea and asks if Jin-Hoo wants to meet them. She notes that not every startup they invited has accepted a meeting since most have already found other investors. Jin-Hoo points out that Kairos also rejected their initial proposal. Hyunju clarifies that OTK's first offer simply wasn't enough for them. A short time later, Kairos's COO Ryan Gates and CFO Sergey Yovanovich arrive in Korea. After Hyunju and Ellie introduce themselves, the two executives look right past Jin-Hoo and Taikyu, assuming they're just assistants. They ask who at OTK actually has the authority to make decisions. Hyunju calmly informs them that she does. With that settled, Ryan gets straight to the point. Kairos needs an investment of $100 million. Hyunju doesn't blink, confirming her company is more than capable of providing that amount. Jin-Hoo sees she has the arrogant foreigners handled and decides to let her run the meeting. Ryan offers to simplify his project pitch, but Hyunju cuts him off. She's already familiar with the details and wants to hear about their current complicated situation, so Sergey lays out the history. The modern car market is dominated by two things: electric and autonomous vehicles. 5 years ago, Amazon invested heavily, followed by South Korea's Hyundai. A small Japanese stake was sold to Kairos a year later. Eventually, Amazon gave up and sold its share to Hyundai, who then bought Kairos, effectively cornering the electric vehicle market. Hyunju asks the obvious question: if Hyundai is so dominant, why are they trying to sell Kairos now? Sergey explains that their collaboration fell apart. A Samsung subsidiary proved to be more efficient, making Kairos redundant. Now Hyundai just wants to sell off Kairos's patents and tech to get some of their investment back. Hearing this, Taikyu can't stay quiet. He asks what the point is of buying a company that's essentially a cast-off from Hyundai. Then he turns to Jin-Hoo, asking if he knew about this connection. Jin-Hoo says he did, which is all Taikyu needs to hear before pulling him into another room for a private talk. Away from the meeting, Taikyu insists Jin-Hoo isn't thinking clearly and demands to know what he's planning. Ellie wonders if this is personal for him. Jin-Hoo finally tells them the truth. Hyundai is the company that destroyed his family and caused his father's death. Jin-Hoo lays out the backstory. His father ran a small metalworking company, DHK Engenharia, with just 10 employees. After years of work, he developed an integrated suspension system and was ready to patent it. That's when a representative from Hyundai showed up, wanting to buy the patent for one of their vehicles, but they needed a product sample for analysis first. A short time later, Hyundai canceled the contract. They had used the sample to copy the design, then rushed to patent the technology before the actual inventor could. Jin-Hoo says his father was never the same after that, right up until the day he died. Ellie asks if DHK at least got any compensation for the canceled contract. Hyunju explains that as a foreign lawyer, Ellie doesn't know how things work in Korea. Here, a small company almost never wins against a corporate giant in court. The big corporations just drag out the legal proceedings, burying the little guy in legal fees they can't afford. Despite all this, Jin-Hoo says he's putting his family history aside for now to focus on the business. But even setting emotion aside, Hyunju is is against the deal. She argues that spending so much on a company with nothing left to offer is just a bad investment. Ellie agrees. The Karos patents are only worth about 50 million, so paying double is a guaranteed loss. It would also tie up most of their 120 million in capital, limiting their future options. Taekyu is also completely against it, for the simple reason that he refuses to do anything that benefits Hyundai. Jinhoo knows they're right. If it weren't for his vision, he'd be against this deal too. Hyunju makes it clear her job is to give her professional analysis. The final call, however, belongs to the owner. So Taekyu asks his friend what the decision is. Jinhoo's response is that he needs to meet with the CEO of Karos. The representative, Ryan, claims that's not possible. His boss is busy, which is why he sent them instead. Hyunju isn't having it. She reminds them that Karos is the one asking for help, not OTK, and a $100 million offer isn't something you just brush off. Faced with that logic, the Karos reps promise to talk to their boss and arrange a meeting. A little later, Taekyu admits that while he doesn't get it, he respects his friend's decision. But he has to ask, is Jinhoo satisfied with this? Jinhoo thinks about how he was up all night asking himself the same question. In the end, he decided to trust his vision and push his personal feelings down. Soon after, Daryl Sagan, the CEO of Karos, arrives at the hotel and greets Jinhoo. The moment they shake hands, another vision hits the protagonist, and with that, he gets all the confirmation he needs. Jinhoo is now ready to see the acquisition of Karos through to the end. At the meeting, Daryl Sagan lays out his company's vision. He explains that modern cars aren't just engines and wheels anymore, they're also computers, and Karos plans to build an AI that can control the entire vehicle on its own. Hyunju points out that this kind of tech is already on the market, but Sagan clarifies that his software is different. It's not just an autopilot system, it's a true AI capable of thinking like a human. As interesting as the project is, the CEO of Hyundai isn't buying it. That's why Karos is looking for a new investor. Sagan explains that Hyundai only cares about immediate results, so they neglect long-term projects and stick with generic software. Jinhoo realizes that of all the projects his company has ever backed, nothing comes close to the AI system Daryl Sagan is describing. It's all starting to click. This is why his future vision led him here. He asks about the current ownership structure of Karos. Sagan lays it out. Hyundai owns 86%, he holds 6.5%, and the employees have the remaining 7.5%. He explains that talent in Silicon Valley is expensive, so they offer stock options in place of huge salaries. Jinhoo knows buying out Hyundai's stake in Karos will be expensive, but he's determined to make it happen. Still, he's not about to pay their full asking price. After all, Karos is the one in a hurry, not OTK. Instead, Jinhoo declares that OTK will invest in Karos directly. He also promises that unlike Hyundai, OTK won't interfere with their management or their projects. He believes that even if the results aren't immediate, Karos has the potential to achieve something huge. On those terms, Daryl Sagan agrees. He'll leave Hyundai and sign with OTK. Jinhoo can't wait for the competition to realize the massive mistake they just made. They just gave up a company that's going to be worth billions in a few years. Taekyu celebrates too. Even though he was against the idea at first, he trusts his friend is making the right call. After his last ride, Jinhoo decides it's time for an upgrade. He never wants to set foot in his friend's car again. So they head to a BMW center where Jinhoo has an appointment to test drive a few models. Taekyu remarks that they're the only ones who know that the future of cars is all about AI. While the girls go grab coffee, Jinhoo and Taekyu start browsing. Their arrival catches the eye of two salesmen. One immediately writes them off as broke students who are just window shopping. The other, a rookie, figures he might as well get some customer service practice out of it. He approaches and offers a test drive, suggesting a popular new convertible, the 4 Coupe. But Jinhoo has his eye on something else. The salesman compliments his taste, noting it's BMW's top-selling model. He gives them the tour and the price tag, 140 million won. Jinhoo needs a second. Taekyu clarifies that the price is in won, not dollars, but Jinhoo admits he doesn't have that kind of cash in his account. He asks to borrow it. Taekyu hands over his credit card without a second thought, telling Jinhoo he can pay him back with future dividends. On a roll, Taekyu decides to buy a car for himself too, and picks out the most expensive luxury sports model in the showroom. The salesman is just going through the motions, expecting them to balk at the price. So he's a little surprised when Jinhoo says he'll take both cars, and pay in full right now. The rookie Kim Do-yoon learns a valuable lesson. Every customer is a potential VIP. He heads off to draw up the paperwork, leaving his senior colleague to stew in jealousy over the massive commission he just missed. Jinhoo asks Taekyu if he's happy with his new ride. Taekyu is, but mentions the car isn't really suited for decals. Jinhoo quickly agrees, saying it looks much better stock. Taekyu then reminds Jinhoo that this is the second loan he's floated him, mentioning the 100,000 for that date. And of course, Ellie is standing right there to hear it. She remarks that the date must have been pretty important for Jinhoo to have to borrow money. Taekyu chimes in that Jinhoo even took the girl home. Sensing the mood shifting, Hyunju quickly changes the subject by asking if they've picked out their cars. Her brother proudly shows off his new purchase, and Jinhoo shows his. Ellie dryly comments that at least now he won't be embarrassed to go out. Jinhoo quietly asks her not to tell Taekyu about the last car incident. It's childish, he knows, but he doesn't want to offend his friend. Ellie seems to realize Jinhoo is a better friend than he lets on. With some time to kill before her flight, she invites everyone on a farewell trip to an amusement park. Hyunju doesn't have the best time, since she's not a fan of thrill rides. At the end of the day, Ellie and Hyunju head off on their trip. Jinhoo tells his friend the hard part is over. All their investment plays have been made. Now they just have to wait, see which startup pays off big, and enjoy a little downtime. A while later, they arrive at the K subsidiary headquarters. Park Sang-yeop is there to congratulate them on closing the deal, but Jinhoo can see the man is running on fumes. Sang-yeop insists he's fine, just been holding down the fort while they were away. Taekyu suggests dinner, but they end up just ordering food to the office. It turns out Sang-yeop hasn't even found an apartment yet, and has been living there since he started. Jinhoo decides this can't continue. It's time to hire more staff, so Sang-yeop isn't doing all the work alone. Park Sang-yeop says he knows a few people, but has someone specific in mind, Jung Gi-hong. Jinhoo recognizes the name from college, and heard the guy is unemployed, but he's not looking to hire personal acquaintances right now. Changing the subject, Sang-yeop asks about their next investment targets. He wants to know Jinhoo's criteria, because his choices don't follow any clear trend. It's almost like he's being directed by someone else. Jinhoo just says he picks companies with growth potential, and his only real metric is all or nothing. That answer doesn't satisfy Park Sang-yeop. He tells Jinhoo he's operating on a level beyond any genius he's ever met. This is more than just good intuition. In any case, Sang-yeop reports that after setting up the company headquarters, they have 6 billion left of the initial 70, and he'd like to invest it. Jinhoo agrees, and asks if Sang-yeop has found anything special. As it turns out, he already has a list of potential targets prepared. A few days later, the negotiations with Hyundai conclude. OTK acquires Caros for $88 million, well below the expected value. Not only that, but the cars Jinhoo bought have finally been delivered to their address. He decides it's time to take his new ride for a spin. His first stop is to visit his mom. She's in the middle of preparing to move into her new house. Jinhoo shows her the new car and tells her he bought it for her. Stunned, she asks how much something like this could have possibly cost. The protagonist says all that matters is whether she likes it. Taekyu adds that he has a gift for her too. Arriving at the new house, he reveals he's already furnished the entire place with brand new equipment. Their mother is flattered by all the gifts, but says she doesn't know if she deserves it. Jinhoo tells her not to worry about that and to just enjoy her new life. That's his plan too. He's going to travel the world. His mom asks if he and Taekyu are going to study abroad together. Taekyu, for his part, thinks this has absolutely nothing to do with him. A year passes, and it turns out the two of them went on a world tour. Taekyu was voluntarily dragged along, which is why he's crying tears of joy to finally be home. Just then, Shin Ri calls Jinhoo with a reminder, today is the last day to re-enroll in university. Jinhoo agrees to meet up and talk it over. Taekyu, seeing him head out, asks where he's going when they just got back. Jinhoo tells him he's heading to the university. He plans to go back to his studies and finally graduate. When he meets Shin Ri, she explains that she also took a year off. That's why she was so insistent he come back at the same time she did. She invites him to lunch, saying there's something else she wants to discuss. Jinhoo heads to a car, but clarifies that it's not his. It belongs to his friend. Shin Ri is pretty impressed that a friend would just lend out a car like this. Jinhoo just explains that his friend is a homebody, so the car doesn't get much use anyway. At the restaurant, Jinhoo notices the high prices and asks if she's really sure about covering the bill. She insists, saying she owes him for always picking up her calls over the past year. It helped her not feel so alone. Besides, she tells him she made a killing on Samsung stock thanks to his advice. With that out of the way, she asks what Jinhoo plans to do now that he's back. He admits he's actually planning another trip soon, this time to Hong Kong to see a friend. Shin Ri mentions she's always wanted to see Hong Kong, and maybe she can make it there during the next break. Back at home, Taekyu finds Jinhoo with a crisis on his hands. The sequel to his favorite game from the same studio just got cancelled for lack of funding. This is the game he loves so much he had his old car wrapped with a picture of the main character. He can't stand to see the new project die. So he begs Jinhoo to invest in the game company, framing it as a noble cause for gamers everywhere. The price tag is 100 billion, but Taekyu says that's irrelevant when you're a true fan. Jinhoo's first thought is that he'd normally turn down an investment like this, but then he considers everything Taekyu has done for him and his mother. He figures he owes it to him to do something that would make his friend happy, so he agrees to set up a meeting to talk about it. The moment that's settled, Shin Ri calls Jinhoo again, this time asking for help. She says a guy from their department has been stalking her, and she doesn't know how to handle it. She asks if he'll be back on campus soon, and if he might be able to help her with the situation. The next day, after a 3-year absence, Jin-Hoo finally returns to university. He makes sure to stop by and see his old professor. They catch up for a bit before Jin-Hoo mentions he has a gift. The professor immediately refuses, explaining that under the anti-corruption law, he can't even accept a glass of water. Jin-Hoo asks if that rule also applies to an autograph from Chase Southwell. He knows his professor is a huge fan, and explains that a friend's sister works at Golden Gate and managed to get it for him. Chase Southwell is one of Golden Gate's 5 directors, currently heading up their Asian sector. And just a week ago, Jin-Hoo and the entire OTK team were in Hong Kong at his personal invitation. Chase told them he was eager to meet them in person. After some praise, he noted that Golden Gate had profited handsomely from their work with OTK. He hopes they continue to do well, and hints that some good news should be coming their way by the end of the year. Back in the present, Jin-Hoo is sitting in class, talking over the material with a classmate. Their conversation is interrupted by a group of girls asking who the new guy is. His classmate Gyeonggil introduces Jin-Hoo, clarifying that he's not a freshman, just a student returning from a leave of absence. The girls are immediately taken with his looks. Gyeonggil shoos them away, claiming they were in the middle of something important. Jin-Hoo then remembers he's supposed to meet Shin Yu-ri and invites his classmates to come along. He tries calling Yu-ri, but she doesn't pick up. His friend takes the opportunity to ask if he's still in touch with that lawyer, Ellie. Jin-Hoo explains she went back to Hong Kong and they haven't seen each other in a while. Just then, Jin-Hoo spots Shin Yu-ri up ahead, being cornered by some guy. Gyeonggil identifies him as Chai Myung-ho, the heir to a fast food chain. He warns Jin-Hoo that Myung-ho has a terrible reputation with women on campus, and it's best to stay clear of him. So naturally, Jin-Hoo does the exact opposite, walking right over and pulling Yu-ri away from the situation. Chae Myung-ho immediately demands to know who he thinks he is. Jin-Hoo introduces himself as Yu-ri's senior and tells the guy to stop bothering his friend. Myung-ho claims he was just gathering freshmen for a meal and wasn't trying to cause any trouble. Yu-ri makes it clear she's not interested and tells him to stop being so pushy. Jin-Hoo realizes this must be the guy she was talking about before and informs Myung-ho that she already has plans with him. Chae Myung-ho scoffs, saying everyone is always available for him, and this freshman should know that. Jin-Hoo just ignores him and walks off with Yu-ri, leaving the spoiled brat talking to himself. He does not take it well. Anyway, Jin-Hoo formally invites Yu-ri to lunch and asks if it's okay for his classmates to join. She's thrilled with the invitation and happily agrees. But their good mood doesn't last long. Chi Myung-ho comes storming back, trying to physically drag Yu-ri away. Jin-Hoo immediately steps in, making sure the creep can't lay a hand on his friend. Jin-Hoo grabs the spoiled kid's arm and pulls him away, which the kid does not appreciate. Before it can escalate, a senior student named Gyuwon appears and demands to know what Jin-Hoo is doing. He lectures him that being older doesn't give him the right to attack a younger student. Jin-Hoo insists he wasn't attacking anyone, but Gyuwon points out he was physically restraining the other guy. The spoiled brat Chai Myung-ho plays it cool and says everything's fine now, but while he's trying to look tough on the outside, he's absolutely seething. The senior student walks off with Myung-ho, but not before telling Jin-Hoo he'll be keeping an eye on him. Once they're gone, Yu-ri explains that Myung-ho is a known problem. He constantly bothers her, even calling her in the middle of the night, and the entire department is sick of him. Jin-Hoo gets the feeling this guy is going to be a recurring headache. Later, they head to lunch as planned, but the restaurant they picked is completely full. They end up at the only available table, which just so happens to be occupied by Siona. They all try to make friendly conversation, but the tension is thick. Jin-Hoo's friends figure this is still less awkward than sitting with the other annoying students. And speaking of annoying, the department's 3 worst offenders walk in right on cue. Chae Myung-ho spots Yu-ri and pretends it's a happy coincidence they've met again. He immediately tries to get under Jin-Hoo's skin, bringing up a rumor that his family went bankrupt. Jin-Hoo doesn't even flinch, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. So Myung-ho pivots back to hitting on Yu-ri, even though she's made it clear she's not interested. He insists that women who play hard to get are the most attractive. Siona finally speaks up, pointing out that most women just don't like guys who can't take a hint. Myung-ho ignores her and offers $1,000,000 to anyone who will leave the table and let him talk to Yu-ri alone. Jin-Hoo counters, offering to pay double if Myung-ho agrees to eat somewhere else. Myung-ho scoffs, saying that's pocket change to his family, and asks if Jin-Hoo is really trying to buy him off for so little. Jin-Hoo just says it was a joke. After all, nobody would spend 2,000,000 won on someone so annoying. Furious, Myung-ho accuses Jin-Hoo of just trying to show off for the girls and challenges him to a game. The rules are simple. They have 2 hours to put as much cash as they can on the table. Whoever has less at the end has to drop out of college for good. Jin-Hoo accepts, and his friends are horrified. None of them know he has any money at all. A little while later, Gyuwon confiscates everyone's phones to make sure word of the illegal bet doesn't get out. Myung-ho kicks things off, reminding everyone of the 2-hour time limit and the cash-only rule. No checks, no property deeds. He starts by placing 5 million won on the table. Jin-Hoo matches it, then adds the extra 150,000 he had in his wallet. Myung-ho is taken aback. He really believed the bankruptcy rumor. Fine. He slams a briefcase on the table containing 100 million won. Everyone is stunned. For most of them, it's the first time they've ever seen that much cash in one place. Yuri, however, is perfectly calm. She knows Jin-Hoo is going to win this. Myung-ho says there's still time to back out. If Jin-Hoo admits defeat now, they can forget the whole thing. But Jin-Hoo just reminds him the game lasts for 2 hours. He's simply waiting for his money to arrive. Watching this, Siona wonders why he's being so incredibly stupid. Then she sees a familiar face and freezes. Taekyu has arrived with 2 giant bags of cash. He asks if the blonde kid is the one who's been giving his friend a hard time. Jin-Hoo confirms, and Taekyu proceeds to dump an almost uncountable amount of money onto the table. Jin-Hoo turns to Myung-ho and asks if he still wants to play. Chae Myung-ho wants to know how Jin-Hoo is walking around with $500 million in cash. Yuri, on the other hand, says this is exactly what she expected from her friend. Not to be outdone, Chae Myung-ho gets on the phone to have $1 billion in cash delivered. But Taekyu has no interest in waiting an hour while this kid complains. He just hands Myung-ho a card. Myung-ho doesn't get it. Jin-Hoo explains that if he's willing to bend the rules, he can use the card as a virtual check. Myung-ho points out that he could name any ridiculous number he wants. But Jin-Hoo counters that the heir to a major franchise wouldn't lie about his assets, and besides, he knows the family company is valuable. Hearing this, Myung-ho realizes Jin-Hoo must be prepared to cover any amount he names. He glances at the single bag Jin-Hoo opened and wonders just how much more money he has. Deciding to risk it, Myung-ho declares the most he can get in time is $2.5 billion. Jin-Hoo agrees. From now on, that's what the card is worth. Myung-ho is stunned. Jin-Hoo is taking his word for it, which can only mean he had the money to cover the bet from the very beginning. Taekyu smirks, saying the bags of cash weren't their only trick. A flashback shows Siona scolding Jin-Hoo before the game started, insisting he had no way to win. Jin-Hoo ignored her and just asked Yuri to lend him whatever cash she had on her. Yuri was happy to help, emptying her wallet for him. Siona was hesitant, but she couldn't deny Jin-Hoo's confidence, even knowing who his opponent was. Still, she was sure this could only end in his defeat, and she hated to see him throw away his education for a stupid game. Back in the present, Siona and everyone else can only stare in shock. Taekyu made a call to a Golden Gate representative, Yu Seongmu, who has just arrived with several large briefcases. Jin-Hoo announces that the cases hold the equivalent of over 6 billion won. Now it's Chae Myung-ho's turn to panic. Getting $1 billion was already a stretch. There's no way he can cover this. He can't understand how a kid from a failed family has connections at Golden Gate. Furious, Myung-ho demands to know what he did to deserve this humiliation. Taekyu tells him that for starters, his family's chicken is terrible, which is probably why he isn't richer. Jin-Hoo just asks if Chae Myung-ho knows how to fill out a withdrawal form for the university. The spoiled kid finally gets it. He has no choice but to admit defeat. Jin-Hoo tells the Golden Gate employee to collect the money, but before he does, he grabs a handful of bills for himself and announces that everyone's dinner is on him. As he's leaving, Siona stops him. She asks if this has anything to do with that Golden Gate lawyer she met before. Jin-Hoo just says he has powerful friends. He thinks to himself that he doesn't owe her any explanation and leaves her to wonder. Later, he meets with Park Sang-yeop, who wishes he could have been there to see the show. Jin-Hoo brushes it off and asks for an update on K Company. Sang-yeop reports that his personal investments have paid off handsomely, and K Company's growth has exploded, making it a hot name in Korea. He also hired Yoongi Hong, who has been doing great work. But Sang-yeop knows this isn't just a social call and asks Jin-Hoo what he really wants. Jin-Hoo tells him to leave the startups alone, but to shift any long-term investments into short-term ones. He warns that something big is about to happen. When he gives the signal, he wants Sang-yeop ready to liquidate everything into cash. 15 days later, a new semester kicks off. After his little showdown, Jin-Hoo notices only one person still treats him the same, Yu-ri. The biggest change, though, is Lee Hyemi. She used to look down on him. Now she's practically throwing herself at him. Jin-Hoo couldn't be less interested. He's got his eyes on his new car, finally free from having to borrow rides from his friends. Just then, Yu-ri walks up, asking if this is the rental car he mentioned. Jin-Hoo has a cover story ready. He claims to be working for Yoongi Hong, a name everyone on campus knows. The car, the money, it's all his boss's. It's a simple lie to keep his real wealth under wraps. Yuri finds the story a little strange, but she decides to trust him. Jin-Hoo offers to take her for a spin in the new ride. But mid-drive, Yuri gets a call from her father. He's heading to the UK because of an unexpected issue with the date for the Brexit vote. The word Brexit triggers another vision from Jin-Hoo's eagle, and he nearly loses control of the car, swerving to avoid a truck. Yuri is shaken. Jinhoo apologizes, blaming it on a moment of distraction. Once they've pulled over, he asks what her dad has to do with Brexit. She explains he works in finance. He used to be based abroad, but is now back in Korea. Hearing this, Jinhoo announces he has his own urgent matter to deal with. Yuri isn't even upset anymore. She's getting used to him suddenly running off for some emergency. Jinhoo's vision was clear. The Brexit vote is going to pass. He immediately calls his friend and tells him to gather every piece of information he can find on the subject, fast. Back at their place, Taikyu reports that their video game company investment is doing great, and the fans are happy. Jinhoo nods, but says he's focused on something else now. He explains that the United Kingdom is about to leave the European Union, and he plans to profit from it. Taikyu asks for the logic behind the move. Jinhoo gives him the short version. The UK never felt fully integrated with Europe, and wants out of certain agreements to gain financial and legal independence. So what happens if the vote passes? Jinhoo lays it out. The euro and the pound will effectively become independent currencies. The shockwave will rattle the entire international market. His friend asks how they're supposed to invest in the middle of a collapse. Jinhoo reminds him they've done this before, only this time, they aren't targeting a single company. They're targeting the global financial market. And there's one crucial difference. With the L6, they didn't know the exact date of the shutdown. This time, Jinhoo knows the vote is on June 23rd. They have the perfect opportunity, and they're far more prepared than they were before. Sometime later, Jinhoo meets his team at the airport and thanks the girls for coming on such short notice. He then takes everyone, including Park Sang-yeop, to a restaurant for a meeting. Ellie explains that the situation in the United Kingdom is tense, with the public fiercely divided over the upcoming Brexit vote. She's convinced the vote to leave will fail, since the polls are not looking favorable. Oh Hyun-ju agrees, adding that leaving the EU would trigger massive instability and expose the UK to huge financial and diplomatic risks. She even mentions that Golden Gate, along with other companies, is already planning to move its financial centers to Germany or France if the vote passes. Given how complex and high stakes the situation is, she asks Jinhoo why he's so interested. He lays out his plan. He wants to use the shares in his two startups as collateral for a massive loan, and then bet everything on Brexit being approved. Hyun-ju immediately calls the plan insane. It's not just risky, all the data suggests the vote will fail. Jinhoo knows this, but what he can't tell them is that his vision has already shown him the result. He has to convince his team to back his decision without ever mentioning his powers. The whole group is against it, trusting the experts who all predict the UK will vote to remain. Jinhoo argues that financial experts aren't always reliable. He brings up the concept of hidden voters, who keep their opinions to themselves until they're actually casting their ballot. Beyond economics, he says, there's a cultural problem involving Germany. Many British people resent Germany's leadership role in the EU, feeling subordinate to a historical rival. Jinhoo explains he has a strategy to use this to their advantage, but he needs the entire team to trust him. The girls still think the plan is incredibly risky, and Ellie asks Jinhoo why he's willing to gamble so much on this one investment. The question reminds the protagonist of a conversation he had with a friend long ago when they agreed to go all in until the very end. For Jinhoo, this isn't just about making more money, it's about using his powers to their fullest, regardless of the outcome. He tells the team the opportunity is too good to pass up, and he's determined to see it through. But Sang-yeop points out the obvious. If this goes wrong, both of Jinhoo's companies will go under. Jinhoo replies with total calm. If everything falls apart, they can just start over from zero, just like Sang-yeop did in the past. Hearing this, Sang-yeop realizes Jinhoo is right. He's gotten too comfortable with his current situation and forgotten who he used to be. He's in. With that, Hyun-ju sees she can't convince Jinhoo otherwise, so she and the others agree to support him. The protagonist knows they must think he's lost his mind, but he believes that will all change once his vision becomes reality. Now that he has his team's support, he tells them it's time to execute the plan and make a fortune. A little while later, OTK borrows $10 billion and bets it all on Brexit being approved. This move immediately sends ripples through the London currency market as the British try to figure out what's happening. More than that, they want to know why a completely unknown company is suddenly investing so heavily in UK stocks. The attention isn't just local. OTK's actions are also making waves on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. Even the Japanese analyst can't predict what a startup-focused company is trying to achieve with this play. Back with the protagonist, he explains to Taikyu that this wasn't a simple bet, but a strategic investment. Taikyu gets the gist. They're betting on the pound to fall and the yen to rise, while the rest of the world is betting the exact opposite. Jinhoo says that's a perfectly normal reaction. When someone injects that kind of cash, the country's government and central bank will always push in the other direction. He compares it to 1992, when fund manager George Soros made a similar move and effectively broke the United Kingdom. On that occasion, the Bank of England took a massive loss and nearly gave up on its own currency. Soros, on the other hand, had borrowed pounds before the crash. He paid the loan back after the devaluation, pocketing $1 billion from the difference. Of course, Soros didn't act alone. He and his team also targeted Indonesia and Thailand, causing an Asian financial crisis that indirectly affected several countries. Taikyu asks if Soros was also to blame for the IMF crisis that hit South Korea. Jinhoo says it was more complex than that, but confirms that OTK is about to do the very same thing, and they should prepare for the criticism. Taikyu is ready to support his friend, but he has to ask if it's right to make $100 billion at another country's expense. The protagonist argues that a powerful government has the means to recover. It won't take long for the British and their allies to get back on their feet, and he's right. Soon, other experts realize OTK is betting on Brexit's approval, and some of them quickly start to do the same. At the London Exchange, an official notices that as currency funds rush to buy pounds, the exchange rate is starting to climb. His boss sees that OTK is continuing its speculative moves even as the market stabilizes, and wonders if they're really planning to take on the entire world. Back with Jinhoo, Taekyu points out that they're betting against the market, and asks if that isn't different from what Soros did. Jinhoo says it's actually the opposite. In the end, the people responsible for the UK's fall will be the British people themselves when they vote. Sometime later, the protagonist gets a call while he's out for a walk. It's Chase Southwell calling to discuss OTK's recent moves on the currency market. He acknowledges Jinhoo is a genius investor, but warns him that this time, no one will be on his side. As a friend, he advises Jinhoo to back out while he still can. The protagonist is just happy to hear the legendary Chase Southwell considers him a friend. However, he makes it clear he's seeing this negotiation through to the end, and says Chase will understand why when the results are out. But until then, he asks his new friend not to get in his way. Chase Southwell respects Jinhoo's decision and wishes him luck. He then calls the Golden Gate's UK branch with a simple instruction. He has a feeling the results will be surprising, so just let it ride. Meanwhile, at K Company, Yoon Gi-hong is getting cold feet. He tells Sung Yop their current bet feels way too risky. Sang Yop admits he felt the same way at first, but he's the one who raised trillions of won under the K Company name and bet it all on derivatives, something he never imagined doing. At this point, all they can do is trust the plan. The day of the vote finally arrives. Taekyu is glued to the news at home, while Jinhoo is calmly getting ready for class. His friend can't believe he's actually going to school on the most important day for his company. Jinhoo points out that watching won't change the outcome. Besides, he doesn't need to. He already knows what's going to happen. Taekyu is not nearly as calm. Even with Jinhoo's prediction, he's a nervous wreck, having bet everything he owns. He makes Jinhoo promise they'll still be friends even if they lose it all. Jinhoo agrees, but tells him not to be so dramatic. It's not going to come to that. With that, Jinhoo heads to campus and runs into Yu Ri. She tells him she was up all night, too anxious about the Brexit vote to sleep, and almost skipped class. They then run into Siona and her boyfriend, Jun Young. Siona notes that Yu Ri seems to be with Jinhoo all the time lately, and asks if they're close. Yu Ri just says that Jinhoo takes good care of her. Jun Young, meanwhile, has heard a rumor that Jinhoo is tight with the CEO of K Company. He asks if Jinhoo could set up a meeting for him, and Jinhoo agrees to talk to his friend about it. Later, Jinhoo finds some classmates who are running a friendly betting pool on the Brexit results. They ask if he wants in. Jinhoo puts his money on the UK leaving the Union. His classmate is surprised. Almost everyone else bet the other way. Jun Hyung walks up and confidently bets on the UK remaining. Not wanting to be left out, Yu Ri decides to bet the same way as Jinhoo. Seona asks if she's sure about that. Yu Ri says she is. She trusts Jinhoo because he has a knack for getting these predictions right. As the actual vote unfolds, the Remain side is pulling ahead. Back at the office, Park Sang-yop is losing his mind as his team starts to panic, so he steps out to make a call. In the middle of class, Yu Ri points out that Jinhoo's phone won't stop buzzing. Jinhoo sees the calls are from Hyunju and excuses himself to take it. For a second, he starts to worry. If Hyunju is calling, it must be serious. He wonders if this is the first time his prediction has failed, but then the vision hits him again, just as clearly as before, confirming that Brexit will pass. On the other end of the line, Hyunju is frantic. She says there's still time to pull out and minimize their losses if he'll just give the word, but Jinhoo is now completely certain. He tells her to sell the remaining $3 billion with 50 times leverage against the British pound. Hyunju does not take this well. She thinks Jinhoo has lost his mind. Jinhoo admits he'd feel the same way in her shoes. He insists he's certain Brexit will happen, but there's no time to explain. He just asks her to trust him and execute the plan. After the call, Hyunju decides she needs a drink. When Ellie asks if this is about Jinhoo, Hyunju says she has to follow the order, and she can't do it with a clear head. She might disagree, but she's just following the CEO's command. Ellie looks at the operations and sees Jinhoo is determined to go all the way. She decides she's going to need a drink too. Next, Park Sang-yeop gets Jin-hoo on the line, trying to convince him to change his mind before the vote ends. But Jin-hoo tells him it's too late. He just ordered Hyun-ju to sell off everything they had. There's no going back, which sends Sang-yeop into a full-blown panic. Jin-hoo tries to calm him, saying he knows what he's doing. But for this to work, he needs his team's trust. Meanwhile, in England, many are celebrating early, confident that Europe will remain unified. The head of the London Exchange asks if OTK is still holding its position. His employee says yes, but assumes it's only a matter of time before they give up. The boss figures someone at OTK is just being stubborn and pities the company's employees. After hanging up, Jin-hoo feels a moment of doubt. Even though he saw the same future twice, the pressure is immense. Just then, Siona finds him outside. Class is over and she asks what he's doing. Jin-hoo says he's not sure, just trying to rest. To cheer him up, Siona announces that he won their class bet. The voting is over and Brexit was approved. Jin-hoo is stunned. His vision came true again. The news doesn't just impact him, it shocks the entire world. Everyone was expecting the opposite result and got completely blindsided. At the London Exchange, they watch sales of the pound skyrocket as the currency's value goes into a freefall. The team lead, William, realizes OTK never gave up. He concludes that England has a new George Soros to hate. The world goes crazy over the unexpected outcome as news of the chaos begins to spread. Yoon Gi-hong realizes he made the right call joining this company, feeling he owes his life to the man who took this massive risk. Elsewhere, Ellie finds her friend to celebrate Jin-hoo's success, asking if Hyun-ju has spoken to him yet. But Hyun-ju says she has no energy left after everything that's happened, and asks Ellie to make the call for her. Far away, Chase Southwell looks at the OTK company's numbers and admits he completely misjudged Jin-hoo. He also realizes that with a track record this legendary, Jin-hoo's identity won't stay hidden from the world for long. Chase knows it's too late for regrets, but he decides he'd rather be Jin-hoo's ally than his enemy. He gets on the phone and orders the Golden Gate branch in Korea to be established as soon as possible. The Brexit vote netted K Company nearly 6 trillion won in total assets. OTK Company, on the other hand, shot up to 45 trillion won. Taekyu is celebrating their victory when it hits him. Jin-hoo is now the richest person in Korea. Jin-hoo hadn't even thought about it. That title always belonged to the CEO of Samsung. But now he realizes his friend is right. The news is completely dominated by Brexit and the unknown company that made trillions off the vote. Taekyu notes this has happened before, but Jin-hoo points out that this time is much worse. A lot of angry Brits have basically declared war on OTK Company. His friend jokes that they're now more hated than George Soros, but as long as they don't set foot in the UK, they should be fine. Just then, Park Sang-yeop calls Jin-hoo. He explains that he couldn't even get into his own building today because it's completely surrounded by reporters, and he needs to know the plan. As Jin-hoo watches the news, he sees the media is already obsessed with a new story. Golden Gate is opening a branch in South Korea. Jin-hoo is caught off guard by the move. But then he remembers his last conversation with Chase Southwell and understands this is a direct message for him. Taekyu starts to worry about his sister, since the Asian division used to handle all Korean operations. Jin-hoo tells him not to worry, figuring she and Ellie will simply be relocated to the new Korean office. And he's right. Hyun-ju gets the news that she's being sent back to her home country. Chase Southwell informs her she'll be running the new branch with full authority. She is now the director of Golden Gate, South Korea. Sometime later, Jin-hoo heads to the K Company building to check on Park Sang-yeop. He's immediately swarmed by reporters. Jin-hoo always knew this day would come, he just didn't think it would be today. But they don't want to talk to him about his success. They know he's close to Park Sang-yeop and want to use him to get to the CEO. Jin-hoo just tells them he has class and can't stay. Over at Taekyu's place, Park Sang-yeop says his phone won't stop ringing and he'll have to change his number. His entire neighborhood is staked out. If this keeps up, he'll have to move. Taekyu tells him to calm down and orders some food. Once Sang-yeop has settled a bit, he asks Jin-hoo why he made the bet in the first place. He admits that even if he knew the future, he'd never have the nerve to do something like that. Jin-hoo just says he decided to take a risk and asks if Sang-yeop has ever wanted to bet on a volatile market. Sang-yeop mentions he's been looking into cryptocurrency. It's decentralized and unstable, but people all over the world are investing in it. Taekyu knows a little about the market. He says a lot of people don't buy crypto as an investment, but as a way to keep money away from governments. He thinks the best way to treat it is like a digital asset, similar to gold, not something to be bought and sold like stocks. Hearing this triggers another vision for Jin-hoo. His spirit eagle reveals the next move: invest in Ethereum mining. He asks Taekyu what he knows about it. Taekyu explains that Ethereum is a newer crypto that can also store automatic contracts, not just transactions. But he's skeptical. They already have a crypto exchange, and Ethereum is worth 10 times less than Bitcoin. Jin-hoo argues that to compete, they need to scale up and invest heavily in the new currency, while also buying Bitcoin separately. He even suggests they could mine it themselves. Taekyu points out that would require huge facilities, and the energy costs would be astronomical. But Jin-hoo has an answer for that. They could find a cold country with cheap electricity. Park Sang-yeop can't believe it. They just barely avoided bankruptcy on one massive gamble, and now Jinhoo wants to jump right into another one. Jinhoo assures him he has a plan, but he'll share the details later. Sometime after, Jinhoo is in his university class. The professor is reminding everyone to study hard for final exams. He says good grades are not only for graduation, but also because Golden Gate is entering Korea and recruiting top students. The professor finds it odd that Golden Gate chose to set up its branch in Gangnam, which isn't typical for a large corporation. Jinhoo finds it strange too. Big companies usually set up their headquarters in central Seoul. He remembers what his friend at Golden Gate told him and wonders if they're doing this because of him. Just then, Yuri asks him what he's thinking about so loudly. He brushes it off as nothing important. The professor tells them both to stop talking during his lecture. Jinhoo is embarrassed. Yuri, on the other hand, is just happy to be sitting next to him. But all Jinhoo can think about is that today is the day the Golden Gate employees arrive in Korea, and he should be there to greet them. Later that day, he and Taekyu head to the airport. They're stunned by the massive crowd of reporters in the arrivals area, the kind of reception usually reserved for a major celebrity. Then Taekyu sees who's coming through the gate, his sister. His shock deepens when a reporter asks Hyun-ju how she feels being the first Korean to lead a branch of Golden Gate. Jinhoo and Taekyu are completely blindsided by the news. Ellie pulls Jinhoo aside, saying she missed him but that he needs to be discreet. With all these reporters around, she knows he doesn't want his identity getting out. Hyun-ju adds that her promotion was supposed to be confidential. She has no idea how it leaked, but now is not the time to discuss it. Later, back at their place, Taekyu gives his sister a hard time for keeping her promotion a secret. She explains she wanted to tell them in person, but the media spoiled the surprise. Jinhoo congratulates her, but she gives him the credit. It was the companies he founded that convinced Golden Gate to open a branch in South Korea in the first place. Turns out, Ellie is also part of the new Korean branch. She'll be in the legal department, claiming her superiors wanted someone with her talent to help get things started. Hyunju gives her a look, asking if that was the only reason her friend insisted on coming along. Flustered, Ellie says she just wanted to work with her friend. Jinhoo senses the tension and smooths things over, saying it's great to have the whole team working together again. Hyunju mentions she's exhausted. She couldn't sleep on the plane because she was busy reviewing important documents. Her brother tells her not to overwork herself, but she just says she's a workaholic and likes it that way. Changing the subject, she asks if they found a suitable building for their office. Jinhoo says they haven't. Conveniently, Hyunju knows the building right next to the Golden Gate branch is for sale for 500 billion KRW. Taekyu balks at the price, wondering why Golden Gate would be selling it. His sister explains they need the capital for the sudden launch of the Korean branch. She adds that they wouldn't sell to just anyone. It's a favor to Jinhoo as one of their most important clients. Jinhoo agrees to the purchase immediately. He tells Hyunju to handle the paperwork in the name of K Company. Of course, he knows the building will actually serve as the headquarters for OTK. K Company already has its own office, and being neighbors with Golden Gate isn't a bad look. With that settled, Hyunju gets serious. K Company is in the spotlight after Brexit, and her promotion just made her a public figure. She asks Jinhoo how much longer he plans to stay in the shadows. He explains that in Korea, politics, corporations, and the media are all one big cartel. If the truth about him gets out, he's afraid they'll destroy him. His plan is simple. If you can't beat them, join them. Ellie asks if he's really going to take on South Korea's biggest conglomerates. Jinhoo confirms it. He suffered at their hands for too long, and now he wants payback. Hyunju warns him that the auto industry is the backbone of the country. The government won't just sit back and watch him attack it. But Jinhoo is decided, saying politics is just another form of business. Taekyu and Ellie both pledge their support, ready to kick the biggest hornet's nest in the country. With his team on board, Jinhoo announces their next move, a trip to the US to visit the Karo's headquarters. Sometime later, Jinhoo is walking through his university campus when he runs into Yoongi Hong. Yoongi Hong is thrilled, bragging about the company he works for. It was nothing when he started, but now his boss just bought a building in Gangnam. He remembers Park Sang-yeop telling him they'd buy a place on Tehran Row, and he didn't believe it. A year and a half later, it's a reality. He adds that they got the Golden Gate building for a bargain and even paid in cash. He encourages Jinhoo to graduate quickly so he can join such a profitable company. A few math students overhear the conversation and gather around, eager for more stories about the legendary Park Sang-yeop. Yoongi Hong pulls out a corporate card, offering to buy everyone drinks. Jinhoo can only think that it's his own money being spent, and his colleague has absolutely no clue who he's really working for. Just then, Siona approaches him. She remembers seeing him at a party after his military service. She says he's changed a lot since then and asks him what happened. Jinhoo cuts her off. He tells her it's none of her business. Whatever happened to him, he certainly doesn't owe her an explanation. Jinhoo knows from their dating days that Siona is far too perceptive. He can't risk saying much without giving the whole game away, so he tries to brush her off. Just then, Yuri walks up and asks him out, celebrating the end of exams. Siona gets the hint and backs away, but not before promising to finish their conversation later. Yuri frames her interruption as a rescue, and now she wants to be repaid for her service. Jinhoo notes that his life is suddenly full of sharp women. He tells her he's got no time, claiming he's about to travel with a friend. Meanwhile, another student named Hwang Gyusang is also talking about Jinhoo. He and his friend are trying to figure out how Jinhoo went from broke to living large in such a short time. Their investigation also includes the Oh brothers and Park Sang-yap, but his friend Junyoung feels like they're hitting a wall. So he points out that Hwang Gyusang's father is the Prime Minister of Korea. Surely he could dig up some real information on Jinhoo. Speaking of Jinhoo, he's currently on a first-class flight to the US with Taekyu. While Taekyu catches some sleep, Jinhoo gets to work, reviewing the documents Hyunju prepared for him. He quickly realizes that his country's largest automaker, Hyundai, has its hands in a lot more than just the automotive industry. Engineering a collapse within this company would be catastrophic, even worse than what happened with Samsung. The damage to his home country would be immense. But even knowing that, Jinhoo isn't backing down. After landing in San Francisco, they're met by Henry Smith, a representative from Golden Gate. Smith says he's there on his boss's orders and offers to take them to their hotel to rest. Jinhoo turns him down flat. He's not here to waste time. He wants to get right to it. So they head straight to the Kairos headquarters in Silicon Valley to meet with Daryl Sagan again. Sagan says he's been briefed on their moves during Brexit, adding that it's actually been a huge benefit for Kairos. Taekyu plays it off, saying they were just investing as they always do. But Sagan insists it was exactly what his company needed, giving them a much wider margin to work with. He then shows Jinhoo the powerful computers they use for AI development, offering a more detailed demonstration later. For now, though, it's time for their scheduled meeting. When they enter the conference room, they're met by the Kairos staff, including Sergey and Ryan, the two who met them in Korea. Taekyu comments on the chilly reception. Jinhoo figures the staff was probably surprised by their age. They were likely expecting much older investors. In the meeting, Jinhoo reviews the reports and sees the problem immediately. All the money poured into Kairos so far has generated absolutely no results. He understands now why Hyundai pulled out. If it weren't for his knowledge of the future, he would have made the same call. Sagan defends their progress, arguing that their technology has to be perfect. Otherwise, they'll just be another face in the crowded autonomous vehicle market. Jinhoo agrees with the principle, but points out that at this pace, they'll never actually get a product to market. Sagan reveals a potential solution. His company has received partnership offers from Daimler AG, Toyota, and Hyundai. The catch? All of them want a stake in Kairos in return. Sagan makes his case. Even the best software is useless without hardware. He needs a car to actually run his AI. Jinhoo can see the CEO has made up his mind, but he makes it clear he has no intention of giving up his own shares in the company. The Kairos employees are not happy, arguing that they can't move forward without a major partner, but Jinhoo presents another option. If they don't want to be beholden to a giant conglomerate, there's only one way forward. Kairos has to produce its own car. Sagan points out the obvious flaws. Building hardware is as complicated and expensive as software, and besides, no one on their team is an automotive engineer. Taekyu counters that his company can supply the money, offering to increase their current investment to cover the cost of producing the cars. But Sagan isn't sold. Money doesn't solve the whole problem, especially when they don't even know how much this project will cost. That's when Jinhoo lays out his real plan. Instead of creating a car company from scratch, they'll just acquire one. The estimated capital needed is about $30 billion. He acknowledges it sounds extreme, but assures them he has a plan, which he'll share in detail later. After the meeting, he and Taekyu head to their hotel. Taekyu remarks that the place is a little big for just two people. Their host, Henry, says he'll leave them to rest but is available whenever they need him. Once they're alone, Taekyu asks if his friend has already decided which automaker they're going to buy. Jinhoo explains the political angle. Acquiring an American car company would impact the local economy, which means the government could interfere, for better or for worse. He points to Tesla as an example. Everyone laughed when they started selling electric vehicles, but now their market cap is a threat to the legacy giants. Jinhoo wants to invest heavily in that market, and with the cash they have from their last venture, the timing is perfect. Still undecided, Taekyu suggests that a good dinner might help the ideas flow. They find Henry, who promises to take them to a good steakhouse. He then asks if his grandfather, who is nearby, can join them. The guys agree, and Jinhoo insists the dinner will be his treat. A little while later, they're at the restaurant placing their orders. Henry's grandfather arrives, and the grandson introduces him to the Koreans. The old man says it's a pleasure to meet the CEO of OTK, mentioning he's heard about him from his friend Southwell. Jinhoo is surprised the man knows who he is. Henry then apologizes for not mentioning it sooner. His grandfather is James Clark Goldman, the CEO of Golden Gate. Now understanding, Jinhoo says the pleasure is all his, remarking that his friendly relationship with Southwell is yielding some good results. Goldman says that as soon as he heard they were in the US, he rushed over, excited to meet them. Jinhoo realizes Henry meeting them at the airport was no coincidence. The grandfather used the kid as a bridge. For a legendary investor to go to this much trouble for two guys from Korea, they must be making serious waves. Still, Jinhoo remains cautious with his information, and the old man says he understands. Goldman claims he also avoids the media and unnecessary attention, but then he reveals a secret. He doesn't actually know how to invest. His market intuition, he says, isn't nearly as good as people believe. He's been hiding from the public to avoid embarrassment, admitting things are much more complicated now than when he started. Goldman even reveals that the major investments tied to his name were actually ideas from other presidents of foreign branches that he simply approved. He says his talent isn't in investing, but in betting on the right people. And for that very reason, he says he's found someone with the potential to be his new star investor. Goldman admits he's been analyzing Oh Taekyu for a while, impressed that he was the first to recognize Jinhoo's talent. Jinhoo gives his friend the credit, and the old man says he envies their bond. He then asks if, from now on, he can consider them his friends too. Both men immediately agree. An offer of friendship from someone like Goldman is not something you turn down. As they toast, Jinhoo knows this is a smart move. A connection like this will open a lot of doors down the line. The next day, the search for an automotive company continues. Jinhoo insists they have to be careful with their choice and keep it quiet. Announcing their plans too early would tip off the major car manufacturers. He lays out the initial strategy. They have to focus on the American market. Self-driving vehicles are still illegal in Korea, so they can't sell there yet. But Jinhoo predicts that as soon as a giant like Hyundai gets into the game, the laws will conveniently change in their favor. Taekyu points out the obvious problem. Any car company that's actually for sale is either bankrupt or has weak technology. No one sells a promising business for cheap. Just then, Henry arrives with a message from his grandfather. Jinhoo opens Goldman's letter and realizes it's a hint. He immediately turns on the TV. The news is announcing the Republican presidential candidacy of Donald Trump. Goldman's letter had warned him to keep an eye on the American election, as it would directly impact the auto industry. Jinhoo understands the message perfectly. He needs to invest in the administration with direct ties to car manufacturing, and a tip like this from Goldman is priceless. Taekyu explains that the Democratic ticket is led by Hillary Clinton, a famous politician with a long career. Compared to her, he sees Trump as just a spoiled millionaire taking a shot at politics for the first time, and he can't figure out how the man became a main candidate. Jinhoo explains that Trump is simply saying what a certain group of people wants to hear, and he's funding the whole thing himself. Taekyu notes that betting on the obvious winner isn't always the most valued play, but he figures that unlike with Brexit, they're in no position to influence this election. According to the polls, Hillary's victory is a sure thing. She's ahead by more than 10%. Suddenly, Jinhoo gets a new vision, and the shock is written all over his face. His friend notices the change immediately and asks what he just saw. Still reeling, Jinhoo reveals he's foreseen the outcome of the election. He states it as a fact. Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. Taekyu admits Hillary has a significant advantage, but in politics, anything can happen. Jinhoo agrees, saying they're the variable that will change the game. He compares the election to a poker game where everyone has 4 cards and is just waiting for the final reveal. Hillary is holding a strong 4 of a kind, a nearly perfect hand that makes her victory seem certain. At this point, no small card can improve her position. Trump, on the other hand, has a good hand, but it's incomplete. OTK, Jinhoo suggests, could be the final card he needs to win. Taekyu figures a Trump victory would be good for them, so he sees no problem with the plan. But Jinhoo worries that a President Trump would throw the entire world into chaos and wreck the global economy. His friend is quick to remind him they made a fortune off exploding phones and a near collapse of the British market. Taekyu argues that the time for them to pretend to be virtuous is long over. From now on, they should be thinking about themselves. With that, Jinhoo is convinced. He agrees to move forward, but cautiously. He wants to meet with both sides before the election. Elsewhere, Hillary is giving an interview to the Wall Street Journal, laying out her vision for a better America if she wins. In reality, it's just a media appearance to drum up more campaign funds. As soon as it's over, she tells her campaign strategist, Joel Harford, to stop booking any more interviews. Back with Jinhoo, he gets the news. Hillary's team refused to meet with them. She's off the table. But Henry reports that Trump is currently campaigning in Los Angeles and has agreed to a 15-minute meeting before his flight. Henry still doesn't get why Jinhoo is meeting with a presidential candidate, but Jinhoo just tells him he'll understand when the time is right. A short while later, they're at the meeting location, getting patted down by security. Inside, Trump says he knows Hillary turned them down, and that's why he agreed to see them. As a fellow businessman, he was curious to see the faces behind the famous OTK, and he's surprised to find it's run by a young Asian man. Jinhoo finds it interesting that Trump refers to himself as a businessman, a term often used to mock his political seriousness. It confirms Jinhoo's suspicion. Trump sees politics as just another kind of business. Trump asks who Jinhoo's friend is. Jinhoo introduces Taekyu as the COO of OTK. With the formalities out of the way, Trump asks what this meeting is about. Jinhoo says he wants to help the Republicans campaign. Trump immediately asks if Jinhoo thinks he's in trouble and is just here to offer money. Jinhoo knows American elections are basically bought. The candidate with the most funding usually wins, and Trump's war chest is half the size of his rivals. Even with his own fortune, he can't compete with the major investors backing Hillary. But Jinhoo tells him he has something more important than money. He says he can guarantee Donald Trump's victory. He points out that Trump is trailing in the polls, and if things continue this way, he will lose. Trump scoffs that polls aren't always right, but he's curious to hear what Jinhoo has to offer. Jinhoo brings up Trump's core campaign promise, to revive American manufacturing and create new jobs. He says candidates always promise miracles they can't deliver, but that's what he's here to change. Trump asks what exactly he's offering. Jinhoo tells him he can make his biggest campaign promise a reality. All Trump has to do is accept his help. Donald Trump is stunned. This was the last thing he expected to hear. Back at the hotel, Hyunju is losing her mind. The media is in a frenzy, and she wants to know what they were thinking by offering support to Donald Trump. Her brother says it was all Jinhoo's idea. He was just trusting his friend. Hyunju points out that Trump isn't just announcing OTK's support. He's using it to fuel conspiracy theories and wild rumors. Jinhoo defends the move, arguing that a Trump victory will be good for them, since he promised to invest in the auto industry. But that only works if he actually wins, Hyunju argues, and every single poll says he's going to lose. Jinhoo, however, is certain of Trump's victory. He wouldn't have backed him otherwise. He explains that the US election system isn't based on a direct popular vote, so the polls can't be taken at face value. Hyunju can tell he's serious, but she still thinks this is a terrible idea. Elsewhere, at a rally, Donald Trump is making his case. He claims Hillary is selling America out to foreigners, while he's the one who will bring the economy back to the top. A woman in the crowd calls him a liar, pointing out that he himself just met with the OTK company, a foreign enterprise. Trump admits it's true, but he says he only met with them because he needed help, since no American companies were willing to support him. He then announces he'll use the $20 billion from OTK to reopen the factories that closed in Detroit and revive the city's employment rate. The woman still doesn't buy it, accusing him of making promises he can't keep. To prove he's serious, Trump invites the governor of Michigan to the stage, who, by the way, is from the opposing party. Butler confirms that everything Trump is saying is true. The state government is already in talks with OTK, and the investments will begin soon. Trump promises to bring America back to the top, even if it means negotiating with rivals or foreigners. The crowd erupts. Watching from home, Jinhoo thinks the rally feels more like a pop concert, but he has to admit, the candidate played his hand with style. Now, he just has to wait and see how the competition reacts. In a meeting with Karos, Jinhoo lays out his investment strategy for the American auto industry. He'll keep the Karos lab where it is, but he's moving the company headquarters to Detroit. Sagan asks if this means they're about to be absorbed by a manufacturing company. Jinhoo says no. It's the other way around. Karos will be buying a car manufacturer. This will transform Karos from a software developer into a full-fledged vehicle assembly company, with OTK as the holding company. Jinhoo tells Sagan he believes in his potential, and is confident that under his leadership, the new venture will be profitable for everyone. He then takes the opportunity to reveal that he's not just a representative, he's the CEO of OTK company, and his friend is the COO. He promises to stick to managing Karos and won't interfere with their tech development because he trusts Sagan to lead his team well. Sagan thanks him for the confidence and promises not to let them down. Jinhoo then announces that Karos' capital will be raised to $20 billion, and the executive team will receive 4% of that value. Sagan doesn't object. He knows that to lead the auto industry, they need to build their own vehicles, not outsource such a critical step. And since Karos is an American company, he figures it was only a matter of time. To celebrate, Taekyu suggests they order a pizza. Sagan says Silicon Valley has the best pizza now, thanks to a new company called M Pizza that just entered the market. Taekyu recognizes the name. That's the pizza company they invested in. His first thought, do they get a discount for being majority shareholders? Back at the hotel, Jinhoo lays out the next target, Chrysler. The PTA group put the auto giant up for sale, but it's been languishing on the market for 3 years. The whole mess started after Chrysler's failed merger with Daimler AG. KIA stepped in with a bailout, acquiring Chrysler and forming the PTA group. Taekyu doesn't get it. How could a merger of two giants go so wrong? Jinhoo explains that KIA never managed to crack the European market. When two struggling companies join forces, they usually just sink together. Henry adds that they didn't even share parts or platforms. which killed their profit margins. With no cash, they fell behind on electric vehicles and autonomous driving. This means if Kairos buys Chrysler now, they can completely transform the company. Jinhoo wants a flight to Detroit immediately, but Henry tells him it won't be necessary. He leads them to a private jet, which is now theirs to use whenever they want. On board, they toast to the upgrade. But Henry cuts to the chase. Does Jinhoo really believe Donald Trump can win? Jinhoo is certain. He asks why Henry is so skeptical. Henry points out that OTK's endorsement has completely upended the presidential race, and he wants to know the logic behind it. Jinhoo says he can't reveal the whole plan yet, and just asks for a little patience. Later, they meet up with Ellie and Hyunju, who both look exhausted. Hyunju explains it's because of OTK's relentless pace lately. Jinhoo apologizes and formally introduces Henry. The women are stunned to be shaking hands with the grandson of their own company's CEO. Henry turns on the charm, clearly impressed by Ellie. Taekyu quietly nudges Jinhoo, warning him that Henry might make a move on her first. Jinhoo, however, is only thinking about work. Hyunju gets down to business. The factory site is secured, and the state is handling infrastructure and tax breaks. The TPA representatives are on their way for a meeting. She isn't worried about the negotiation itself. TPA is desperate to unload an unprofitable asset. Her real concern is the US election. The whole world is watching. She says most people in Korea think Trump has no chance. Worse, Trump's public praise revealed that OTK owns Kairos, bringing them a flood of sudden, unwanted attention. Jinhoo sees the silver lining. Powerful allies in the US are crucial for their real goal, taking on the biggest conglomerate in Korea. Having the American president in their corner would be a game changer. Hyunju counters that this only works if Trump wins, which is a long shot, but she knows Jinhoo well enough not to argue. Ellie chimes in, saying that just like with Brexit, she'll trust her boss's seemingly crazy plan. Taekyu confirms he's in it for the long haul. Just then, Henry gets a message. It's a meeting request from Hillary Clinton's office, routed through Golden Gate. He asks if Jinhoo is interested. Jinhoo is. He's curious what they want. Later, Jinhoo and Ellie sit down with Joel, Clinton's chief of staff. Joel doesn't waste time. He says Hillary likes OTK's investments but has some concerns and wants them to delay signing the deals. Jinhoo asks what's in it for him since everything is already ready to go. Joel lays out the politics. Most governors in the Rust Belt are Democrats. A win for Hillary would be better for everyone. As president, she could push through favorable laws with local support. He admits his job is to secure her victory, and with OTK's backing, she's a sure thing. Jinhoo says he's open to a deal, but trust is everything. He asks, just how big is Hillary's heart? Joel promises it's huge. If OTK officially endorses her, he'll give them his full support as chief of staff. Jinhoo turns him down flat. He's already given his word to Trump, and he builds his business on mutual trust. After the meeting, Ellie wants to know why Jinhoo didn't just accept the proposal. Jinhoo explains his logic. You can't trust a politician's word, but Donald Trump is a businessman, and Jinhoo knew from their first meeting that a man like that would never refuse his offer. Ellie points out the risk. If Trump loses, OTK's business in the US is finished. Jinhoo counters that if Trump wins, it opens every door for them. And even if he doesn't get reelected, by then OTK will have grown so much it won't need political backing anymore. Sometime later, Park Sang-yeop calls from Korea. He reports that K Company has moved into its new building and asks when Jinhoo is coming back. Jinhoo tells him the team will return soon and that he'll lay out his new plans for him in person. Meanwhile, Taekyu suggests everyone take a break, asking his sister if she couldn't wear something more comfortable outside the office. She just replies that she's always working, a perfect summary of her personality. Then, Jinhoo's phone rings. It's the CEO of Golden Gate, who says OTK has certainly stirred things up in Washington. He admits that while Hillary was the logical choice, he knows Jinhoo doesn't play by the book, and now he's not so sure she'll win. Jinhoo says that thanks to James's help, he placed his bet on Trump. In return, James asks a favor. He wants Jinhoo to take his grandson, Henry, on at OTK Company. He says he hasn't even spoken to Henry about it yet, but he's sure the kid would love it. Lately, all he talks about is how great it is working with Jinhoo. James ends with a warning. OTK's public support for Trump has put them in the spotlight, and Jinhoo needs to be ready for what's coming. After hanging up, Jinhoo asks his team what they think about hiring Henry. Taekyu is all for it. The company needs new people, and Henry has been a huge help so far. Hyunju agrees. As the successor to Goldman, Henry is more than qualified to work for OTK. The offer is made, and Henry accepts on the spot. Hyunju immediately puts him to work, handing him a stack of paperwork to get started on. Henry, thrilled, promises to do his best to help. Hyunju notes that his energy at least makes him seem useful. Meanwhile, back at the Blue House in South Korea, President Park Geun-hye summons the director of the National Intelligence Service. She notes that a Korean company is making waves internationally, and she's pleased to see a major investment firm rising in the country. The problem is, the source of the company's initial funding is a mystery, so she orders the director to investigate K Company for any ties to North Korean money. Company. The director, Yoon Se-won, runs a quick analysis and finds no North Korean interference whatsoever, but he uses the official request as cover to illegally pull every file he can find on both K Company and OTK. With all that data, he comes to a spectacularly wrong conclusion. He decides Park Sang-yeop is just a figurehead CEO, and Kang Jin-hoo is his personal secretary, living a life of luxury on his friend's dime. Not only that, he concludes that Oh Tae-kyu must be the real mastermind behind it all, the true CEO of OTK Company. After reviewing the report, the president finds it hard to swallow that the mastermind behind OTK is some kid who never even went to college. Yoon Se-won suggests Tae-kyu might be a hidden genius. Judging by his sister's track record, it's not that much of a stretch. The president concedes the point. A true genius doesn't need a degree, which might explain Tae-kyu's academic history or lack thereof. But he's still hung up on Jin-hoo. He's convinced the guy can't just be a freeloader and that the investigation must have missed something important. Yoon Se-won explains that if the president wants to dig any deeper, he's going to need a warrant. The president thanks him, saying he'll make a call. Elsewhere, Han Mingu, the chairman of Hyundai, is going over the news about OTK. He has to admit, buying Caros just to leverage it into acquiring a car manufacturer was a bold play. His son, Vice Chairman Han Chan-young, points out that while Caros has superior tech, their manufacturing is tied up by legislation. But Mingu notes that if Donald Trump wins the election, he could just change the law and hand OTK a massive advantage. Chan-young is still skeptical. Best case, Caros gets a slice of the American market but will have a hard time breaking into Korea. Han Mingu clarifies that this isn't about today's market. The shareholders are furious that a past investment is about to become a major rival. He tells Chan-young to watch OTK's every move. A short time later, Han Mingu gets an important call. It's the president of Korea, who assumes Mingu is already up to speed on OTK and K Company. He then lays out everything his own investigation has uncovered. The president makes it clear they both need to be ready to deliver a proportional response. Meanwhile, in the US, the OTK team is taking a coffee break. Jin-hoo gets a strange message. An unknown number is telling him to call back and to use an American cell phone to do it. He borrows Henry's phone and dials. Park Sang-yeop answers. He tells Jin-hoo the entire team needs to ditch their phones and stop using their real names. He suspects they're being tapped. Then comes the bad news. Prosecutors and the tax service just raided the K Company building. They came with a search and seizure warrant, authorized by the intelligence service, to collect every physical and digital document on site. On top of that, they're under investigation for violating foreign exchange laws and a list of other offenses. Everyone involved is now a target of the government. Jin-hoo knows this isn't a normal investigation. This is a coordinated witch hunt. Park Sang-yeop says most of their data is safe on a foreign cloud server, but he's about to be taken in for questioning. Jin-hoo tells him to be careful and to use this new number if he needs to get in touch. He hangs up and turns to his team. They have a serious problem. After hearing the story, Henry is floored. An operation like that should be illegal. Tae-kyu just says that in Korea things are different. Hyunju guesses the intelligence service was already watching K Company for some reason and just stumbled on the OTK connection by chance. But Jin-hoo knows that's not it. An operation this fast, involving the highest levels of government, can only mean one thing. PIS is involved. Ellie has no idea what PAS is. Tae-kyu explains they make airbags and plastic parts for various cars, but he doesn't see the connection. Jin-hoo lays it out for them. 90% of PAS's revenue comes from Hyundai, and Park Gyun-hye, the current president of Korea, was the CEO of Hyundai before he entered politics. By law, he can't hold stock while in office, but his entire family is still deeply tied to the company. Hyunju immediately understands. The president is sending a message. Anyone who threatens his old turf will be crushed. Henry starts to see the bigger picture. If Trump wins and tariffs go up, foreign exporters will be hit hard. Ellie finishes the thought. The Korean government is trying to kneecap OTK by using K Company as an excuse. Jin-hoo makes a decision. He's going back to Korea. With Park Sang-yeop sidelined, K Company needs a CEO. The girls know it's risky, but they're going with him. The guys are in too. They're not about to let Jin-hoo walk into this alone. For his part, Jin-hoo would rather fight than run. He's going to see this through to the very end. Before heading back to Korea, Jin-hoo gets on the phone with Donald Trump to explain the situation. He assures him the investments will continue as planned and promises to see him in person after he wins the election. Ellie points out that if a presidential candidate is telling Jin-hoo to be careful, things must be serious. Jin-hoo confirms it. The president of Korea is behind this, and he fully expects them to be arrested the moment they land. His friends are stunned, asking if he really intends to walk right into a trap, but Jin-hoo has his reasons. He hasn't actually committed any crimes, so even if he's detained, it shouldn't be for long. Besides, he has a contingency plan. In a worst-case scenario, Hyunju will take over. He knows the government wouldn't risk attacking a Golden Gate employee without a rock-solid reason, making her the safest one in the group. Tae-kyu understands that he and Jin-hoo are the primary targets, but he seems completely unfazed by the prospect. They arrive in Korea, and at first, Nothing happens. Taekyu figures they were just being paranoid, but Henry quickly corrects him. He's spotted men tailing them for the last 10 minutes. Jinhoo decides they won't run. He gives his team a direct order. Even if he's arrested, they are to continue with their schedule until the American elections are over. With that, he prepares to surrender without a fight. But to everyone's shock, the agents walk right past him and head straight for Taekyu. They arrest Taekyu, identifying him as the CEO of OTK Company and charging him with violating financial management laws. Hyunju is furious, demanding to know who they are. The agents flash a warrant and state they're from the prosecutor's office. Jinhoo watches his friend take the fall for him and tries to step in, but Taekyu stops him. He calmly confirms he's the CEO of OTK Company, then tells Jinhoo to go do what needs to be done. They'll grab a meal when it's all over. The team can only watch, powerless, as he's led away. Outside the airport, they're met by Jung-gi Hong. He explains that Park Sang-yop couldn't come because he's currently being interrogated. Jung-gi Hong's orders are to obey Hyunju in his boss's absence, but he's confused about where the fifth member of their group is. Jinhoo tells him their friend was just arrested. He'll explain later, but right now, he just needs to get home. On the way, Hyunju processes the situation. As furious as she is, she admits it might have been for the best. For the team, losing Jinhoo would have been a much bigger blow. She realizes her brother knew that, which is why he went so willingly. Her focus immediately shifts. She tells Ellie to find the best lawyer money can buy. They made a huge mistake by touching her brother, and she's going to make them pay. When they get to the K Company building, they find the place has been completely torn apart. Hyunju explains that while Golden Gate received a polite letter of cooperation, K Company got the full-on raid. Jinhoo asks if the Golden Gate building has any spare rooms. When she says yes, he tells the K Company staff to pack up. They're moving their operations next door. He assures them most of their important documents were backed up to the cloud, so they're still operational. Since most of the staff doesn't know him, he formally introduces himself as the man in charge until Park Sang-yop returns. Later, Hyunju hands Jinhoo a new phone from Golden Gate, telling him his old one can't be trusted. The reality of being spied on finally hits Jinhoo, and he admits he's not sure he can go through with the plan. Hyunju calls him on his sudden hesitation, asking if he even has a backup plan. Jinhoo doesn't have a good answer, but she reminds him they have to push forward. Taekyu is counting on them. She says that while she can't use illegal methods like the Korean intelligence service in the world of finance, money is its own kind of weapon. She then calls Golden Gate's legal team with a simple directive: investigate every connection between President Park Geun-hye and Hyundai. Watching her, Jinhoo thinks that this side of his friend is genuinely frightening. He figures even the president of the republic would be scared if he knew who he was really messing with. With Taekyu in custody, Park Sang-yop is finally released. He meets up with the team and immediately notices something odd. Jinhoo still hasn't told Jung-gi Hong that he's the real CEO of the company. Jinhoo admits he hasn't had time. He's been completely focused on his friend's arrest and figuring out how to get him out. For now, Taekyu is holding strong and staying silent. The authorities are digging into OTK's funding and a potential insider trading scandal involving Samsung. But Jinhoo knows they have no actual proof. They're just trying to keep Taekyu on ice until the American election is over. Park Sang-yop gets the Korean government's strategy, but he also knows they made one critical mistake. They arrested the wrong guy. Jinhoo sees it differently. His friend's sacrifice bought them extra time, and he has no intention of wasting it. Getting back to work, Jinhoo confirms the automaker they're acquiring is in bad shape, but he tells Karos to push forward with the plan anyway. Sagan is confident that once they integrate their technology, the company will dominate the American market. With that issue settled, Jinhoo moves on to his next play. He says the Korean government is trying to slow him down, but he's about to do the exact opposite. He's ready to spend every last dollar he has. According to their intel, Donald Trump has shaken up the polls, but his victory isn't guaranteed. It all comes down to two crucial states, Pennsylvania and Ohio. So Jinhoo decides to inject an extra $5 billion of investment into those two states. Soon after, Hillary's chief of staff makes a furious call to the president of South Korea, demanding to know why he was promised OTK's investments would be blocked. Now Donald Trump is about to get a $5 billion boost in Pennsylvania, and he wants to know where that money came from. President Park Geun-hye insists it's impossible. The CEO of OTK is in jail, with even his lawyer meetings being monitored. The president concludes that the only person who could be acting in his absence is his older sister, Oh Hyun-ju. Hearing this, Joel realizes the information doesn't add up. He asks for a photo of the man they arrested. The second he sees Taekyu, he knows. This isn't the real CEO of OTK. The man he met was completely different. He tells the president the man he dealt with introduced himself as Mr. Kang, not Taekyu. And just like that, the president of Korea understands the scale of his mistake. The real target was right under his nose the entire time. Meanwhile, at a lavish dinner, the Korean Prime Minister's son, Hwang Gyu-sung, is holding court with his girlfriend, an up-and-coming actress named Jung So-hee. Across the table, Go Jun-young is with his own girlfriend, Yoon Seona. Hwang Gyu-sung scoffs at the news, finding it ridiculous that some 20-year-old nerd is causing such a political firestorm. Jun-young has to admit it's shocking, but he points out this nerd managed to rattle all of Washington with a single move. Gyu-sung finds the whole thing hilarious. He figures this explains where Jin-hoo got all the money for their stupid game before. He was just working for Taekyu. Jun-young smugly declares that the party's over. With the Golden Goose in jail, Jin-hoo's funds have officially dried up. But Yoon Seona isn't so sure. The Taekyu she knew when she was dating Jin-hoo was not the kind of guy who could run a massive global operation. She thinks back on how much Jin-hoo changed and knows it had to mean something. Seona then stuns the table by announcing that Jin-hoo is not who they think he is. She's certain he's the real leader of this operation, not Taekyu. Gyu-sang tells her she's giving Jin-hoo way too much credit. He has high-level contacts who all confirm Taekyu is the man in charge. Still, Seona insists. Jin-hoo isn't the type to work for someone else, and he would never live off his best friend's success. Speaking of Jin-hoo, he tells his team he's found a solution to free his friend. When they ask what he's going to do, his answer is simple. He's going to hold a press conference and finally reveal the truth to the entire world. On the way, Hyunju points out this news will be a shock to everyone, especially the people who don't know the real Jin-hoo. She asks if he needs to give anyone a heads up. Jin-hoo figures Yuri would be furious if she found out from TV, and she wouldn't be the only one. A little later, he arrives at his mother's house and takes the opportunity to formally introduce his colleagues. His mom can tell something serious is going on, and immediately asks what kind of trouble he's in this time. Jin-hoo just tells her they need to talk inside. Soon after, the announcement of OTK's press conference gets everyone's attention. Over at the intelligence service, Yoon Si-won can't figure it out. He wants to know what Jin-hoo is planning. An assistant reports that agents have been tailing Jin-hoo for days, but he isn't even trying to hide. Yoon Si-won finds this bizarre. A company under government surveillance should be laying low, but OTK is doing the exact opposite. He decides he has to stop them. But then he has a moment of doubt. If OTK hasn't actually done anything illegal, the intelligence service is about to be in a world of trouble. He's terrified OTK is about to drop a bombshell and decides to contain them before the conference, no matter what it takes. He calls the prosecutor general, trying to convince him to shut the whole thing down, but the prosecutor isn't having it. He reminds Yoon Si-won that thanks to the intelligence service, they already arrested the wrong guy and have a huge mess to clean up. One more mistake, and they'll all be investigated for abuse of power. With no help from the prosecutor's office, Yoon Si-won orders his own people to stop the press conference at any cost, even if they have to cut the power to the building. Back with Jin-hoo's team, Hyunju reports that everything is ready on her end. Jin-hoo tells her to stick with the plan until the American elections are over. If he gets detained, they'll communicate through lawyers. He also asks them to thank his friend for his sacrifice, but to make sure they explain the reasoning to Taekyu. Ellie remarks that for someone taking such a huge risk, Jin-hoo is incredibly calm. She finds it charming. Before he can move forward, Jin-hoo gets a call from a restricted number. A sinister voice on the other end tells him to cancel the press conference, even offering to negotiate. But Jin-hoo says any chance of negotiation ended the moment they arrested his friend. He hangs up and snaps his phone in half. At this point, Jin-hoo is ready to go all in. He promises himself he won't be coming back empty-handed. Jin-hoo then steps up to a press conference, representing the OTK company. He starts with what everyone already knows. Their subsidiary K Company was raided, and the supposed CEO of OTK was arrested at the airport. But then he reveals what they don't know. His team's finances were being tracked, and their phones were tapped long before any of that happened. When a reporter asks for proof, Jin-hoo provides photos from his own private investigators, clearly showing agents from the national security system. He declares the entire operation illegal, and says he has the names of the individuals and the agencies they belong to. Jin-hoo frames the whole thing as political persecution, claiming it all started the moment they announced financial support for a US presidential candidate. The biggest proof, he says, is that the man arrested at the airport isn't even the real CEO of OTK. The authorities just grabbed the first person they could. Naturally, the press wants to know who the real CEO is. Without missing a beat, Jin-hoo announces to all the cameras that he is the true CEO of the company, and he's ready to answer every single question. The room immediately erupts into chaos. Watching the whole thing on TV, Jin-hoo's mother feels sick for her son. The story he told her earlier suddenly feels terrifyingly real. The shockwave even hits Jin-hoo's university, where a classmate recognizes him on the broadcast and tells everyone that Jin-hoo is the CEO of OTK. While the students are stunned, Yu-ri is the only one who isn't surprised. Jin-Hoo had already told her everything. The person most shocked by the news, however, is Seona. She knew he was involved in something big, but she wanted to hear it from him, and he'd refused to tell her the last time they met. Meanwhile, Lee Sung-kin, the owner of a major news outlet, watches the conference and thinks Jin-Hoo must be out of his mind. His company had been invited but blew it off as a joke. A colleague suggests they should have taken it more seriously, mentioning a document related to OTK that arrived in the mail. Lee Sung-kin isn't interested, but after making a few calls, he realizes that material was sent exclusively to them. He figures OTK chose his outlet specifically because of his well-known clashes with the current president of Korea, and on that basis, he decides to give them a shot. If it means a chance to hurt the president, he'll publish the story. Speaking of the president, Park Geun-hye is also watching. He claims he never wanted to destroy OTK, just send a warning to keep them in line. He'd even imagined they could work together after the American elections, but now everything has changed. He gets on the phone with his chief of communications and tells him to contact every media outlet willing to cooperate. Sometime later, the prosecutor who lost Taekyu tries to get to work, but the building is completely surrounded by the press. He ignores the reporters and storms into an interrogation room. Furious, the prosecutor demands to know who was responsible for leaking all the articles connecting PAS and the president of Korea. Jin-Hoo, however, has a better question. He asks if prosecutor Kim Kyung-jun arrested him on direct orders from the president. When questioned, Kim Kyung-jun tries to pull rank, insisting he's the one asking the questions here, but Jin-Hoo isn't intimidated. He brings up a story from a few years back about an organization called Athena, famous for its uncannily accurate financial predictions. Their forecasts were so good, in fact, that they started to bother the government. The prosecutor at the time used the full power of the state to crush Athena, spreading false news and baseless accusations. In the end, Athena was proven innocent in court, but by then, the government had already gotten what it wanted. Jin-Hoo points out that the prosecutor responsible was never punished. In fact, he was promoted to prosecutor general, and now Kim Kyung-jun is about to make the same mistake. This infuriates the prosecutor, who asks if Jin-Hoo thinks his office is a joke. Jin-Hoo turns it right back on him, saying it's the prosecutor's office that treats the Korean people like a joke, and unlike Athena, he has more than enough money to defend himself. Jin-Hoo lays out a hypothetical. He could arrange a private meeting with the president and offer to invest $1 trillion in PAS. The only condition would be exposing all of Kim Kyung-jun's dirty secrets to the public. The result? Kim Kyung-jun would be hunted as the worst criminal in Korea, and not even his wife and children would be safe. Jin-Hoo explains that even without proof, national security would detain the prosecutor's family for the money, just like they did with Taekyu. The threat lands. Kim Kyung-jun tries to regain his footing, reminding Jin-Hoo that he's recording this whole conversation and can use it as a threat. Jin-Hoo just smiles and says he was only kidding. After all, the president would never get rid of a prosecutor as honest as Kim Kyung-jun. The prosecutor is now genuinely afraid. He realizes Jin-Hoo's calm demeanor means he has the power to back up every word. Elsewhere, Lee Sung-kin's assistant reports their website has been taken down again. They can't keep using domestic servers. Lee Sung-kin knows powerful forces are trying to shut him down, so he tells his team to pivot to social media and podcasts instead of a private site. They quickly set up a podcast to discuss the recent accusations against the president and the Korean government. The main allegation is that the president is the true owner of PAS, a crime that, if confirmed, could get Park Geun-hye removed from office. Hearing this, Park Geun-hye panics. He knows he made a huge mistake by provoking OTK. On top of that, he's praying Donald Trump doesn't win the US election, because that would be an even bigger problem. Meanwhile, in a US debate, Hillary accuses OTK of being a foreign company using illegal money to fund her opponent's campaign. Trump fires back, defending OTK as an American company and arguing that having Korean owners doesn't make its operations illicit. They trade blows, but Trump seems to be winning over the crowd. Back in Korea, Yoon Se-won receives a report that his team found nothing illegal connected to OTK or its subsidiary. He sees the press is siding with OTK, and they can't continue making accusations without any proof. The investigation is effectively stalled. At OTK headquarters, Jin-Hoo's lawyer informs the team that the CEO has ordered them to see the plan through to the end. Hyun-ju adds that she convinced Golden Gate to support Jin-Hoo's decision, so they can consider Donald Trump's victory a sure thing. According to Jin-Hoo's plan, Trump's win will cause the stock market to fall, while cryptocurrency values soar. Park Sang-yeop notes that OTK is already positioned to profit, having invested in Bitcoin and Ethereum, but he asks how reliable their information is. Hyun-ju confirms it's solid. The CEO of Golden Gate himself ordered his company to back Jin-Hoo's plan. Sang-yeop is floored. Jin-Hoo has reached a level where even the head of the legendary Golden Gate is personally supporting him. As a team, they have no choice but to follow their boss's lead. Prosecutor Kim Kyung-jun argues there's no reason to keep Jin-Hoo locked up. He tries to convince his superior to change the direction of the investigation, but his boss makes it clear this isn't about justice. The entire point is to hold Jin-Hoo until the American presidential election is over. That's when Kim Kyung-jun realizes his superiors aren't interested in the law, but in personal gain. There's nothing he can do, so all he can do is hope Hillary wins in the US. Back with Jin-Hoo, he thinks it's strange to just be sitting around after getting so used to his routine. He wonders if he's turning into a workaholic like Hyun-Ju. An investigator tells Jin-Hoo to answer his questions honestly, but Jin-Hoo says there's nothing left to answer since he's not actually being accused of anything anymore. Besides, he knows the man is just stalling for time until the election ends. The vote count has already started, so instead of sitting still, he asks the man to get him a pen and paper to write a message. Meanwhile, the US vote count begins, and at first, all signs point to a Hillary victory. She celebrates, confident that everything is going exactly as expected. She even starts preparing a victory speech. Back in Korea, Jin-Hoo gets his pen and asks how the election is going. The agent claims he's not allowed to discuss it, but based on the man's reaction, Jin-Hoo figures the results from the industrial areas haven't come in yet. He guesses Hillary must be in the lead for now, but he knows his friends are making their move to flip the board. He's not wrong. The entire OTK team is working on it, even though they can't reach Jin-Hoo. The team tracks the vote in real time. Ellie reports that Hillary has practically won the entire West Coast, with a slight advantage elsewhere. Even so, Hyun-Ju says they're sticking to the plan, though she admits this is even more stressful than the Brexit vote. Jin-Hoo thinks about his strategy. He's met Trump in person. He can also see the motivations driving people to vote for either candidate. But the key lesson was simple. If something is out of your reach, drop it without hesitation. Based on that, they built an operation to spread Donald Trump's message only in the areas of greatest impact. He doesn't need to win every state, just the ones that matter. Watching the results, Taekyu sees the tide turn, realizing his friend was right all along. Even Hillary is shocked to see the state of Florida go to her opponent. And with that, Donald Trump secures the majority of states. He becomes the new president of the United States of America. When he hears the news, the Korean president loses his mind. The unexpected happened. He calls the prosecutor, saying the plan to hold Jin-Hoo failed, and orders his immediate release. Hillary Clinton's cabinet is also in disbelief. But Joel knows Trump didn't win alone. He had outside financial help. He says the real reason their candidate lost was their failure to stop a single investor. Speaking of Jin-Hoo, he notices a strange shift in the guard's behavior and understands immediately Donald Trump won. A moment later, he gets the official news. The prosecutor's office is dropping all charges against Jin-Hoo and his companies. He's free to go. As he leaves, a guard tells Jin-Hoo to avoid the main entrance, which is swarming with press. Jin-Hoo gets it. An interview would just humiliate the prosecutor's office, making them look like they couldn't handle their own mess. He figures the prosecutor makes the mistake, but his team takes the heat. To spare them the trouble, he agrees to use the back exit. Besides, he has no interest in seeing his face on the news. Outside, he meets up with his best friend, Taekyu. Taekyu hands him some food, pointing out that he must be starving. While he eats, Jin-Hoo asks about his mother. Taekyu assures him she's fine and completely out of danger. Just then, Ellie gets out of the car in tears, overwhelmed with worry. She throws her arms around Jin-Hoo, admitting how terrified she was thinking about what could have happened to him. He tells her he's okay and that she has nothing to worry about. Park Sang-yeop cuts in, suggesting they get out of there and save the longer conversation for later. In the car, Jin-Hoo asks how much they made from the Trump victory. Park Sang-yeop confirms it was nearly $3 billion, then asks why Jin-Hoo didn't pull the same move during Brexit. Jin-Hoo explains his logic. The UK is big enough to absorb the shock. Mexico, in its current state, is going to be hit hard. He doesn't want to make enemies of entire nations. If he's going to expand his business, he needs allies, not a reputation for wrecking economies. As they drive, Jin-Hoo spots something new and asks what his friend has been up to. Taekyu grins. After the press conference, he figured it was time to make their presence official, so he had the OTK logo installed on top of their building. When Jin-Hoo arrives, he finds Hyun-Ju waiting. He thanks her for managing everything while he was gone. She tells him that Donald Trump's secretary called, asking Jin-Hoo to get in touch as soon as he was free. Jin-Hoo says he already took care of it on the ride over. Turns out Trump is very grateful for the assist. With that settled, Jin-Hoo asks what OTK's next move is. Hyun-Ju tells him their biggest problem isn't in the US, it's right here in Korea. Taekyu explains that President Park Geun-hye is facing impeachment and could be thrown out of office. Hyun-Ju thinks they should actively invest in his removal. After everything Park Geun-hye put her brother and Jin-Hoo through, it's the least he deserves. Jin-Hoo knows he won't be going back to college for a while, so he decides to keep working from the office and maybe even hire more staff. In the wake of the scandal, Golden Gate forms a dedicated legal team to shield its clients from any more political pressure. Meanwhile, Park Geun-hye's approval rating has hit rock bottom, with public calls for his resignation growing louder. He makes a desperate attempt to salvage his image with a formal apology to the press. But he never actually admits to any wrongdoing, claiming he was only acting in the interest of national security. The excuse doesn't land well. Taekyu can't believe it. He wonders how a guy like that is still president with so much evidence stacked against him. Jin-Hoo explains that Park Geun-hye's political base is strong. They can't expect him to just walk away. But the president did need scapegoats. The prosecutor general, the prosecutor from the OTK case, and the director of the intelligence service were all fired. So while Park Geun-hye isn't leaving office anytime soon, the Korean government's war on OTK is officially over. The new logo on the building is the ultimate proof. They don't have to hide anymore. Jin-Hoo gets his own office, ready to make his company more professional than ever. In a meeting, he declares their first priority is hiring a director of human resources to handle recruitment and manage their growing team. He and his friends start sifting through resumes. One name immediately stands out to Taekyu, a Korean-American named Michael Lee with a seriously impressive career. Henry recognizes the name and agrees he'd be perfect for the job. Jin-Hoo knows he's found his guy and starts figuring out how to get in touch. Henry is sure Michael Lee will take the offer. After Jin-Hoo's recent rise to fame, plenty of people would kill for a chance to work with him. Just then, Jin-Hoo's phone rings. It's his mom. She apologizes for bothering him at work, but she says the house is completely full. All of his relatives have shown up to see him. Jin-Hoo can already picture the chaos, and he is not looking forward to it. Sometime later, Jin-Hoo heads to his mother's house. Taekyu, riding along, notices he's on edge and asks if he's nervous about the family reunion. Jin-Hoo admits he'd basically forgotten he even had relatives. He remembers how his mother asked them for help after his father died, and not a single one of them stepped up. He claims he doesn't hold a grudge, since he gets how hard it is to lend money to someone who can't pay it back. Still, their true colors are showing now that they've seen him on television. Jin-Hoo asks if Taekyu has the same kind of problems. Taekyu says no. His sister has always been successful, and his relatives are all well off, so there's no drama. When they arrive, Jin-Hoo asks the head of security why she didn't turn the visitors away. His mother says it was her call. She couldn't bring herself to shut the door on her own family. Fine. Jin-Hoo says he'll go in. The entire family is there to greet him, and one of his uncles immediately comments on the expensive car he arrived in. Others chime in about how good it is to see him after so long. Jin-Hoo can't help but remember the last time he saw any of them was at his father's funeral. They insist they were just so worried after seeing his press conference that they had to come visit. Some even claim they skipped school and work just to see him, saying how happy they are that he's free. A cousin takes the opportunity to introduce her husband. Jin-Hoo congratulates them, though he knows for a fact they've been married for a while and never invited him or his mother to the wedding. He decides to cut straight to the point and asks what they really want. They all insist they're just there to see him, nothing more. Jin-Hoo tells them they've seen he's fine, so they can go. He's got to get back to the office after all. But an uncle says they should all catch up now that the family's together, and then asks exactly how much money Jin-Hoo has made. Jin-Hoo just says he has enough to give his mother a comfortable life, and that's the opening they were waiting for. The relatives slowly start revealing why they're really there. They want loans, or maybe a job at his company, which the news says is doing very well. Jin-Hoo remembers how these same people barely spoke to him before, and how they completely ignored his mother when she was struggling. He knows if he isn't direct, they'll keep at it until he opens his wallet. But he's also not comfortable just throwing them out. They are, for better or worse, his father's family. Before he can decide, his mother takes over. She says she understands the real reason they insisted on visiting, and she thinks it's shameless of them to show up at her house asking for money. Jin-Hoo's mother has had enough. She tells every last one of them to get out of her house and to never try contacting them again. She reminds them that none of their families were ever rich, but her husband always took care of his relatives, regardless of how his own company was doing. He paid for his younger brother's education and set aside money for his younger sister. Even his own hospital bills and funeral were paid for with the money he left behind. But after he died, not one of them returned the favor. They didn't give a single cent to her or her son. So for them to show up now asking for money is just cowardly. From now on, she says, they should all go back to living like strangers. The relatives ignore her and try to appeal to Jin-Hoo, claiming his father would never treat his own family this way. His mother agrees, but she points out her husband is no longer alive, and they're partly to blame for that. So none of them have the right to demand anything from Jin-Hoo. With that, she tells the head of security to escort them out. As the guards move in, the family gets angry. Jin-Hoo's uncle makes one last play, handing over a business card and talking about some great opportunity for the two of them. But Jin-Hoo tells him the only link between them is already dead. He says he was hoping for an apology, at the very least. But now he sees that's not going to happen, so he agrees with his mother. It's better if they don't see each other again. Jin-Hoo acknowledges his father was a good man, but he also put his wife and son above everyone else. He tells them all to leave his house and never come back. The family is shocked, still trying to change his mind, but Jinhoo is firm. He warns them that if anyone from their group tries to contact him or his mother again, he won't hesitate to take legal action. This is the last time they will ever meet. Once they're alone, Jinhoo's mother feels bad about how things went down. He comforts her, reminding her that she's not the one in the wrong. She tells Jinhoo to value himself and the people who value him, and to not waste his time arguing with ignorant people like he just did. Then, realizing they barely ate because of the chaos, she decides to go make dinner. Afterward, Jinhoo goes to find his friend and explains what happened. Taekyu says he noticed the commotion, which is why he decided to stay outside. Jinhoo tells him his mom is cooking and invites him to join them for dinner. Meanwhile, at Samsung, the vice president is doing his own research on Jinhoo. He discovers they attended the same university, and more importantly, that Jinhoo was involved in the Samsung crisis. The VP knows Jinhoo was behind the decision to discontinue the L6. He figures no one would make a bet that risky without knowing something in advance. He also knows OTK is a team effort, and Jinhoo is surrounded by exceptional people. But instead of feeling threatened, the Samsung heir is impressed. He even hopes they can be friends someday. Back at OTK, Jinhoo is fielding a flood of meeting requests. Taekyu remarks on his friend's new popularity and asks who's on the schedule for today. Jinhoo tells him it's the candidate Henry recommended. Soon after, Michael Lee arrives for his interview. He opens by cheekily calling Jinhoo the biggest supporter of Donald Trump. Jinhoo plays it cool, saying the American people elected the president, not him. Michael concedes the point, but notes that without OTK, the outcome would have been different. He quickly pivots, saying he's here to talk business, not politics. Michael explains that he studied OTK thoroughly. His wife is Korean, so he'd love the chance to work in her home country. He lays out his management philosophy. A company's first customers are its employees. A business can only grow if its people are happy. With that, he presents his proposal. First, an 8-hour day, 5-day work week. Next, a new buffet-style cafeteria. He also suggests adding break rooms, rest areas, and even a daycare for employees with children. Michael's core belief is that work should never be a sacrifice. When trust is strong between the company and its staff, everyone grows together. Jinhoo recognizes these are all scientifically proven methods for success. There's no reason to refuse. He tells Michael he likes the plan and offers him the job. Michael accepts immediately, ready to get started. Under Hyun-Ju's supervision, Michael begins recruiting new staff from a list of candidates recommended by Golden Gate. Now that OTK is a real company and not just a front, Jinhoo also starts moving employees over from K Company. During a meeting, Park Sung-yeop jokes that his subsidiary is about to be empty. But then Jinhoo gets down to business. It's time to decide on dividend distribution. He suggests starting with 50 billion won, divided based on each person's stake in OTK. He also makes it clear they will pay every cent of their taxes, no matter how high. He's not about to give his enemies an easy target. Jinhoo assures them the K Company employees won't be left out. They'll receive a bonus, including Sang-yeop. Sang-yeop is thrilled, but points out the taxes will be massive. Jinhoo's mind is made up. The K Company staff will get a bonus equal to double their current salary. Sometime later, the team meets at the OTK building, but Ellie and Hyun-Ju look exhausted. Ellie explains they've been overwhelmed reviewing candidates. Ji-hoon mentions seeing new faces in the lobby and asks if they've already started hiring. Hyun-Ju clarifies that those are actually employees for Golden Gate's Korean branch. Since it's not officially established yet, she invited them to work out of OTK for now. She explains Golden Gate's plan. They intend to use the Korean branch to form a consortium and enter a bidding war for a local company. That company is X-Cop. Ji-hoon immediately recognizes the name. It's the security firm they already have a contract with. Hyun-Ju confirms it. X-Cop is an American company owned by the Type Group, which is now selling off its Korean assets. The Type Group nearly went bankrupt after an accounting scandal and needs cash fast. The asking price is almost 3 trillion won, but Hyun-Ju believes X-Cop's potential makes it a deal they can't afford to ignore. But they aren't the only ones interested. Several major companies are eyeing the same prize, including Hyundai. The second Jinhoo hears that name, his next move becomes crystal clear. Hyun-Ju explains that Golden Gate is going after X-Cop, but with so many competitors, it won't be an easy fight. Taekyu asks why Hyundai is even in the running, since they already own a security company. His sister clarifies that it's simple corporate rivalry. The moment Samsung showed interest in X-Cop, Hyundai had to jump in as well. Ellie agrees it's just natural for Korea's two biggest conglomerates to one-up each other. In that case, Taekyu wonders, why doesn't Hyundai just outbid everyone and get it over with? Jinhoo explains that a reckless acquisition can destabilize an entire corporate group, so even they have to be careful. He then announces that OTK needs a security firm, so they'll be joining the bidding for X-Cop too. Hyun-Ju asks if this is strictly business or if it's personal for him. Jinhoo says it's always personal. If it wasn't, he never would have taken so many crazy risks. Besides, he adds, getting into this fight will be fun. A little later, Taikyu notes that X-Cop's market value is 500 billion won, but the current asking price is a staggering 3 trillion. Jinhoo explains that the broker handling the sale is deliberately inflating the price to get a bigger commission. Taikyu understands. It's a bluffing game, with both sides posturing, and it all comes down to profit. To even have a seat at the table, Jinhoo says, they need to run their own strategic calculations to create some negotiating leverage. His friend asks why they don't just offer an even higher price than what the broker is asking. Jinhoo explains that would be a foolish waste of money. It would also tarnish his reputation, making everyone think OTK is an easy mark who will overpay for anything. Taikyu points out that his sister and Henry are already handling the details with Golden Gate, so he asks why Jinhoo doesn't just leave it to them. The protagonist says he likes to check everything himself. After all, he's the one with the power to see the future. He adds that to win, they don't just need to buy X-Cop. They need to completely block their competitors. And speaking of competitors, Jinhoo brings up the legendary Korean finance firm RCK Brothers. Elsewhere, Ryu Cheol-gyun, the president of RCK Bros, has heard that OTK is joining the bidding war. His vice president Shin Byung-do dismisses the news, figuring Hyundai will ultimately buy X-Cop. But Ryu Cheol-gyun knows better, pointing out that OTK has a perfect investment record. He tells his VP to invite them for coffee. Their building is just across the street, and he's eager to meet them. Back with Jinhoo, Michael Lee is complaining that OTK's corporate structure is a complete mess. He says they've been running the company like amateurs and will need at least 50 new employees to professionalize their operations. Jinhoo tells Michael to take care of it and to consult with Park Sang-yop on any future decisions. After the meeting, Jinhoo heads out for a date, hoping he won't be recognized on the street. Yuri finds him immediately and asks why he's wearing sunglasses. He explains it's a weak attempt at a disguise, since the press conference made his face a little too famous. Changing the subject, he remembers he promised to pay for their next dinner and tells her to choose any restaurant she wants. They end up at a very high-end place. Yuri says the university went crazy after his identity was revealed. Everyone is talking about him, and she asks if he plans on returning. Jinhoo tells her that with all the chaos, he has no intention of going back. Yuri notes they only got to study together for 1 semester, but says she hopes to join him at OTK when she graduates. Jinhoo asks if she's serious about working with him. She says of course. OTK is the most prominent finance company at the moment, and everyone at her university knows it. She believes in her own potential and won't accept an inferior job. Any top-tier professional would want to work at OTK. Then, Yuri changes the subject. She reveals her father's name is Shin Byung-do, and she's surprised Jinhoo hadn't figured it out on his own. Not only that, but her father is the vice president of RCK Brothers. Jinhoo realizes this explains a lot. He's stunned to learn his friend's father is a top executive at their new rival. Yuri says her father also admires Jinhoo, and even mentioned that he planned to participate in the X-Cop auction. Jinhoo confirms he's in the running, but feigns uncertainty about whether he'll be able to win. Just then, he gets a new vision from his eagle, and with that, he knows for certain the X-Cop auction is his. Yuri can tell something's off and asks Jinhoo why his mood suddenly changed. He tries to play it cool, saying it's nothing, but she's not buying it. She reminds him of their near accident last time and asks what really distracted him. Cornered, Jinhoo goes for the classic escape route, a compliment. He says he just got distracted by how beautiful she looked. Yuri figures that's the alcohol talking and doubts he'll feel the same way in the morning. He insists he's not that drunk, but either way, he's already called a car to take them home. At her building, Yuri mentions that 5 major conglomerates are bidding in the auction, but she's rooting for him to win. Before saying goodnight, she takes off his glasses, telling him he shouldn't hide such a handsome face. Jinhoo thinks the date was a good call. He really needed a breath of fresh air. On the way home, he reflects on his vision. It came at the perfect moment, revealing the final auction price. Without that information, the acquisition would have been a nightmare. He's starting to notice a pattern. These visions seem to happen whenever he's with Yuri. In a way, he has her to thank for this. Arriving at the OTK building, Jinhoo tells his friend what he discovered. Taikyu crunches the numbers. To make back that kind of investment, they'd need 17 straight years of profit at the current level. Jinhoo predicts Samsung will back down, but Hyundai will push forward. If OTK wants to win, they'll have to pay a steep price. This requires a team meeting, so they head over to the Golden Gate building. Ellie finds them there, explaining that everyone's working late since the preliminary bid is in 2 days. She catches a whiff of wine and asks if Jinhoo was drinking without her. He brushes it off as a business dinner and promises to include her next time. Just then, Hyunju shows up, wondering what they're doing in her office at this hour. Jin-Hoo lays out his plan, and Hyun-ju is floored. He tells her they'll need about $3 billion to secure the win. Her first question is whether X-Cop is even worth that much. She points out that with a bid that high, they'd be starting in the red. Jin-Hoo realizes she's right. Hyundai isn't just trying to win, they're probably driving up the price on purpose to scare off the competition. He's also seriously impressed that Hyun-ju figured that out after only 10 minutes of analysis. But regardless of the risk, he's determined to see this through to the end. 3 days later, Seo Sang-won, the head of Hyundai, tells his team their final offer is $2,088 million. His vice president, Han Chan-young, thinks they should wait to hear the other offers first, just to be safe. But Seo Sang-won is confident. He set the price so high he doesn't believe anyone can compete. The VP reminds him that OTK and the Golden Gate Consortium are still in the game. Seo Sang-won scoffs at OTK, dismissing it as a startup run by a couple of kids. For him, the only real threat is RCK Bros. The vice president agrees, but he has a bad feeling about OTK. He thinks they're going to be a problem. He clears the room, asking to speak with Seo Sang-won alone about something strictly confidential. Han Chan-young insists they cannot lose this bid. He wants to raise their offer. He says he'll take full responsibility, as long as the final bid is $2,930 million. Back with Jin-Hoo, he already knows exactly what Hyundai is going to propose. He informs his friend that OTK's bid will be $2,930 million and $100,000. Taekyu just grins. This is getting fun. He can't wait to see the results. The next day, the moment of the main bid finally arrives. But first, Yoon Gi-hong introduces the new hires at OTK. Jin-Hoo is surprised to see one of his old college classmates, Ju Hyun-jung, in the group. She's thrilled he remembers her, and even more excited for the chance to work with him. Gi-hong isn't surprised, mentioning that a lot of graduates from their university applied, so Jin-Hoo should expect to see more familiar faces. Jin-Hoo never pictured himself as the boss of his former classmates, but he's ready to get to work. Later, they meet up with Ellie and Henry in the office. Ellie figures Jin-Hoo must have been up all night, agonizing over the bid amount. He keeps it to himself, but the truth is he was up late playing games with his friend. With his foresight, picking a number didn't take much thought at all. Henry cuts in, announcing that since it's a big day, they all need to be dressed for the occasion. Right on cue, Hyun-ju walks in looking sharp and asks if everyone's ready. The guys confirm they are, though they're a little stunned by her professional attire. They head to the Seoul branch of Moore Starley, the firm brokering the sale of X-Cop. Jin-Hoo informs Hyun-ju that he and his friend settled on a bid close to the limit she suggested. She admits she's still not confident they can win, but she'll take care of the paperwork regardless. Inside, Taekyu is taken aback by the sheer number of people. Jin-Hoo points out that some of the teams are huge, and there are some famous names from the industry in the room, but Ellie notes that Jin-Hoo himself is the one drawing the most attention. He looks around and realizes she's right, immediately feeling uncomfortable under so many stares. It only gets worse when a few industry bigwigs come over to greet him, leaving him completely flustered. After the handshakes, Jin-Hoo notices that only one team hasn't approached him, RCK Brewers, the one group he was actually hoping to meet. Suddenly, a new team's arrival quiets the room. The president and vice president of Hyundai have joined the meeting, but the real shock comes when the VP, Han Chan-young, walks directly toward Jin-Hoo. He says it's a bit crowded and asks to speak with him in private. Away from the crowd, Han Chan-young expresses his surprise at seeing Jin-Hoo, saying he thought Jin-Hoo might avoid the event to stay out of the public eye. He mentions the indirect ties between Hyundai and OTK, then cuts to the chase. Why is Jin-Hoo so interested in X-Cop? Jin-Hoo keeps his answer simple. He needs a security company, and that's reason enough. Han Chan-young pretends to understand, but makes it clear that Hyundai has no intention of losing this bid. Jin-Hoo knows he's talking to the heir of the most powerful company in Korea, a man who expects to win. He also knows that as vice president, Han Chan-young is perfectly aware of what Hyundai did to his father's company, which makes this friendly act feel pretty hollow. Just then, Taekyu comes over to say the meeting is starting, and asks who Jin-Hoo is talking to. Han Chan-young has clearly done his homework on OTK, because he knows Taekyu is Jin-Hoo's right-hand man and formally introduces himself. Like Jin-Hoo, Taekyu's blood starts to boil just being near a Hyundai executive. He manages to keep his composure, though, and plays it cool. In fact, he decides to land a little jab, thanking Han Chan-young for selling Karos to OTK for such a bargain. He even promises to buy him a drink sometime as a thank you. Jin-Hoo can't help it. He just bursts out laughing. Irritated, Han Chan-young asks if this is their idea of a declaration of war. Jin-Hoo just grins, telling him he's laughing because he already knows the outcome of the auction. He says Han Chan-young will see exactly what he means when the results are announced. With that, the two friends walk off, leaving their rival fuming. Han Chan-young is furious. He sees two kids who got rich overnight and think they own the world. It's time someone taught them a lesson. Selling a company usually takes months, even a year. This one took 2 weeks. The group behind X-Cop opted for a sealed bid auction. Highest offer in a sealed envelope wins. Song Myung-hwan, the brokerage CEO, runs the show, opening the envelopes on camera as everything is recorded. He announces that the values will be revealed as he goes. As the bids are read, some companies start celebrating early. Others realize immediately they're already out of the running. Hyun-ju gets nervous seeing the high numbers, but Jin-hoo assures her their offer is bigger. Meanwhile, the president of Hyundai is certain he's got this in the bag. He feels good about trusting his vice president's numbers, confident no one can top their offer. Han Chan-young scoffs at OTK, saying they made a mistake thinking they could win. He dismisses their motivation as petty revenge, calling Jin-hoo an unqualified brat who doesn't belong in this business. Hyun-ju doesn't know the final number Jin-hoo submitted, so she's bracing for a loss to Hyundai. But Jin-hoo is way too calm for someone who's about to lose. Not only that, her brother is smiling like he knows something she doesn't. The auctioneer announces the final bid, a joint offer from OTK and Golden Gate. He looks at the number and freezes. Even so, he reads it out. $2,930,000,000 and $100,000, just enough to top the highest bid so far. A stunned Hyun-ju wants to know what he just did, but Jin-hoo tells her they can talk about it later. Furious, Han Chan-young storms the stage and demands to see the document for himself. The number leaves him speechless. He can't understand how it's possible. The auctioneer tells him he's disrupting the proceedings, but Jin-hoo just enjoys the show. He knew his offer would beat Hyundai's by exactly $100,000. He did it just to rub it in. After the auction, some rivals are good sports, congratulating OTK on the win. But Jin-hoo's own team wants an explanation for that very specific number. Jin-hoo explains that he thought Hyun-ju's proposed bid was too low, so he added $10 million. Then his friend threw in another $100,000. When Hyun-ju asks her brother why, he just says he thought it would be fun. Seeing Hyundai's reaction proved he was right. Jin-hoo asks if she's worried about anything. She admits that normally Hyundai would come back with a counteroffer, but this time, she thinks their attention is focused on a different problem, and she's right. Han Chan-young is already confronting the president of Hyundai, accusing him of a leak. He reminds the president that their bid was supposed to be a closely guarded secret and demands an audit to find out who sold the information to OTK. Far from that drama, Jin-hoo and his team return to their building. They're met by a surprise celebration from their employees, cheering another OTK victory. In a nearby building, Shin Byung-do gets the news. OTK won the bid. His team leader suspects an inside job. He thinks OTK got a tip from someone at Hyundai, which is how they knew exactly how much to offer. He adds that even if they'd known the competition's bid, they would have offered $5 billion just to avoid looking suspicious. Shin Byung-do wonders if it could have just been a coincidence. His ally shuts that down. OTK might be new, but they have Hyun-ju, a veteran in the field. She doesn't make blind moves. He's certain they knew what they were doing from the start. Back with our protagonist, Park Sang-yeop asks the million-dollar question, how did he know Hyundai's offer? Jin-hoo just calls it luck. He claims to hate Hyundai and insists he has no connections there. Park Sang-yeop says he believes his boss, but he's pretty sure Hyundai isn't going to buy the luck story. Anyway, Sang-yeop has found a house that fits Jin-hoo's criteria. It's the former home of the CEO of Hyunjin Shipping. He explains that the shipping company nearly went under after the old CEO died. The widow, Chae Young-gyun, took over, but her terrible management skills only made things worse. Taekyu notes that this is also a problem for Hyundai, since Hyunjin Shipping is the one that transports their cars. Sang-yeop continues. On top of the mismanagement, Chae Young-in was being investigated for corruption, but she skipped town with her kids before a conclusion was reached. The investigation didn't stop, though. Under pressure, she put her house up for sale, publicly promising to donate her personal assets to try and save face. There's a catch. She listed the house for a price way above market value, because if it sells, a chunk of the money has to go to a company shareholder. Hearing this, Jin-hoo is more determined than ever to buy the property. This is an opportunity he can't let slide. Sometime later, Chae Young-in learns someone actually wants to buy the house. She's shocked. Her lawyer promised her no one would ever pay that price. Her lawyer, Park Dong-soo, explains the buyer is Kang Jin-hoo, who's been making headlines with his billion-won deals. Chae Young-in knows the name, and she makes it clear she has no intention of selling to him. Her lawyer warns her that Jin-hoo has already announced his interest publicly. Backing out now would look bad. Their only option is to raise the price even higher. She reminds him she never actually wanted to sell. The whole thing was just a show to distract the Hyunjin Shipping shareholders. But the lawyer says Jin-hoo's fame will draw media attention to this specific house. The best he can do is buy them some time. Besides, Park Dong-soo has heard that Jin-hoo isn't much of a negotiator himself, letting his employees do all the hard work. He figures he can drag things out and squeeze an even higher price out of him. A while later, Jin-hoo gets the new price, 22 billion won. He doesn't even blink. He's still buying it. Meanwhile, the acquisition of ex-cop is completed successfully, with no interference from any competitors. Then, Jin-Hoo is informed that Chae Young-gun's lawyer has arrived for their meeting. Park Dong-soo formally introduces himself. Jin-Hoo isn't impressed. He tells the lawyer he's a busy man and didn't appreciate the unannounced visit, so he should get straight to the point. The lawyer asks Jin-Hoo to withdraw his offer on his client's house. He tries an emotional angle, mentioning how Jin-Hoo bought his own childhood home. He claims his client has a similar sentimental attachment to her property. Jin-Hoo isn't buying it. If Chae Young-gun was so attached, she shouldn't have publicly promised to donate her personal assets. Park Dong-soo concedes the point and offers a deal. He presents documents for another residence, offering a 20% discount if Jin-Hoo agrees to back off. The protagonist refuses. He says he likes the location of Chae Young-gun's house. More importantly, he knows the real reason she doesn't want to sell. Jin-Hoo lays out the facts. Before trading was suspended, Hyunjin Shipping shares were worth 40,000 won each, and 2,000 of that went directly into Chae Young-gun's pocket. He points out the difference between her and the small shareholders, regular people who sacrifice to buy a few shares hoping for a miracle. Chae Young-gun, on the other hand, is so rich that losing 2 billion won would mean nothing to her, and yet, she let the small shareholders take the fall. She chose to watch her husband's company go bankrupt rather than part with 2 billion won. Jin-Hoo looks the lawyer in the eye. A future inmate won't be needing a house. He tells him Chae Young-gun should start packing. After the meeting, Jin-Hoo asks Park Sang-yeop for some good news. Sang-yeop has it. Hyundai fired its president and his entire team, pinning the blame for the information leak on them. Jin-Hoo remembers seeing that president standing with Han Chan-young at the auction. He knows the man is talented. Putting the pieces together, Jin-Hoo decides he wants to meet this former Hyundai president. He tells Sang-yeop to arrange it. Sometime later, Seo Sang-won agrees to meet Jin-Hoo for dinner, but he's not there for a friendly meal. He wants to know if the information about Hyundai's bid was really leaked from the inside. Seo Sang-won explains that besides himself and the vice president, only 3 other people knew the number. He finds it hard to believe there's a traitor among them, because even after being fired, he still trusts his team. Still, he can't shake the memory of the auction. Jin-Hoo was unnervingly calm the entire time, as if he already knew the outcome. Then Seo Sang-won drops a key detail. After learning OTK was joining the bid, the vice president insisted they add another 50 million at the last second. They agreed on this new amount the very day of the auction. So if there was a leak, it would have been of the original lower number. Jin-Hoo realizes that without that last-minute change, Hyunju's prediction would have been dead on. He doesn't feel guilty for using his ability, but he does feel bad that an innocent man lost his job over it. So Jin-Hoo offers a plausible cover story. His team just ran the numbers, made a good estimate of the competition, and got lucky. Taekyu expresses his sympathy for the misunderstanding, then gets to the real reason for the meeting. They want to offer Seo Sang-won a job at OTK, but Seo Sang-won turns them down. He argues that accepting the offer would only make him look more guilty, like he traded inside information for a position. Jin-Hoo can see the man is sincere. Even after being fired, he's still loyal to Hyundai, but Jin-Hoo also knows that with a traitor's reputation, Seo Sang-won will have a hard time finding work anywhere else in the industry. He tells him the best way out is to join OTK, since they're the only ones who believe he's innocent. Seo Sang-won points out that hiring him would just bring criticism down on Jin-Hoo. Jin-Hoo just shrugs it off. Ever since he was revealed as OTK's CEO, criticism is all he's gotten. One more complaint won't make a difference. He promises to help restore Seo Sang-won's honor if he joins them, and mentions he has the perfect project waiting for him, something that will make OTK's last deal look like nothing. Jin-Hoo gives him time to think it over. In the meantime, he closes a deal of his own, finally buying Chae Young-gun's house. He's thrilled to finally own a home, especially one that's only a 5-minute commute from work. He brings his friends over for a tour, and Taekyu is blown away by the luxury. Hyunju, on the other hand, is most impressed by the kitchen, noting it's a great space for cooking. When Ellie asks if he's happy with the new place, Jin-Hoo admits he is. For all her faults, the previous owner had good taste in interior designers. Hyunju remarks that Chae Young-gun lost her company and her house and didn't even get to keep the money. But they decide not to dwell on it and focus on celebrating Jin-Hoo's new home. With the end of the year approaching, they decide to throw a joint party for OTK Golden Gate and K Company. Young Gi-hong, recently promoted to team leader, is put in charge of planning. Later, Jin-Hoo reflects on how much his life has changed in just 1 year. It's been hectic, and even though he was cleared of all charges, people still show up outside his building demanding his arrest. But then, in the middle of one of these protests, Jin-Hoo spots a familiar face. He tells his driver to stop the car. He runs over to his uncle, Seok-beom, asking what he's doing out in the freezing cold. Seokbeom explains that he wanted to see him, and since Jinhoo is a hard man to get a hold of, he decided to just camp out at his workplace. Jinhoo brings him inside, where Seokbeom apologizes for not getting in touch sooner. Jinhoo remembers the last time they saw each other was at his father's funeral. Seokbeom was the only family member who showed up. Seokbeom then tells his story. He lost his job at an auto parts company called Wukong Enterprises after he confronted his boss about the terrible working conditions. Things there got so bad that an employee actually died. Seokbeom himself was injured on the job, but received no support from the company. He came to Jinhoo as a last resort, with nowhere else to turn. Jinhoo clarifies that while he calls him uncle, Seokbeom isn't a blood relative, but he feels more like family than anyone who actually shares his blood. They'd grown distant over the years, but now that Jinhoo knows what happened, he promises to help in any way he can. Back when Jinhoo was a kid, two men named Kim Seokbeom and Park Jong-soo worked for his father. They were close friends, practically family. But after the company went bankrupt and Jinhoo's father died, they both ended up at Wukong Enterprises, which was a whole different world. Wukong worked its employees to the bone and refused to pay overtime. A union organized a peaceful protest to demand their rights. Wukong's response was to send a truck plowing through the crowd, injuring some and killing others. The company and the driver called it an accident, and they got away with it completely. The message was clear to the remaining employees: stay quiet or else. Park Jong-soo was one of the victims. He tried to fight them in court, but after failing, he fell into a deep depression and took his own life. Hearing this, Taekyu asks the obvious question: why do the police and prosecutors always side with the corporations? Jinhoo explains that in this country, the big companies prop up the entire economy. In other words, they have more power than the politicians. But Jinhoo promised to help, and now that he owns a high-end security firm, he's calling in the pros. Lee Cheoljin, an expert manager at X-Cop, lays out the situation. Wukong Enterprises has a law firm that specializes in handling these kinds of problems. On paper, they're lawyers. In reality, they're gangsters who specialize in union busting. But Lee Cheoljin assures him this is nothing X-Cop can't handle. After all, his team is full of ex-special forces and foreign mercenaries. A few street thugs are hardly a challenge. Jinhoo makes it clear that what he's about to do isn't strictly for the public good, but he wants it to look that way. Lee Cheoljin understands perfectly and promises to make it happen. Elsewhere, Hong Wukong, the president of Wukong Enterprises, is complaining. He hired a firm to crush the union, but they're still protesting outside his house. Lee Seop, the head of the fake law firm, guarantees the job will be finished by the end of the day. Outside, as the union members protest, the gang's vice leader, Im Dusik, orders his men to clear the area. He offers a cash bonus for every protester they take down. He tells them not to hold back. The police didn't do anything last time, so they have nothing to worry about. With that, the thugs descend on the protesters, beating them and tearing down their camp. The police are called, but as soon as the patrol car sees who's causing the trouble, it just turns around and drives off. Im Dusik smirks, telling his men this is exactly what he was talking about, and urges them to continue. But then, a new figure steps onto the scene. It's Taekyu, and he announces that he's recorded the entire assault. He warns them that every action has a reaction, and they're about to get a taste of their own medicine. Lee Seop, the lawyer, sees they have the evidence they need and tells his thugs to stop, or his team will have to intervene. Im Dusik isn't intimidated. He boasts that they're backed by a massive conglomerate and asks if they've ever heard of Hyundai. Jinhoo thinks back to the cops fleeing the scene and figures the guy might not be bluffing. Still, Jinhoo tells him he doesn't care. He's not afraid of big corporations. Enraged, the thug lunges for Jinhoo, but Lee Cheoljin intercepts him and puts the man firmly in his place. The boss's men try to jump in, but Lee Cheoljin has backup of his own. He orders his security team to protect the union members, noting that as a licensed firm, everything they're doing is by the book. Watching the fight, Taekyu wonders if they're going a little soft. Lee Cheoljin explains that in the past, this would have been over in a minute, but the laws have changed. Now they have to be cautious instead of just violent, and besides, every one of his men is wearing a body cam. The union members are grateful for the help, but they're worried this will only make their situation worse down the line. Lee Cheoljin assures them it won't happen again, because they're going to eliminate the problem for good. Once the thugs are defeated and tied up, the police arrive in force. An officer approaches and asks what X-Cop is doing here. Lee Cheoljin plays it cool, saying he was just passing by when he saw innocent people being attacked and decided to help. He adds that the thugs were caught red-handed, and it's all on their body cams. Jinhoo seizes the moment. He points out that one of these men nearly killed someone with a fire extinguisher and got away with it. He explains that his company, Kairos, used facial recognition on security footage to get a positive ID. Then Jinhoo points directly at the thug and accuses him of assault. Panicked, the thug makes a run for it. He doesn't get far. Jinhoo turns to the cop and asks if he's going to make an arrest or not. The officer hesitates, saying they can't act without analyzing the evidence and following protocol, so Jinhoo just points to the top of a nearby building where reporters from several newspapers are gathered. The whole scene is about to be on the news. The cop's attitude changes instantly. He orders his men to arrest every single suspect. The thugs try to resist, but the police now have plenty of motivation to do their jobs properly. As he's hauled away, the thug promises this isn't over. The union members agree. Sooner or later, these guys will be back, and next time could be worse. Jinhoo knows they're right. He needs a solution that sticks. He introduces himself as the CEO of OTK Company and promises the union members free hospital care and legal support. He vows the thugs won't get away with it because he's putting his best lawyers on the case to make sure they go to prison. And just to be clear, there will be no plea deals. These guys aren't getting out of this. Realizing just how deep he's in it, the thug tries to negotiate, pleading that he has a family and can't go to jail. Jinhoo reminds him that his uncle has a family too, a fact the thug didn't seem to care about when he was swinging a fire extinguisher. Cornered, the thug cracks. He claims he was just following orders and that the police promised to support them if they destroyed the union. At this, Dusik tells the man to shut his mouth. He then turns on Jinhoo, threatening to tell the media that Jinhoo used a private company to attack civilians. Jinhoo tells him to go right ahead, but warns Dusik and Hyundai's lawyers to prepare for the worst. He'd be more than happy to release his own video to the press, a thug confessing that the country's biggest conglomerate is tied to organized crime. Jinhoo notes that Hyundai probably has ways to survive a scandal like that. He's not so sure about the thug who snitched, though. With no moves left, Dusik starts apologizing, begging to be spared. His men do the same, all claiming they were just following orders. Jinhoo finds it ridiculous. A few minutes ago, they were ready to kill. Now they're like abandoned dogs crying for food. Still, he feels good knowing he helped innocent workers who were getting hurt just like his uncle. Before they leave, Jinhoo and his team decide to pay a visit to the source of the problem. He wants to at least see the faces of the people responsible before he heads home. With their plan in shambles, Hong Wukong wonders what comes next. The answer arrives immediately. An employee announces that the CEO of OTK and the manager of X-Cop are in the building asking for him. Worse, the prosecutor's office just called about a criminal complaint filed against Wukong Enterprise. Before he can process this, the police are already there to arrest the front office chief. And right behind them is Jinhoo, who introduces himself to Hong Wukong and says it's time for a chat. Later, Hong Wukong demands to know why Jinhoo is meddling in his affairs. Jinhoo explains that his father taught him to treat employees like family. If Hong Wukong had done the same, none of this would be necessary. The old man scoffs, calling the union members vermin, who only complain instead of showing results. He lectures Jinhoo that an arrogant young man knows nothing about real work, claiming he started from the bottom and never slacked off or complained about his pay. Jinhoo cuts through the self-pity, reminding him that employees were seriously injured and even died on his watch. That shouldn't be normalized. It's perfectly natural for people to use their rights to demand better working conditions. Hong Wukong insists that union members aren't always right, and as the boss, he shouldn't have to accept everything they ask for. Jinhoo tells him to save his justifications for the court and the press, because tomorrow, the name Hong Wukong will be on every front page. But Jinhoo notices the old man is surprisingly calm, guessing he thinks he has an ace up his sleeve. Hong Wukong confirms it. As his assistant takes a call, he boasts that his company is a key subordinate to Hyundai. They'd never refuse to help him out of a jam. Jinhoo advises him not to be so sure. Hong Wukong accuses him of trying to bait a confession and clams up, saying he won't say another word. But Jinhoo says he doesn't need one. He already has everything he needs. He just points to the assistant's face, guessing from his reaction that help isn't coming. And he's right. The assistant confirms that Hyundai has refused to help and ordered them to handle the situation on their own. With that, Jinhoo says his work here is done and turns to leave. A desperate Hong Wukong tries to negotiate, saying it's not too late to agree on a price. Jinhoo isn't interested in his money. He already has plenty. He vows to use every resource at his disposal to see this case through the justice system. Hong Wukong warns that setting this kind of precedent could hurt Jinhoo in the future. But Jinhoo isn't worried. He hasn't committed any crimes. He tells the old man that if he truly did nothing wrong, then he has nothing to worry about. Hong Wukong was terrified, but he bluffed that nothing would happen to someone protected by Hyundai. The opposite happened. Days later, he was formally charged, and the public was left wondering why he hadn't been arrested sooner. Despite the scandal and the arrests, Hyundai walked away without a single scratch. The Wukong employees, however, were relocated to better companies with full support guaranteed by OTK. Seokbaum was admitted to a specialized hospital for his head injury and finally received proper treatment. Sometime later, Jinhoo visits his honorary uncle, who thanks him for all his help. Jinhoo's mother is also there, comforting Seokbaum's wife, having gone through similar hardships herself. And, as always, the one crying the hardest is Taikyu. Sometime later, the day of the company party finally arrives. To everyone's surprise, Chase Southwell actually shows up, a move the staff takes as a nice holiday gift. After the party, Jinhoo gets a call from Seo Sang-won, the former president of Hyundai. He agrees to come work for Jinhoo, but on one condition: his old team has to come with him. Seo Sang-won explains that his colleagues were victims of the same misunderstanding that got him fired, and he guarantees every one of them is a top-tier professional. Jinhoo immediately agrees. He knows a competitor's mistake just handed him a whole team of elite talent for OTK. The new year kicks off, and Michael Lee reports that all the issues on his plate have been resolved. He points out that even with the new hires, OTK is growing so fast they're going to need more people soon. He also mentions their legal team is currently outsourced, and strongly recommends Jinhoo build his own in-house department. Jinhoo says he'll take care of it, and lets Michael know that Seo Sang-won and his crew will be joining them. Michael adds that they also need a public relations team, since OTK's reputation is still negative in some circles. Jinhoo tells him he has the perfect person in mind. He reaches out to Jung Gi-hong to be the head of PR. Jinhoo's known him for a while and trusts him completely. Jung Gi-hong accepts the job and promises to give it his all. Next, Jinhoo offers Henry the role of team leader for planning and coordination, telling him he's been with OTK long enough to deserve it. Henry hesitates. He asks if it's really okay for him to take such a high-level position, since his long-term plan is to take over at Golden Gate. Jinhoo knows they'll eventually go their separate ways, but says that until that day comes, he wants to keep Henry by his side. With that, Jinhoo makes his final personnel change. He hires Lee Cheoljin from Ex-Cop to be his personal and home security chief. Lee Cheoljin admits this isn't his usual line of work, but he's making an exception because he genuinely had fun working with Jinhoo before, and just like that, the new executive team is in place. Park Sang-yeop remarks that he thought January would be a quiet month, but it's been the complete opposite. Jinhoo assures him things will settle down once the new staff gets up to speed. He then drops the next item on the agenda. He and Taikyu are flying to the US for Donald Trump's inauguration. Taikyu immediately says he doesn't want to go, telling Jinhoo to travel alone, but Jinhoo is firm. He tells him they both have to go, because this isn't a vacation, it's a business trip. A short while later, they're in a meeting with the Karos team at the new headquarters in Detroit. Sagan reports that they're getting complaints from the dealerships. Sales have dropped, and the dealers want more incentives to make up for their losses. Jinhoo knew this was coming. He's the one who authorized the slowdown of Chrysler sales to focus resources on developing Karos' technology. The problem is, low sales hurt the third-party dealerships, which could push them to sign contracts with other car companies. Worse, they might have to halt production entirely to avoid a massive surplus of unsold cars. They could pivot to online sales like Tesla, but that wouldn't solve the core issue. Jinhoo's thinking long-term. Once the new factory is complete, they'll be doubling their production capacity, and they'll need those dealerships to move that inventory. Ditching physical sales now would not only cripple them in the future, it would also anger Trump and his voter base. So Jinhoo lays out the real solution. Stop making Chrysler cars and start making Karos cars. He reminds them they only bought Chrysler for its infrastructure, not its name. He says he invested in Karos and bought a failing automaker with the full knowledge that the old brand would disappear. Instead of mourning Chrysler's death, they need to focus on developing cars so advanced they make Tesla look obsolete. That way, even if they lose some dealerships in the short term, future customers will find a way to get their hands on a Karos. After the meeting, Jinhoo tells Taekyu they can head home right after Trump's party, but Taekyu says he got a call from Henry's grandfather. He told them to cancel their plane tickets because he's arranged for a different ride home. Sometime later, the team flies to the American capital. Sagan is along for the ride, noting that thanks to the Golden Gate CEO's private jet, the trip is incredibly comfortable. Taikyu agrees, remembering that flying economy is the exact opposite. Jinhoo changes the subject, asking about public opinion on Donald Trump. Sagan reports that Trump's support is solid in the Rust Belt, but not so much elsewhere. Taikyu just hopes opinions change after the election, otherwise it could be bad for business. Sagan explains that Karos is rushing to launch its internal combustion vehicle this year, complete with self-driving tech. But to make electric cars, they'd need a partnership with a battery company, and most are already locked in with other manufacturers. He adds that battery companies are hesitant to invest in EVs anyway. Tesla just got lucky by landing an exclusive deal with Panasonic. Jinhoo compares it to Kodak, insisting on using film while every other camera company went digital, a move that nearly bankrupted them. He refuses to let Karos go down the same path. They need to buy a battery company, and soon, because the switch to electric is coming whether they're ready or not. After arriving in Washington, Taikyu is stunned to see so many world leaders in one place. Jinhoo even spots Hillary Clinton and figures she's just there for the photo op. But then she sees Jinhoo, recognizes him, and walks right over. She says it's a pleasure to finally meet him, explaining that her campaign schedule had been too hectic for anything but formal introductions through an aide. She apologizes for the delay and congratulates him on his recent success. Then, Donald Trump gives his first speech as president. The short version, America First. He promises to strengthen the country from the inside out by creating more industries and jobs. He also announces plans to reduce trade with China, withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership with Japan, and review numerous agreements involving South Korea. Jinhoo knows he helped put this man in office. If Korea gets hurt by these policies, he's going to get more than just a little criticism. He meets with Trump after the inauguration. Jinhoo calls the speech direct and clear, which Trump takes as a compliment. Jinhoo knows that high labor costs and taxes pushed most manufacturing to Mexico or Southeast Asia. To fix that, Trump promised to cut tariffs and increase factories on American soil, and Jinhoo promised to help. In return, Trump assured him no regulations would stand in their way, telling Jinhoo to call him whenever he needs anything. The deal stands as long as both sides have something to offer, which means Jinhoo doesn't have to worry about Karos's progress being blocked. He figures Trump is still more of a businessman than a president, but for their purposes, that's a good thing. Back at the hotel, Taekyu explains that Sagan already headed back to California after thanking them for the jet. Just then, Jinhoo gets a call from the front desk. The receptionist says a VIP is here to see him about the L6. Taekyu immediately panics, assuming it has to be someone from Samsung. But Jinhoo is calm, figuring nothing dangerous can happen in a hotel like this, and tells them to send the visitor up. A moment later, Lim Jin-yong, the vice president of Samsung, is at their door. Taekyu recognizes him from TV. He was the guy who had to give press statements about the damaged L6 phones. Jinhoo tells him that's a rude thing to say to a guest's face, but Lim Jin-yong just shrugs it off, saying he's heard far worse online. He apologizes for dropping in unannounced, but when he heard they were in the US at the same time, he couldn't pass up the chance. Getting straight to the point, Lim Jin-yong says his company has a division called Samsung SB, which focuses on developing batteries for electric cars. He asks if OTK would be interested in investing. Jinhoo immediately tells him to come in. This is a conversation he wants to have. At the meeting, Lim Jin-yong says he was shocked by what happened with the L6, but holds no grudge. He believes it actually benefited both sides in the end. He then mentions that he and Jinhoo went to the same university. Jinhoo already knew that. Lim Jin-yong is famous on campus for donating scholarships every year. Taekyu adds that his older sister went there too, so they all have a connection. He notes that in Korea, common ground like that makes business go a lot smoother, shortening the distance between them. Lim Jin-yong takes it a step further, saying he already considers them friends. Then he gets straight to the point. He needs their help. His father is gravely ill with only 2 weeks to live, and the family has known for some time. Lim Jin-yong is philosophical about it. Death comes for everyone regardless of wealth, and he's been preparing himself. His real worry is his family. He knows they're about to fight over the inheritance. The main Samsung assets should be fine, but the SB division is the real problem. Jinhoo recognizes the name. SB developed the L6 battery and other key tech, so he asks what the issue is. Lim Jin-yong explains his younger brother and mother are trying to take control of Samsung SB, despite knowing nothing about it. To make matters worse, Hyundai is also making a play for the division. Lim Jin-yong is afraid SB will be sold to their biggest rival. Taekyu groans. It's Hyundai again. He's getting sick of fighting the same competitors. Jinhoo asks about the connection between Samsung and Hyundai. Turns out Lim Jin-yong's aunt, his mother's sister, is the current owner of Hyundai. The two companies are literally family. He says his plan to sell SB to a friendly party could be blocked by internal shareholders like his brother, not to mention external ones. Taekyu asks if this is all just one big family squabble. It's more complicated. Lim Jin-yong's brother is about to marry Han Chan-yu-woong, the vice chair of Hyundai, forging even tighter bonds. And the worst part? The current president of Korea is involved, and he's determined to sabotage the deal. Jinhoo puts it all together. Lim Jin-yong's father holds all the power at Samsung, but his death will splinter it among the heirs. Rivals will try to pick them apart, and some of the heirs actually want to help Hyundai. Lim Jin-yong is one of the few standing in their way. He can't do it alone, which is why he came to OTK. With them in the picture, he'll have more leverage. The proposal is for OTK to buy a majority stake in SB before the competition can. The rest would stay with Samsung. Jinhoo does the math. Just 10% of SB is worth over $1 trillion, and that wouldn't even guarantee control. He points out it's a massive, expensive plan and asks why Lim Jin-yong chose OTK. Lim Jin-yong says he needs a strong, trustworthy ally, someone with integrity who won't betray him down the line. As he says this, Jinhoo gets a vision of his eagle. It's a clear sign. He has to take this deal, no matter what it costs. Lim Jin-yong lays out his pitch. Working together, they could change not just the battery industry, but the entire automotive world. He explains that Samsung has been looking for a way into the car market, and since OTK is already investing there, it's a perfect match. Taikyu immediately sees the potential. Samsung makes the best smartphone chips, and integrating that tech into smart cars would be a massive success. Jinhoo agrees. He could get batteries from anyone, but for chips, Samsung is the only real choice. So Jinhoo asks Lim Jinyong if he trusts them 100%. Lim Jinyong is honest. No, investors are fickle. But he knows Jinhoo has a personal grudge against Hyundai, and that's why he sought him out. Having already seen the future, Jinhoo knows this is the right move. He accepts the partnership. Later, an ally asks Lim Jinyong if the meeting went well. He says it's too early to celebrate. He may have gained a partner, but his own family is busy making deals with his rivals. His associate Kim Myung-soo remarks that money is a dangerous poison, and the obsessed always want more. Lim Jinyong knows. He just hopes he's prepared for when things get ugly. Back with Jinhoo, his friend asks if he's really comfortable teaming up with one conglomerate to take down another. Jinhoo explains that he doesn't hate monopolies, he just wants to decentralize their power. Besides, very few companies in the world have Samsung's technology and production capacity. Just then, Park Sang-yeop calls. He saw Jinhoo on TV at the Trump inauguration and wants to know when he's coming home. Jinhoo says his schedule changed after something unexpected came up. He promises to explain later, but gives a direct order: buy as many shares of Samsung SB as possible and do it discreetly. He tells him he'll be back soon. A short time later, Jinhoo is back at OTK headquarters, where he's called a meeting with the whole team. He reveals he met with Lim Jinyong in the US and explains the plan to acquire Samsung SB. Park Sang-yeop finally understands the strange order to buy shares. Hyunju notes that besides batteries, Samsung can provide crucial electronic components, making this a very smart play. But she knows that wasn't Jinhoo's only reason for agreeing. Jinhoo confirms it. His main objective is to keep SB out of Hyundai's hands. He asks if Golden Gate will support